Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Scion Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What if Deku had met a Forcible Quirk? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Prologue, not the first thrown stone. Ah yes. Watch his vitals, Shuzenji. Kyudai watched as the woman turned her attention to the monitor off to the side of the room. He was glad that she had accepted his request for an internship of sorts. His credentials as Dr. Tsubasa were glowing, and her healing knowledge would help him with treating his own patients. Those were the perceptions he had crafted in truth. This was all for Master. Everything was for Master. If he could bring Recovery Girl to their side, or even arrange for her quirk to be stolen, it would be a large boon to the Numu project, not to mention how useful her knowledge could be. He shook himself from his thoughts, focusing his equipment on Midoriya Izuku, eventually finding what he had suspected. Plus Alpha, the quirk factor, as it was often known. As he continued to study them, he realized that this was surely a quirk master would appreciate. A quirk that could control quirks. Meta quirks such as this were rare, and often rather powerful. Master's quirk was itself of the meta type after all. Now, if he had stopped to let go of his pride, he would have waited for Master to take the quirk. Schedule a follow-up appointment, and the man could easily acquire it with no one the wiser. But Kyudai was so excited at the prospect of pleasing Master that he quickly grabbed the device he had been working on. He asked the young boy to stay really still so the machine would work, wrapping what looked like blood pressure monitors around his wrists. After double-checking all the wires and settings, he flipped the switch for his device, a low electric hum filling the room. The boy started to twitch, the small sounds catching Shuzenji's attention. "Dr. Tsubasa, just what are you doing? This doesn't look..." The woman never got to finish her sentence, cut off by the device letting out a long, high-pitched whine. Suddenly red tendrils exploded from the boy's body, pushing their way through cracks and crevices. Unbeknownst to the two medical professionals, they then fastened to several people in the waiting area, quirks activating without their will. This wouldn't have been as much of a problem if one individual hadn't had a remote detonation quirk. He was at the clinic with his 5-year-old son to have his quirk assessed. He had been working on setting up an old building for demolition for the Uraraka construction company when his wife called. She was taking their son to Dr. Tsubasa's clinic, but had to go back to work as she had forgotten her purse, and so had asked him to take their son instead. When his quirk was forcibly activated, the results were tragic. Mr. and Mrs. Uraraka had been doing last-minute inspections on the building. They were pronounced dead on arrival. Some of the rubble from the demolition site had been blown out into the street due to not having been properly triggered. While Kirishima Ijiru had survived, his newly found quirk protecting him from the debris, his parents were not so lucky, despite Ijiria's efforts to protect them. A girl with blonde hair and gleaming fangs stared in astonishment as a black-haired boy knocked her out of the way of falling concrete, saving her. An older man with gray hair and equally gray ties lay motionless. He had been in the area attempting to do some manner of business, but never arrived. He left behind his daughter, among many others. A stone causes ripples when it hits the water. Where will these disturbances lead? Chapter 2, Before We Break. Izuku mumbled something unintelligible as he started to wake up, slowly sitting up in his bed. As he rubbed at his eyes, he was confused. Where was his All Might blanket? Why was there something hooked up to his hands? Wait, he knew where he was. It was a hose pie towel. His mom had taken him to one once. He had a picture with him and mom and someone else who mom called Sho. Izuku was very little then though, like 1 or something, so he didn't really remember. Just as he started to investigate the strange things on his hands, he was surprised by the door opening. Izuku! It was Mom. And someone else. He looked familiar. Wait, was that Sho? His mom ran toward him, pulling him into a strong hug as soon as she got close enough. "Mom, that hurts," he complained as she squeezed a bit too hard, causing her to loosen her grip. "I'm just so glad you're okay, Izuku," she cried. "Did something bad happen?" he asked curiously. "And why is Sho here?" Just after he said that, the black-haired guy made a strange face. It was kinda scary, but nice too, almost like he was smiling. Adults were weird. Shoyuta stood back as his sister ran toward her son, noticing how the boy glanced at him before quickly focusing on Inko. He was a bit surprised when the boy seemed to remember him. Wait, when had they even met? Shoyuta was there when he was born, but he doubted that Izuku somehow remembered him from then. Luckily, Inko looked up and noticed his puzzled expression. "Oh, he has a picture of when we visited you in the hospital," she ventured. "Ah, well that was logical. Humph, I think I remember him now. And to answer your question, Izuku, you were hurt from your quirk manifesting." The green-haired looked at him quizzically. "Mani what?" Ugh, right. That was probably too big of a word for him. Manifesting, Shoyuta repeated slowly. It's a way to say that your quirk came in. Evidently this was the wrong answer, as the boy started crying and jumping up and down. He turned to Inko questioningly, though she seemed too focused on Izuku to notice it. Are you okay, Izuku? He stammered, unsure how to calm the young boy down. I'm not okay, I'm happy. I have a quirk, he cheered, striking a pose that was suspiciously similar to a well-known hero. I got a Shokaken. Ah, right. The reason for his visit in the first place. Not yet. I'm going to be teaching you how to use your quirk first. Your body wasn't ready for it yet, that's why you're here. You got hurt pretty badly when it appeared. He took care not to mention what his quirk had done. It had been decided that telling the young boy would only scare him and potentially lead to accidents later on. They would tell him once he was older and could see counseling about it. Whoa, is that why I have these? Izuku asked excitedly as he shook his hands and the instruments that were attached to them. That's right, honey, Inko replied quickly, gently easing the boy's frantic movements. But be careful, we don't want to break anything. Izuku nodded. Rapidly, somehow almost managing to hit his chest with his head, before he straightened, seeming to remember that Shoyuta was still there. So you're gonna help me with my quirk? The boy asked, emphasizing the word, quirk. Yes, but how about we figure out a name for it? They weren't using the name that quack of a doctor had scribbled on a piece of paper. Who named a quirk something like Forcible Quirk Activation? It was pretty uninteresting even by Shuta's standards. Not to mention a quirk named like that wouldn't give Izuku the best attention. I get to name it? Izuku exclaimed in excitement. What does it do? He suddenly asked. It appears to allow you to control quirks, Shoyuta explained. Whoa, that's so cool, Izuku declared before frowning. But I don't know what to call it. Shoyuta didn't either. Luckily Inko was there. What about interference? She suggested. Izuku blinked confusedly. What does that mean? Well, Inko began to explain. It's when something changes something else, just like your quirk does to other quirks. And it sounds similar to your Uncle Show's quirk, erasure. Do you like it? The quick head bobbing seemed to be a resounding yes. Shoyuta would help Inko finish filling out the paperwork later. It was just as he was thinking about how to first go about teaching Izuku that the young boy spoke up. Mom said that you're a hero, he declared as if the answer to life was hidden inside the title. Can you help me be a hero with my quirk? Shoyuta grinned, idly noticing how Izuku seemed confused by the expression. You can be a hero, he stated plainly. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You can't be a hero with a quirk like that. Why can't you just be normal, Himiko? The young girl stirred as the nightmare started disappearing. But instead of waking up to the same room she had known all her life, she was in a place she didn't recognize. As she started to wake up, her fuzzy memories became more clear. She was at her aunt's house. The last thing she remembered was her aunt and uncle showing up to take her somewhere safe. She really hoped it was safe. She wanted to not have to hide. Blood was pretty. Why didn't her parents understand? Getting out of the bed, she decided to look around. Just as she opened the door, she was greeted by a pair of light blue eyes. Hi, I'm Nedu. Did you know that we're cousins? Himiko continued to stare at the boy, her cousin apparently. I'm Himiko? Do you think Blood is pretty? The younger boy wrinkled his nose. Not really. Himiko couldn't help but frown. Maybe this wasn't a safe place. Nedu seemed to notice an excited look crossing his face. But that's okay. Quirks make people different. There, what was that word? Pretty? Himiko offered hesitantly. Yeah, that's it. Quirks are pretty, he declared, before frowning. I wish everyone thought they were pretty. I hope you aren't overwhelming Himiko, Nedu. Himiko and Nedu turned toward the source of the voice. It was Andy. Wait, Himiko didn't want Nedu to get in trouble. He wasn't. We were talking about how we all find different things pretty. Nedu nodded in agreement. Himiko told me she thinks Blood is pretty, and I told her I think quirks are pretty. Auntie ruffled Nedu's hair before turning to Himiko. I hope you slept well. I'm sorry we didn't have anything better that you could sleep on. Himiko interrupted her with a tight hug. She didn't care about the bed. She didn't have to hide. She could say Blood was pretty. Wait, her quirk was why she liked Blood, right? Maybe Nedu had a quirk that made him like quirks. Nedu, does your quirk make you like quirks? She asked curiously, and was confused when the younger boy laughed. Not exactly. My quirk. Auntie quickly clapped a hand over Nedu's mouth, a wide grin on her face. Why don't you show her instead? She asked him, getting a quick nod in response. Himiko was confused when he tapped his mom's arm, and that didn't change when he touched his watch and suddenly had 2 watches. Your quirk lets you copy things, she guessed, though her cousin shook his head in denial. No, that's Mom's quirk, he declared proudly. But why would that make you like quirks? Himiko asked in confusion. Himiko, dear, her aunt said like she was giving her a hint. He's using my quirk. Wait, he took your quirk? Himiko asked confusedly. Nedu laughed again. He had a neat laugh. She liked how he moved his arms. No, I copied it, he said, waving a hand for dramatic effect. My quirk lets me copy quirks. Whoa, that's so cool. Himiko gushed, before noticing the second watch disappear. Hey, where'd it go? That is the limit to my quirk, Auntie explained. I can copy an object but only for few minutes. The same goes for Nedu and copying quirks. Yeah, but I can copy, like, 3 quirks at once, he declared proudly. Whoa, you could copy a bunch and be like a chimera. Nedu shook his head, frowning. No, I can only use one at a time. Oh, Himiko replied. That's quite a big word. Himiko, where did you learn it? Auntie asked curiously. In a book. Himiko declared excitedly. I found one with lots of neat animals and stuff. One of them had teeth just like mine, she said, pointing to her sharp canines. It was so cool. I wish Mom didn't get rid of it. Auntie looked funny when she said that. Adults were weird. Well, you two can play together. I just need to talk with your uncle, Himiko. Okay, Himiko declared. Wanna find more pretty things, Nedu? Yeah. I've got a bunch of books. Maybe we can find stuff in there. Hibiki sighed as she left the room, making her way to her husband's office. Shinbu, I'm afraid that you were right. The blonde-haired man sighed, turning from his work. So, you think her parents are treating her differently for her quirk? He asked. From the little info the doctor told me in emergency, her quirk is blood-related. She was saying it most likely has something to do with her recovering so easily. Shinbu nodded as she spoke. That would line up considering the state of that building and how badly she was scratched up. There's practically no way she wouldn't have picked up some sort of infection. So, how are she and Nedu getting along? Quite well, though now she has him calling quirks pretty, Hibiki laughed, before turning back to the subject at hand. Now all the offers for her to come visit Nedu make much more sense. They aren't sure how to deal with the mental aspects of her quirk. If there are any. Oh, there definitely are, Hibiki confirmed. Nedu mentioned that she was saying she finds blood pretty. Now, it is definitely interesting, but most 5-year-old girls don't call blood pretty. Her husband nodded. Then I suppose we should see if her parents will agree with your suggestion. Hibiki nodded. I don't think they'll disagree. Himiko gets to see her cousin, and we can see if our plan is viable. You know that it's not a large chance that we can do it, right? Shinbu asked. Unless we manage to secure a very good lawyer, it would be quite hard to prove. And even then, it isn't like she's a younger child. But she is a girl, Hibiki countered. We both know they want a boy so he can take over when they retire. Still, you know this will be an uphill battle and costly, Shinbu said, reminding her of her secret weapon, handing over a business card. Hibiki, I sincerely doubt we can afford someone of his caliber, he finally said after reading it. Normally? Yes. But I was told he is very interested in quirk discrimination cases. Apparently he will take them on for a more affordable rate. Well, I guess it couldn't hurt to at least try getting in contact. In the meantime though, we should probably go make sure that Nedu doesn't get carried away. I'm still going to try to get him into a theater club when he's old enough, Hibiki singsonged. One ends up breaking his bones due to a quirk given, the other breaking her mind due to a quirk born with. But not here they were found before they broke. Chapter 3, It's Where It Falls That Matters. Rappa Kendu had just been walking past an old building, trying to find his way to a fighting arena he'd been told about, when suddenly, the man was knocked back by a large explosion. He looked around, confused about what had happened, before noticing the now destroyed building. Not too far from him were a couple adults and a kid. He went over to look. That was too much blood. Fumbling for his phone with one of his large hands, he quickly called in the emergency. He loved to fight, and quite brutally too. But this wasn't a fight. He was surprised when a blonde-haired girl ran past, her clothes torn, and hair messy. He was just about to ask her why she was running when he heard a groan, looking up to see a large chunk of the building falling towards her. He tried to punch it, but fell short, not close enough to the girl. Suddenly, the black-haired boy rushed forward, pushing the girl out of the way, only for the falling rock to hit the kid instead. The sound was strange. It wasn't like something hitting someone, it sounded like throwing a rock at the pavement. Imagine his surprise when the rubble started to shift, a shaking fist pushing out. Kendu was so surprised that he somehow found himself at the hospital where the emergency workers had taken the boy and others who'd been caught by the explosion. He had managed to sneak into the room where the boy was staying when a doctor came in a few minutes later. The woman looked at Kendu and sighed. Sir, only family are permitted to visit. Are you family? No. But I helped. Kendo replied. Him helping had to mean something, right? The lady pinched her nose. Well, if you aren't family, then you need to leave or I'll have to call security. Kendo looked at the boy, and couldn't help but wonder where he would go now. So, what's gonna happen to him? He asked curiously. The doctor seemed surprised that he was still there, looking at him with an annoyed expression. You do know I'm not at liberty to disclose that information to someone who isn't family, Mr. Rappa, Kendo answered simply. He was tempted to say, the rapper, but he wasn't going to just tell someone about what he did off the clock. Wait, only family for just talking about him? That SCKED. Maybe he could do that thing so he would be family adoption. That was the one. Abduction was the one that would make it a bit harder to get work without being found out as a kidnapper. Well, I wanna adopt him then. The woman sighed again. Sir, you can't just adopt any random kid. There's paperwork, you need to prove you can provide for the child, make sure they're parents. They're dead, Kendo interrupted plainly. I called you guys and I saw them. Way too much blood. The doctor just stared at him blankly, which was annoying. Precious time that could be spent dealing with boring paperwork was being wasted right now. He was just about to try tapping her to make sure she was okay when she finally spoke up. Mr. Rappa, would you like me to pass you on to someone who can help you understand the adoption process? Yeah, that'd be great. After being sent to the waiting room, he was eventually approached by a man in a crisp suit with a tired expression on his face. Just one more, and I can go home. Just tell him about all that got us into the process, and that should be the end of it. Kendo was slightly offended by the fact that the guy must not have thought he heard, especially with all that hissing, or understood him. Sure, he was wearing a wrestling shirt that said, punch and jab until it's done, metal boxing gloves, and didn't even have his hair tied up, but come on, don't judge people just based on their appearance. Hey, are you the guy who's gonna help me adopt that kid? Yes, the man hissed tiredly, a forked tongue poking out over his teeth as he sighed. Follow me to my office. Kendo followed the snake mutation quirked man to a small office, sitting down in a chair that was almost too small. So, what do I need to sign? Kendo asked excitedly, ready to get this all figured out. The man didn't reply immediately, opening a drawer and pulling out a small stack of papers. These are the requirements, the snake-tongued man hissed, sounding a bit more awake. It isn't exactly common for non-family to adopt, but with the advent of quirks, and age of chaos, things have become more lenient. Kendo took the offered papers, looking over the questions. This was gonna be a piece of cake. He was employed, even legally, had his own place to live. After quite a few hours, Kendo found himself almost ready to be able to adopt the kid Ijiru. That was his name. He couldn't help but notice the adoption guy's surprise as he gave him the information he wanted. Especially when he handed him proof of employment, which was honestly kinda rude. Stashing the annoyingly long documents into his backpack, Kendo decided to sneak a peek into the kid's room again. Those guards sure were sloppy, he thought to himself. Kendo didn't quite realize how good he was at sneaking around if he just didn't talk. Quietly walking up to the bed, he was surprised when the kid woke up, staring at him blearily. Why you aren't dad? Where's dad? Kendo just clenched his fist and held it out, the boy looking at him in confusion. What were you doing? It's called a fist bump. Kendo explained excitedly. You make a fist and punch the other person's fist. It's like a manly handshake. The boy looked dubious, but imitated the gesture, a determined expression crossing his face as he slammed his small hand into Kendo's big one. He was surprised when he felt the boy's fist hit his. It felt like rock. That's quite the quirk you have there, kid. The boy looked surprised. But it's not flashy, he stammered. Who cares if your quirk is flashy? Kendo replied. Take a guess at what my quirk is. The black-haired kid stared at Kendo intensely before seeming to make up his mind. A small giant, the boy guessed. Nope. It's called strong arm. It just means I can swing my arms pretty fast. But you know what? What? You can do some flashy fighting even if your quirk isn't flashy, whatever the hell heck that even means. Kendo was stopped from saying anything else when he heard the door open, turning around to see a guy who screamed, typical business guy. Whoever you are, could you please leave the room, the man said neutrally as he stared at Kendo. I need to talk with the boy. Not wanting to mess anything up, Kendo reluctantly listened, stepping out into the hallway. Even knowing that if he wanted to avoid screwing things up, he shouldn't do anything that involved punching doors, Rappa was pretty tempted to barge back in when the crying started. Kaizome was walking around in Shizuoka when he heard a series of distant explosions. A villain attack? He hadn't been intending to debut quite so soon, but in an area like this, crime didn't tend to be kept in check as well as the more desirable areas. If Stendhal was needed sooner, then so be it. Putting his training to use, the young man started running, cutting through alleyways and jumping blockades to get to the source of the attacks. By the time he got there, it seemed whoever had caused the disaster had fled, judging by the lack of an apparent commotion. He caught movement out of the corner of his eye and was about to head toward it when he heard crying from one of the still standing portions of the wrecked building. Quickly scaling the fence, he ran toward the base of the building and started climbing the wall. Letting himself in through a broken window, he carefully avoided the jagged bits of glass poking out from the frame. The crying from earlier seemed to be coming from beyond the door. Though the entry had been warped, there was no way the door would open anymore. He braced himself before kicking the object, having to do so a few more times before it gave way. Going through the other side, he walked into a hallway and found the source of the crying, a little girl with brown hair. He was about to try asking why she was crying when he saw how the hallway abruptly ended. Looking over the edge, he spotted the still forms of two adults, limbs bent at unnatural angles. Those must have been, he corrected himself, the girl's parents. He was at first tempted to take her down and leave her for the first responders to find, but that wasn't what a hero would do. Heroes didn't leave things for someone else to do. "Kid, we're going." The girl looked at him confusedly, rubbing away large tears. "But, Mama, Daddy, they're dead. You aren't. I'm going to help you." Are you a hero?" she asked, tears still running down her face. "Humph. In a way," he replied, pushing aside the pride he felt at her question. "Now come with me, this place could collapse any minute." Not giving her a chance to respond, he picked the girl up, using an old scarf to secure her to his back before carefully descending the building. No one saw him slip away with the girl. They assumed that she was too close to one of the explosions and so was declared to have died along with her parents. Kaizome realized he was close to his mother and father's house. It was only a few hours' walk, and so that's where he went. He may be well learned in many things, but they would have much more knowledge on childcare than himself. He briefly considered leaving the girl with them before quickly rejecting the thought she had called him a hero. A true hero wouldn't offload their responsibilities to someone else. Walking up to the aging house, he knocked on the door, hearing muffled shuffling before the door eventually opened, revealing his father. He suddenly found his hand grasped firmly by the man, who was smiling brightly. "Akane, he's here." There was the sound of quick footsteps before a middle-aged woman with bright pink eyes and dark hair came up beside Dad, his mother. "Kaizome, it's been so long. Why haven't you dropped by sooner?" she pressed suspiciously. "Calm down, Akane," his dad cut in. "He comes home after how many years and the first thing you do is start drilling him." "Oh, you know he can handle it. He always leaned more towards me than you," she declared. Tell me again which of us it was who needed the other to help get charges for violent protesting dropped." Dad replied calmly. "You know just as well I do that things haven't ever gotten that far since," Kaizome's mother replied. It was then that the girl stirred, having fallen asleep not long after they'd started on their journey, so Kaizome gently picked her up off his back and set her down. The kid's chubby hands then began rubbing at her tear-stained face. The movement caught his mother's attention, her previous banter forgotten. "Son, I know your father and I always said that we would support you no matter what so long as you gave us a grandchild, but isn't she a little old for you to be the father?" Kaizome sputtered. The idea of fighting for his beliefs? He could handle it. Risking prison? He would accept it if need be. Killing the scum of society? He would rush it head on. Unfortunately, this resolve did not extend to his mother, mistaking a 4-year-old girl as being his biological child. "Mother. No. Just no. I saved her after her parents died. What else could I do?" Dad looked at him sternly. "I hope you don't plan on letting anyone know then. If she has any family, it would make it quite hard for you to adopt her." "Please tell me you aren't serious," his mother replied. Intensely. He knows better than to just blindly follow the law. Who are you?" the girl asked in bewilderment. Right. Names," Dad said, snapping his fingers. "The young man who's holding your hand is my son, Akaguro Kaizome. I am Akaguro Masayoshi, and this woman here is my wife, Agakuro Akane. A pleasure to meet you, miss." "Oh, Ochako," the girl stammered. "Yuri Uraraka Ochako." "Well, Miss Uraraka, please excuse our banter. I would dare say that our son has adopted you, if that is agreeable with you." "Huh? Gravity is a force of nature, humanity is a force that nurtures." Chapter 4, Apathy and Sympathy. "So nice to see you, Shuzenji, Aizawa." Nedu greeted the two heroes cheerfully. "Would you care for tea?" Nedu noticed how the young man frowned, accepting the cup he offered. He seemed resigned to the whole situation. Shuzenji, meanwhile, took the cup while maintaining her neutral expression, but Nedu noticed a hint of exasperation in her eyes. Honestly, he wanted to have some fun to offset the annoyance of dealing with the dull hero Public Safety Committee earlier. If he was going to help these two, then he would have some entertainment while doing so. Young Aizawa, how nice of you to accompany Miss Shuzenji. The hero's frown intensified as he answered. You wanted me here, Nedu, didn't you? He asked with all the enthusiasm of a rock. Always so perceptive. I was indeed hoping that you would come along. Nezu's expression turned serious as he continued. I wanted to speak with you both about the tragic accident 2 days ago. There are many things we need to discuss. I understand that your nephew was at the center of it, Aizawa? Humph. It was a quack doctor's fault, I think, but yes. Izuku's quirk awakened rather violently, and triggered one of the waiting parents' remote detonation quirk. There were 7 casualties in total, the owners of the construction company and their daughter, along with 3 bystanders. Shuzenji and Aizawa both looked rather troubled, even though they were both already aware of what had happened. It was then that the older pro-hero spoke up, her eyes narrowing. We are all aware of that, Nedu. But you sent your invitation even before I received an alert about the explosion. What else is going on here? Nedu grinned. It was always satisfying when someone noticed parts of his plans, even if they couldn't put them together. Oh, I was walking nearby when it happened and found 2 individuals who had been injured. I treated them as best as I could and took them back here. I was hoping you could look them over. Shuzenji was still looking at him suspiciously, but her years as a medical professional seemed to take priority. Could you tell me where they are? I can go take a look at them right now. Oh, that won't be necessary, Nedu assured her with a grin before calling out to someone else. You both may come in now. Suddenly the door opened, revealing a young woman with dark blue and pink strands of hair leading a boy with red feathery wings. Nedu watched with glee as Aizawa and Shuzenji stared in shock. It wasn't every day they got to see the well-known heroine of the HSPC in the flesh. Lady Nagant. Of course they didn't recognize the young boy. The poor child had been snatched up by that organization at far too young of an age. The boy Takami Kigo, if his research were to be trusted, looked around the room, his golden irises focusing upon every minute detail. For an adult, he would praise that level of observation, but a child trying to pick apart a room like that was highly concerning. Where Hawks had measured curiosity, Nagant had a distrustful air about her, doubt written across her face. She still hadn't even told him her real name. He wondered just why she was so tight-lipped but knew it was far too early to push her on the subject. He would need time for that information. How perfect then that he had strung along those stuffy HSPC fools to get some. Sir, Aizawa began, tone not hiding his shock or suspicion. What did you do? I doubt the HSPC let her come here for a friendly visit. As I said earlier, I found them wounded. What better place to take them than to UA? Nedu asked innocently. Shuzenji looked like she was starting to believe him, but Aizawa still seemed to think there was more here at play. He would be right, of course. And the commission just let her, Hawks, the young boy offered shyly, standing closely beside Nagant. And Hawks stay here to be treated? No. You must have done something, the erasure hero finished. Why you shouldn't talk back to Mr. Nedu, Hawks spoke up in a worried tone. It's perfectly fine, young Takami, Nedu assured the boy, who looked surprised at the use of the name. It's Hawks, the boy quietly corrected. What was that? Shuzenji asked, her face scrunching in confusion. That doesn't sound like. Nedu interrupted the woman with a slight twitch, a signal to not interfere. He was going to help these children. Young Aizawa scowled at him before seeming to decide to play along, while Shuzenji started to tend to scars that Hawks glanced at with an almost imperceptible shudder, and Nagant glared at with disgust, though Nedu noticed that her anger wasn't directed at the boy himself. The signs didn't paint the picture-perfect image that the HSPC had cultivated for the young heroine, or her charge. Finally, Aizawa looked towards Nedu, a silent acknowledgement in his eyes. Now was not the place or time to discuss what they had seen. So, Aizawa, he addressed the young hero. How is your nephew's quirk training going? Ah, there it was. He watched as the erasure hero's expression morphed into one of surprise. Nedu had caught him off guard. It hadn't taken as much as he'd thought it would, in all honesty. Good, the young man replied, trying to get back onto a level playing field. I spoke with Inko and she loved the thought of you teaching her son. Nedu interrupted cheerfully. He already had young Aizawa on the back foot, he just needed one more push. How many cameras were you controlling, sir? Aizawa certainly was more perceptive than most. He would make a good teacher in the future. Who's that, Dad? Oh, that's Ectoplasm. Hitoshi's dad answered. Did something stand out to you? He has a funny smile, Hitoshi observed. Dad laughed. I suppose he does. Oh, watch closely, Hitoshi, I think he's about to win the fight. Hitoshi stared intently as ectoplasm dodged the villain's attacks when he suddenly coughed up a weird white goo. What's he doing, Dad? Hitoshi asked curiously. Ah, that's his quirk, clones. Just watch. After a few seconds the goo took shape until there was a second ectoplasm, quickly managing to subdue the villain. Whoa, that's cool. I wish I had a quirk like that, Hitoshi lamented. Don't worry, your quirk is far more interesting than mine, Hitosh. How about you go up and ask for an autograph? Look, he's already signing a few, he said, handing Hitoshi a notebook he had pulled out of. Hitoshi wasn't sure, to be honest. Quickly grabbing the object, Hitoshi ran to the front of the crowd, holding out the notebook until ectoplasm noticed him. Do you want an autograph? The hero asked Hitoshi, receiving a nod in response. The man quickly scribbled his name inside the front page before handing the notebook back. Would you like to talk to me in a few minutes? He asked in a strange tone. Oh no. Did he know what Hitoshi's quirk was? The boy quickly shook his head and ran back through the crowd to find his dad. Damn it. How does a kid like that just disappear? Fukusha thought to himself. That boy needed help. The look on his face seemed off for such a young child, and his hair looked like a mess. An orphan perhaps? Hopefully the boy was local and he would run into him again. Maybe he'd get along with Juzu. Hitoshi looked out the window as buildings flew by. The bullet train was pretty cool. Even if it made him feel a bit funny. Now entering. Okay, Hitoshi, that's our cue, his dad said excitedly. So why are we here anyway? Hitoshi asked impatiently. He just wanted to get home. He hoped Mom hadn't sent Dad a shopping list. I just have to do some quick shopping for your mother and then we'll be on our way home. Hitoshi groaned. He knew it, life just wasn't fair. His dad noticed his frown and smiled? What was going on? Luckily for you, there's a hero nearby. What would you think of watching him while I get this stuff for Mom? Hitoshi stared seriously as he considered his dad's offer before nodding slowly. Okay then. I'll take you over there, and I'll be back before you know it. Hitoshi's dad grabbed his hand and started leading them through the crowd before entering a mall. See, he's right in there. Dad said, pointing at a man who was just wearing jeans all over himself. He looks funny, Hitoshi said, tilting his head as if that would make the man wear something normal. Funnier than majestic? Hitoshi thought for a moment before shaking his head firmly. No. His dad laughed before waving goodbye as he headed to another part of the mall. Hitoshi stood in the crowd for a while, watching the hero do tricks with his quirk. At one point he used it to puppet some stuffed animals around. It was neat seeing how many ways the man used his quirk, but it was kinda boring. Hitoshi liked watching heroes help people. Sitting around playing wasn't as exciting at all. Unbeknownst to Hitoshi, the hero had been glancing at him every so often worriedly. Tsunagu decided it was time to do something. That purple-haired child had been just watching the show for at least half an hour now with that strange expression. Something was wrong. I need an assistant from the audience. You there, he declared, pointing at the messy-haired child, would you please come up here? The young boy stared at Tsunagu, his eyes silently asking if he was talking to him. Nodding, Tsunagu waited for the boy to walk up to the small stage. He soon drew the child into helping him with various acts. As soon as he was done, he'd try to figure out what to do about the boy. At least, that's what he was planning to do, until disaster struck. Hitoshi, come on, it's time to go. Tsunaga narrowed his eyes at the strange-looking man, who was wearing a trenchcoat that obscured his figure along with an oversized fedora. Some sort of criminal perhaps? The outfit screamed danger. As he turned to look back at the child, he only caught a glimpse of his purple hair dashing through the crowd toward the man. He must be a trafficker. Tsunagu dropped his props and tried to follow the strange man and the child, but he quickly lost them in the crowd. Hitoshi decided that he liked best Jeanist, even if he'd tried to make Hitoshi help. Hitoshi liked watching. Being watched? Not so much. Why'd you have to go so fast, Dad? He complained as they finally slowed down. Sorry about that, Toshi. I lost track of time, so we've got to get home as fast as we can to make it on time for dinner. Mom would wait for us, Hitoshi said confidently. Yes, she would, Dad agreed. Except for the fact that she needed me to grab some of this stuff so she can finish making it. After quickly getting them onto another train, they were finally on the way home. As they pulled into the familiar station that signaled that they were close to home, Hitoshi couldn't help but wonder why two heroes had made such funny faces. His thoughts were interrupted as Dad grabbed his hand and started walking outside. They were close to home when a man came up to them. Is your quirk a bird? Hitoshi couldn't help asking. The blonde-haired man laughed. Nope. Why'd you ask, little listener? 'Cause your hair looks like a pipia too. The hero laughed. Hitoshi couldn't help but cover his ears at the sudden noise. Ha, I guess it kinda does, doesn't it? The man joked. Well, would you like to get a picture with this cockatoo? Yeah, Hitoshi said simply. Okay then. Your dad can take a picture, and then I'll take one of both of you. Sound good, little listener? Uh-huh. Dad let go of Hitoshi's hand and pulled out his phone, stepping back to get a good picture before a small click was heard and he stepped back toward them. Okay, now I'll take mine, the hero declared, stepping back quickly to take his own photo before giving a thumbs up and walking away. Do you know who he was? Hitoshi asked his dad curiously, who grinned widely. Yup. That was the voice hero, Present Mike, he exclaimed. Just wait till your mother hears about this. Hashtag off topic. Michael, okay, just met the cutest little guy while on patrol. Michael, 0115.png. Ghost. Ghost, surely it can't be. Ghost is typing. Giraffe, it's the child. Ghost, it's the orphan. Ghost, wait, you recognize him too, Genist? Michael, what are you guys talking about? Ghost and Giraffe are typing. Ghost, I think I saw him earlier. He was making a strange face. I was worried but he disappeared before I could do anything. Giraffe, I saw him and thought the same, but then that man called out and took the child. I tried to follow but lost sight of them. Michael, wait, so that was a kidnapper? Not his dad. Michael, I got pictures with them. How did I not notice? Giraffe, if we see either of them again, we must be careful. We will try to befriend the boy so we can be sure not to spook him, and figure out why he is with that man. Sometimes we fail to notice someone hurting. Sometimes we assume the worst without ever asking. Chapter 5, Do No Harm? 2 days after the accident, Chio found herself once again in the small clinic, accompanied by her 2 assistants. She had been working quickly to pack her bags while Hari and Kai looked around the room. Hari had accidentally tripped Kai, who momentarily activated his quirk in surprise, overhaul, rapidly opening a hole in the wall before Kai hurried to revert the destruction. Wait, I think there's something there, Kai. Hari declared, pointing to part of the wall that had been affected. Can you open this area up? It's filthy. Hari glared in response. After a few moments of the unspoken staring contest, Kai sighed, pressing his hand to the wall and carefully peeling back the outer wall to reveal a sturdy-looking box. Kai studied the safe for quite a few minutes before touching it, effortlessly exposing the contents, which Hari quickly laid out on the nearby desk. After putting on a set of gloves that Kai pulled from his jacket pocket, there were folders, filled with files. As Hari pulled file after file from the manila folders, Kai leaned over his shoulder with a displeased expression as they looked at the work of Dr. Tsubasa. Strong quirk would work well in synergy with Patient 4570's quirk. Potential match for Subject 6? Powerful electric quirk mental link. Could be useful for the Numu project if quirk manipulation technology is a success. Something had seemed off about Dr. Tsubasa. Chio had heard him muttering about a master and acquiring quirks off to the side of the room a few times while working with him. She'd passed it off as the man's eccentricities, but what Hari and Kai had found didn't seem to support that wishful thinking. That wasn't even taking into account the device the man had attached to the young Midoriya. It, unfortunately, wasn't fully intact when investigators had looked it over, but the implications of the visible design choices were highly concerning. Though the most ming of all was the fact that Dr. Tsubasa Kenji had completely disappeared without a trace. Grabbing her personal effects, she thought about the invitation she had received from Principal Nedu of UA to visit him at her earliest convenience. She wondered what she could have done to grab the attention of the mouse bear dog? It didn't matter. What did matter was whatever he was up to now. Anything else, boys? Kai and Hari turned to look at Chio, the pale-haired teen speaking up. Besides the fact that his medical license should most definitely be revoked? Not a whole lot. Kai nodded in agreement. His files appear to be well kept. What he noted though all seemed to vaguely point to potential human experimentation. Despite the mask he was wearing, Chio could pick out the lines of a grimace. He always was a bit more detached. Excuse me, dear, but you did just say human experimentation? The teen nodded. The files seem oddly focused on attributes of patients and subjects combined with the device. He let the implication hang, while Chio briefly panicked over the fact that she had been working with some who sounded more like a mad scientist than a doctor. How did someone just hide something like this? How had she not done something sooner? Recovery girl, Hari began before she cut him off. I've told you can call me Chio. Chio. It's done. Let's just do what we can here and leave the rest to the hero Kai's working with and police. You're right, she sighed, before changing the subject, not wanting to think any more about the implications from what the boys had found. I know this isn't a school day for you, but I need to head to UA. I might invite Eraserhead to join me, if Nedu hasn't already. If it's all the same to you, I'm going to look for more of these safe boxes and come later to share the contents with Principal Nedu, Kai replied. You aren't going there without me, Hari declared. You'll get lost in cleaning the support room again. Kai scowled. I just need to push a bit harder. I know I can clean that filth. Chiyo bid the teens farewell as they bickered, making her way out of the clinic as she wondered what Nedu had invited her over for. Over an hour later. Chiyo grumbled to herself as she left UA upon the conclusion of a very long meeting. That rat. Always 2 steps ahead and grinning like a refined maniac. Still, the UA principal's suggestions for teaching young Midoriya were sound, and he had welcomed Chiyo and young Aizawa's input. It still didn't stop the feeling of being a mouse in a wheel. As she thought about young Nagant, she remembered a moment in the past when she had come across 2 similarly troubled youths. Since she was already nearby, Chiyo decided to head to the pharmacy to stock up on supplies. She was running low on bandages and antiseptics. Turning into one of her preferred stores, she was surprised to see 2 boys browsing the store, one wearing what looked like a medical mask. Their body language was strangely wary as they looked at various shelves before the mask-wearing one pointed toward a sturdy-looking bottle of disinfectant. Curious as to what they were up to, she couldn't help but listen to the conversation between the 2. Look, the shorter of the 2 sighed. I know you want. The masked boy narrowed his eyes at his friend. Okay, fine, the white-haired boy relented. But if you're going to get this stuff, make it quick. Who knows who might be watching? The masked boy nodded as he grabbed the bottle and headed down the aisle, grabbing a large package of gloves as they went. The second boy looked like he wanted to protest, but didn't say anything, reluctantly grabbing a box of masks that resembled the one his companion was wearing. Chiyo continued to follow the boys quietly, though unfortunately for her, being a hero sometimes made such things difficult. Hey, are you Recovery Girl? I'm a big fan. And just like that, the boys became aware of her presence, turning their heads around at the civilian's exclamation. The unmasked one tugged at his companion's shirt and whispered something quickly before rushing out of the store the chase was on. Looking back, Chiyo wouldn't be able to say why she decided to go after them, but she was glad she did. She was tempted to call out, but she knew the chances of words being able to stop them were slim, so she instead opted to chase after them. She wasn't in as good shape as she used to be, but the 2 boys looked to be 10 at most. She could beat them. Rushing out of the building, she followed the 2 boys, noticing them vanish down an alleyway. Quickly following, she went down the narrow street, a section of the road slowly rising up from the ground to block her off. Fortunately, she'd had to deal with far worse, and managed to scale the blockade before it fully formed. Unfortunately for her quarries, they had ended up running into a dead-end alley, the street stopping not far after their improvised barrier. The white-haired boy seemed to have also noticed their predicament. I told you, Chisaki. We shouldn't have stayed there so long. There's no way we're getting past this hero. It was then that the other boy, Chisaki, finally spoke, sounding irritated in a way that seemed strange for a child. I know, Kurono. I have a plan. Kurono seemed fed up, arrow-shaped locks of hair swaying restlessly. We can't even use our quirks, unless you want to be labeled as a vigil. I know, the other boy growled. Do you have a better idea? It was then that Chiyo decided enough was enough and reminded the 2 that she was still there. I have an idea. You 2 can come with me and explain what's going on, or you can explain how you made this wall to the police. Whichever you boys prefer. We don't need help from a hero. The golden-eyed boy nodded in agreement with his companion, eyes narrowed in suspicion. Chiyo tried to think of some way to get the 2 boys to trust her anything when she noticed the masked boy quickly glance at her bag of medical supplies from the corner of his eye. Maybe she had just the thing she needed. Setting the bag down in front of her, she backed away a meter or so. How about this then? You can have what's in the bag and tell me right here, Chiyo offered gently. The boy stared longingly at the open bag, a contemplative look on his face, his companion watching Chiyo suspiciously. Are you really thinking about it, Chisaki? What if she's lying? Chisaki looked thoughtful, clasping his small hands. What if we made sure she wouldn't? The masked boy thought out loud before turning his attention back to Chiyo. We'll tell you, hero. But only if you promise not to tell anyone what we say. My. So he was a child somewhere underneath there. He didn't seem to trust heroes or his companion but still seemed content with just a promise. I think I can agree to that, Chiyo replied wryly. Upon hearing her response, the boy pulled off a glove and offered his right hand, pinky outstretched. It wasn't a common way to make promises anymore, but she repeated the gesture, grasping the boy's pinky with hers before he started to speak. Pinky swear, whoever lies will be made to swallow 1,000 needles. Doing her best to appear calm, she started to realize just why these boys were so worried. Chisaki wasn't copying the still popular American take on the pinky promise. He had just performed the Yakuza finger cut off. Luckily, for all the mature front the two had put on, neither seemed to pick up on her slight hesitation. "Well, is that good enough for the two of you?" she asked, keeping any hint of suspicion from leaking into her voice. Kurono turned to Chisaki questioningly, receiving a quick nod from the golden-eyed boy. "Okay then," Chio said kindly. "Start anywhere you'd like." 2 days ago, Dr. Tsubasa Kenji. Kyudai clutched at the area where he'd hit his head. After the chaos, he had quickly exited the building in the confusion and called upon Kurojairi to return him to safety. Whatever happened, his identity as Dr. Tsubasa was no longer safe. As he tried to recall the events that had taken place, details were fuzzy. It must have been due to his aching head, he thought to himself. Which again brought him back to what had happened. He had been investigating a quirk, right? Some child with a good quirk for master. But as he tried to remember the rest, he was met with nothing but a vague sense of something gone wrong. Quickly, he realized a way to figure out what had happened. He'd look at his lists, that's what he'd do, scan his records to figure out which child would have had a powerful enough quirk to leave even him reeling. Making his way further into the laboratory that he called home, Kyudai walked past vats filled with distorted bodies and specialized liquid. He could tell anyone who asked each and every process and chemical that went into both, along with many other details. These were his masterpieces in the making. The Numu, as Master had dubbed them. Master had believed in Kyudai, taken him in when the medical community had mocked his warnings about quirk singularity. But when the Numu were finished, who would be laughing? Kyudai continued to rack his brain over what had happened as he came to the door to his main office, pressing in the long string of numbers to unlock the reinforced door. It never hurt to be prepared. He hummed tunelessly as he logged into his computer, pulling up a copy of his patients for that day, finding the last child he would have looked at during that time. He'd been a last-minute addition. Apparently the family had been forced to move and had chosen Muzurafu after someone's quirk rendered part of the apartment they lived in unusable. He continued to read his notes, no matter how mundane they were. Information was power, and he was not a weak man. Continuing to read, he finally found the young boy's name. Kaminari Denki. Possible quirk, electrification. Perfect. He could just schedule a follow-up appointment. Where he would most likely be found out if Dr. Tsubasa hadn't already been stripped of every possible credential. No, this was a job for Kurojairi. Kyudai quickly skimmed through his notes before finding where he'd written down the location the family had provided. Quickly opening up his browser, he found a nearby set of coordinates that Kurojairi could warp to without attracting attention. Calling out for the man, it was only a matter of seconds before the smoke-like villain appeared from a swirling, misty portal. "Yes, doctor," he asked, waiting idly. "I need your assistance. I must acquire this boy." Kyudai held up a photo depicting the child. Kurogiri's yellow eyes narrowing as he took it in. "Understood, doctor. Where shall I be going?" Kyudai showed the warper the first set of coordinates, before showing the location of the boy in relation to them. "This is where you will warp, and this building here," he explained, pointing to a location on the computer monitor, "is where the boy is located. You will need to watch out for a few local heroes, but that should not be of too much difficulty." "Yes, doctor. It shall be done. I assume that the cover of darkness will be the best time." Kyudai nodded, not noticing how Kurojairi squinted strangely for a moment at the young dark-haired man on the list of patrolling heroes. "I will do no harm or injustice," said one. "The surgeon may be excused for causing harm if the cancer is removed," said the other. Chapter 6, White, Gray, Black. "So, you're gonna help me be a hero?" Shoyuta silently wondered how Izuku had so much energy. Children were truly a mystery. "Humph, I guess in a way. If you want to be a hero, then you need a good handle on your quirk." "Even All Might?" the green-haired boy asked in awe. Shoyuta grunted. "You know how strong he is, right?" The question was rhetorical. In all honesty, Inko had told him about how much his nephew idolized the man. "Yeah, he's even stronger than Endeavor," Izuku exclaimed, carefully sounding out the number 2 hero's name. "Well then, imagine what he could do if he wasn't careful. He could knock over a building, or really hurt someone if he didn't control how much power he used." Izuku nodded rapidly. "Like how mom doesn't turn the oven too high because the food would go poof." Shoyuta suppressed the urge to smirk. His nephew really just compared the level of control that the number 1 hero had to burning food in an oven. "That's one way to put it," he replied. "Do you remember what you felt like when interference manifested?" Izuku hummed. Not really. It was just kinda? Poof," he explained, spreading his hands apart in an imitation of an explosion. "Okay, we're starting from square one, then," Shoyuta sighed, crouching down so he was looking eye to eye with the 4-year-old. Now, try to picture your quirk. You remember those red tentacles you made? Aha! Good. Try to imagine one of them. They were coming from your fingers. Shoyuta thanked Recovery Girl for managing to remember some specifics of the quirk's manifestation. It made teaching Izuku that much easier. The green-haired boy replied, a look of intense concentration covering his small face as a red tendril started to sprout from his right pinky finger. Good job, Shoyuta said as he watched more tendrils start to sprout from Izuku's other fingers. Now, let go of that picture. Izuku nodded, the extensions to his fingers suddenly disappearing. What now? Izuku asked excitedly. We do it again. Again? Izuku asked, eyes open wide. Shoyuta nodded. It can take a while to be able to use your quirk. Izuku stood straight, a determined expression on his face. If All Might did that, then I will too. Can Kaken come next time? Izuku asked eagerly, carefully maneuvering 5 tendrils through a small maze that Inko and Shoyuta had constructed to help Izuku's control over the tentacle-like appendages. A friend may be a good thing to have to help cheer Izuku on, Shoyuta thought. I think you have enough control now, so that should be fine. Oi, nerd. Shoyuta already had a feeling he was going to end today several jelly packets lighter, perhaps even a headache to really tie it together. Kaken reminded him of Yamada in all the wrong ways. He was loud. I assume that you're Bakugo, he asked the ash blonde tiredly. Aha, I'm gonna be the best hero ever, the boy declared, punctuating the statement with a small blast from his palm. Shoyuta wondered how he could make sure this boy didn't get in the way of Izuku's training, while Izuku nodded along with his friend's statement. I'm gonna be his sidekick. Suddenly an idea came to mind. How would you like to help me teach Izuku more about controlling his quirk, then, Bakugo? Shoyuta asked, hoping the boy would rise to the bait. Bakugo grinned savagely in response, chubby fingers curling and uncurling. Of course I'm gonna help. How could he be the best sidekick without my help? Nedu hummed tunelessly, offering Nagant a cup of tea. The HSPC taught unraised hero eyed the liquid warily. Not wanting to pressure the young woman, he placed the cup down near the teapot, taking a sip from his own before Nagant finally spoke. What do you want, Mr. Nedu? The Chimera smiled as he answered the loaded question. There are many things I want, Lady Nagant. One of those would be helping you and young Hawks. Nagant's eyes narrowed at the mention of the young boy. Whatever you do, you watch what you try with him. Nedu held his paws up in a placating gesture. I only mean to offer a room for your stay. There's no need for you to use something such as the closet. Again, Nedu added internally with a sigh. The young woman held a doubtful expression as she answered. I don't want either of us to impose, she deflected, though Nedu was hardly one to end such a challenge of wits when afforded the chance. No need to worry. We have a number of spare rooms, and I would be remiss if I were to let a fellow hero go without when we have so much to offer. He wasn't talking about mere room and board. Yes, that would be nice, Nagant faltered, though the brief moment of weakness was quickly hidden behind a mask of indifference, idly running her fingers through her two-toned hair. Well, idly to most, Nedu was not unaware of the qualities afforded to her hair due to her power. Rifle was certainly more unique than the average quirk. All the more reason to wonder just what had happened to the lovely Lady Nagant and the boy with her called Hawks. Excellent. Nedu replied cheerfully, masking any hint of his internal thoughts. I can ask Recovery Girl to take you to one such room if that is acceptable. Nagant gave a small nod in response, and Nedu decided to take a calculated risk. Nagant, would you be willing to stay at UA longer than may be necessary, as far as the Hero Public Safety Commission is concerned? Nedu hoped that she might see the clue he had thrown, testing the waters as it were. He didn't wait long, the young hero looking at him warily, though her tone betrayed a different story. Hawk's health is very important to me. If your medical staff deem a longer stay necessary, then I believe the Commission may understand the need for special care. Kana didn't know why she had said what she had. She needed to be careful. Don't let the facade slip. Slipping was inexcusable. But she just felt something. Maybe someone cared more about people and less about the perfect clothes, the perfect posture, the perfect poster girl. After all, the truth was far from perfect. She would watch Nedu not for the HSPC as Lady Nagant, but for herself, as Tsutsumi Kana. And if she didn't mention the strange way the UA principal was acting, they didn't need to be any the wiser. I think I have made a mistake, Kyudai finally said aloud as he continued to watch the young boy interact with the objects Kurogyri had obtained. I believe he is playing with them, Doctor, the Misty Man suggested. No, that isn't what I meant, Kyudai replied as he rubbed his head. I'm not sure if this is the right child. I can return him. No, Kyudai interrupted quickly. His quirk seems linked to his mental state. I believe he may be our breakthrough for the Numu project. Are you sure his body can handle it? Kyudai looked at Kurogiri with confusion before realizing what he had assumed. "Oh, I don't mean as a Numu himself," the bald man explained. "If I study how his quirk affects his mind, it could help give future Numu a more useful brain, on level with 6 intelligence without his impulsiveness? I suppose that is indeed an effect of his complete lack of self." Kyudai thought to himself number 6 was a source of mixed feelings. He could pass as a normal member of society, and wield the quirks he held sufficiently. The real problem was the tendency to latch on to a person obsessively, no doubt trying to find himself. Kyudai knew it would lead to problems someday if not addressed. "Doctor?" Kyudai was reminded of the question he'd been asked and stroked his chin thoughtfully. "I suppose that's one way to put it," he mused before walking toward the blonde-haired child. As he got closer he couldn't help but be confused at the sight of the boy, who kept trying to force a square-shaped peg into a very much round hole. Even his grandson didn't display such a lack of intelligence. Still, that was surely a matter that the right training could remedy. Kyudai pried the peg from the boy's hand before putting it into the square-shaped hole. "Why'd you put it in there?" the child asked, turning the object over to get the peg to fall out. "Because that is where it fits best," Kyudai answered matter-of-factly. "But it's not fun," the boy replied indignantly as he proceeded to drop a small toy car into the hole. Kyudai sighed. Sacrifices had to be made to advance the cause of science. Fun has nothing to do with it. Use your head. He was thankful for Kurogiri's reaction time, quickly teleporting him out of the room before the boy unleashed several hundred volts of electricity into the pegboard. With a headbutt. After Kurogiri confirmed everything to be okay, save for a few destroyed instruments, Kyudai found himself summoned by the master. The man looked at Kyudai with an indecipherable gaze, finally speaking after a long moment of silence. "Doctor, I believe it is time we return focus to the latest subject. I am not sure number 6 fits our requirements." Kyudai nodded in agreement, the familiar words reminding him of the last time they had been spoken. A violent anti-heteromorph protest a number of years ago had lodged itself in the way of Master's search for a new candidate the last time. Deeming the risk of discovery with the increased hero presence too risky, Master had left as silently as he had arrived. Kyudai couldn't help but scoff at the memory. He had released his worries of the quirk singularity decades ago, yet still all people could focus on was primitive discrimination. Such a petty, pointless thing to get in the way of Master's grand plan. Regardless, the self-proclaimed Demon King had decided to turn his attention to 2 particular subjects. The first subject 6 was due to how he could be kneaded like a wad of clay, the reason being how the subject seemed to not perceive himself, no doubt. The second on the other hand was much the opposite, being chosen due to how much he reminded Master of himself. Both subjects stood out when others had proven to be volatile or flawed. Kyudai would find a way to push beyond these mere limits of body and mind. Change would march on no matter humanity's struggle, but Master would meet it with open arms. He would be sure of that. The shades of life are ever-shifting. White is sullied beneath the rays of life, gray tries in vain to keep from swinging to either side of the tightrope, and even the blackest night can find itself lit by the smallest spark. Chapter 7, Recoil. Stand straight. Keep the barrel steady. Do not falter. Kana reached up automatically, pulling back a clump of hair that she started to roll into the shape of a bullet, only to be harshly interrupted by a slap to the hand that sent the partially formed bullet flying away. "You should have enough," her instructor said with a scowl. But I only have one." "Make it count." Kana was shaken from the memory as she was pulled into wakefulness by the sensation of feathers rubbing against her. Instantly she was on full alert, though the cause only seemed to have been Hawks rolling in his sleep. Hawks. The name felt wrong even as she thought it. That wasn't his name, it was their name. A branding the HSPC had stamped down. Most heroes wore their alias with pride, but for Kana and her charge, it was just a reminder that they weren't who they were anymore. Glancing at her watch, Kana groaned. It was only 2 a.m. Knowing she wouldn't get back to sleep with the thoughts running through her head, the young woman silently exited the room she and her charge had been offered, wandering aimlessly through the now dimly lit halls. Suddenly she spun around, pulling back her forearm to quickly activate her quirk, rifle already formed and ped before she fully finished turning around. "I apologize for surprising you, Miss Nagant," came the placating tone of Nedu. As quickly as Kana had prepared herself, she retracted her quirk, looking uneasily upon the mouse. "Bear? Dog? Where did you come from?" she asked warily. "How did he sneak up on me?" "I was merely trying to take a stroll to think," Nedu explained. "I tend to walk rather silently. I am quite sorry for scaring you." "You didn't scare me," Kana responded quickly, schooling her expression to seem like she hadn't just been caught off guard. Nedu nodded. "Of course not. But why are you awake at such a late hour?" "I couldn't sleep," Kana replied. In that case, would you accompany me? It's rather lonely this early in the morning, Nedu asked. Kana wasn't sure 2 a.m. truly counted as morning, but now that she knew the UA principal was awake, she'd prefer to be where she could see him. That should be fine, she replied, following her guide as he started walking down the hall. The two had been walking in silence for a while when Kana finally spoke up. What do you want? She blurted out before she could stop herself. Even with all the HSPC's training, she was still young and out of her element. She cursed internally for not showing more restraint, but the damage was done. Nedu almost looked hurt? Maybe? It was hard to get a read on his emotions, beady black eyes staring at her intently. I want to help you, Nedu said in a more subdued tone than she'd heard from him over the past weeks. I know what it feels like. Kana was surprised by how sympathetic the pro-hero sounded. She forced herself to seem calm, collected, but Nedu continued. I was experimented upon by humans, he continued clinically, though there was an underlying tension to his words. I can't remember much. Is this my natural quirk? Was I always like this? Where do I come from? I truly don't remember. Two things had stuck out from the UA principal's words. First of all was the revelation that he had apparently been part of some sort of experimentation. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. The other though? What do you mean, natural quirk? She asked, not truly expecting a reply. Nedu clasped his paws behind his back, eyes focused on nothing she could see, before finally answering. That isn't something I tell just anyone. Kana sighed. She should have known better. How do you feel about a trade? A trade? And just what would I need to trade? She asked suspiciously. Your name, Nedu replied evenly. Humph, you should know. Lady Naga, Kana began, only to be interrupted. No. Your name, Nedu interrupted. Kana tensed. Why was he asking? What did he want from her? A distrustful expression spread across her face, eyes narrowed. The chimera seemed to sense her turmoil, shrugging sadly. I'm sorry. Maybe in time we can figure out a solution. With the HSPC? Kana thought sourly. We'd sooner see All Might yield to a villain. Nedu didn't say anything after that, and before long Kana found herself back in front of the room that she'd come from. Quietly opening the door, she was surprised to see Hawks Takami sitting up on the mattress, the preteen holding a feather as he stared at her through sharp eyes. Where were you? The question was simple, polite. Not a demand or order. Perfectly obedient. She hated it. But she didn't let any of those thoughts show as she answered, sitting down on the bed beside the boy. I was worried, she replied simply, rubbing a lock of blue and pink hair between her fingers. I thought we couldn't do that, the boy asked confusedly, head tilting in a manner that would look more at home on a bird of prey than a person. Kana continued to roll the hair in her hand, not taking long to answer. Okay, how about, concerned, does that work? Takami was silent for a minute before eventually answering. I guess so. But why were you concerned? He asked, putting down the feather he was holding to make a set of finger quotes. Well, someone woke me up with a bunch of feathers, Kana replied, unable to help but crack a small smile at the mortified expression on Takami's face. I'm sorry, he apologized profusely, not seeming to notice how he'd spread his wings out in his panic. It's fine, Kana assured him. I found out some interesting stuff. Anything for the commission? He asked dutifully. No, she lied. I'm afraid I have nothing to share yet. Kai sighed. Rikov Chio wouldn't be happy. She had been agitated ever since the accident with that Midoriya brat, but all he could think about were the strange details in the files Hari had found. They just didn't match up with what he expected. There was no way a normal body could withstand the modification ideas that had been scribbled on some profiles. There was more at play here. He was sure of it. Is something the matter, young Chisaki? Principal Nedu probed, leaning across the table with an indecipherable gaze. I can't see Recovery Girl appreciating the lack of new information, he replied. I suppose not, Principal Nedu agreed. Perhaps you could take it up with Sir Night-Eye? Kai quirked an eyebrow. You think he would be able to help better than you? He asked, only receiving a cup of tea in response. After finishing the drink, he grabbed the box of files and went to let Chio know where he was going, when he saw someone he didn't expect to be wandering. He was surprised by the appearance of the elusive Lady Nagant. The hero seemed to notice him at the same time, a trace of surprise on her face. Huh, so I finally see the elusive overhaul. That is you, right? I was told I couldn't miss you. By who? Lady Nagant seemed surprised at the question, taking a moment to answer. Why does that matter? Kai didn't fail to notice the deflection. Most around here know who I am pretty quickly, and I know you've been here for a while. How? The young woman interrupted. My guardian helped treat the injuries you and that boy came here with, he explained. And that brings me back to my question, who wants to know? Distrustful, much? Lady Nagant scoffed. Paranoid, actually, Kai replied, yellow eyes narrowed as he noticed how the hero kept glancing at the box he was carrying. I need to go. Goodbye. And just what is it that Nedu sent you here for? Sir Night-Eye asked clinically, pushing up his gold-rimmed glasses with a forefinger. I wasn't expecting you so soon after your break. He wanted me to share these with you to see what you make of them, Kai explained, handing the pro a box simply labeled Collector. Kai made to leave, almost to the door when Sir Night-Eye spoke. Wait. I'm sure that you're interested in the contents, are you not? Kai turned around, making eye contact with Sir Night-Eye. Yes, but I was asked to pass them along to you. Sir Night-Eye walked toward Kai, resting a hand on his shoulder. He almost flinched at the contact. He'd just cleaned his costume. The pro hero didn't say anything. For a few moments, finally breaking the silence. If it is all right with Nedu, I would like you to look over these with me. Your experience could prove valuable. Kai wasn't used to the tone of voice that the man used. Ever since he had been taken on for his provisional work studies, he'd gotten to know the pro a bit. And thankfully, while Sir Night-Eye worked for All Might, contact with the #1hero was rare. It wasn't that he hated the hero, Kai just found his persona grating. Is something wrong? He asked, noticing how Sir Night-Eye grimaced at the question. Perhaps. If it is as I fear, then I ask that you keep anything I tell you to yourself. Do not let anyone know unless I have given you the okay. Even Recovery Girl and Hari? He probed. I have been meaning to bring Recovery Girl into the fold, Sir Night-Eye replied. But I would rather not bring young Kurono into this, he replied cryptically. Sir, just what is it? Kai asked firmly, wondering what could cause the man to be even more. Whatever one would call how he was acting. I suppose I should start from the beginning, the hero side. Have you ever heard the stories of a man who could steal quirks? Kai smiled, the expression devoid of humor. Sir, where I come from, they were more than just stories. As Sir finished his explanation, Kai didn't know what to think. Despite the stories Pops had told him, he had always thought the stories of the Bogeyman to be just that, stories. Sir Night-Eye's explanation had shattered any such hopes. And you think this Dr. Tsubasa was involved with All for One? He asked, receiving a stiff nod. Indeed. His talk of acquiring quirks for a master fits all too well, Sir Night-Eye said with a grimace. I fear our window of opportunity is ever shrinking. How do I fit into all this? Kai asked bluntly. I just helped find those documents. 2 reasons, Sir Night-Eye replied. First one being that if needed, you are a good medic. Kai nodded. The second is that I trust you. Your show at the sports festival was clever indeed, and you are good at keeping your wits about you. Do you believe you are up to the task of aiding this investigation? Kai nodded. I am. How is he holding up, Doctor? All for One asked. He is showing promise so far, the man replied. I believe he may be the one. I hope you are right, my friend, said All for One. Being prepared is always important. The doctor nodded sagely. Indeed, it is those meddlesome heroes have a knack for sticking their noses into places they do not belong at the most mean times. All for One grinned in a manner most would find unsettling. His follower was right. He knew that blonde buffoon would find him someday. But All for One would choose the battleground. And the victor. I would like to talk to the boy, he said, the doctor turning to look at him. If that is what you wish, it is. The two walked in silence as the man once known many decades ago as Garaki Kyudai led the way through doors and hallways to a large room, an artificial cloudscape overhead making the room a far cry from the cold, steel design of other rooms in the facility. A boy around 10 years old was sitting in a simple chair, playing some sort of board game against himself. Ahem, All for One said, clearing his throat. Sharp eyes turned to take him in, calculating. Good. You remind me of myself when I was younger, he said. What is your name? The child stared at the white-haired man. Who wants to know? An interested party, a potential benefactor, even, dare I say it, a sensei of sorts. The boy's gaze sharpened. Sounds like a lot. What do you want? All for One grinned, a humorless thing with an edge sharper than a razor. The chance to tear it all down. Recoil can turn a weapon against the one who used it, unless it is accounted for with careful hands. Chapter 8, Choose the Cast Part 1. Ochako was thinking. Sometimes it was nice to do that. Mrs. Akagakuro always told her not to think her life away, but Mr. Akaguro said that thinkers live long lives. The Akaguros were nice. She still couldn't call Kaizome dad, but she would admit that he had almost become that over the past 2 years. His mom and dad were nice too. She couldn't go to school, but Kaizome's dad taught her he was really good at making it fun. And Kaizome's mom had taught her how to run really fast. And how to play hide and seek. And where cops like to hide. But right now both of the older adults were out, leaving Kaizome and Ochako to themselves. Kaizome was doing something in the kitchen, was it supposed to be that loud, while Ochako was watching something on the small TV. The show was almost over. It was about a hero who helped people. Ochako wanted to do that. He even played hide and seek with the police. She could do that. After all the Akaguros had done for her, she wanted to help them. The house was old, the fridge had only what was needed and nothing else. It reminded her of her parents. A tear slid down her face at the memory. She missed them a lot. Wiping her face, she steeled herself before walking to the kitchen. The small space was a mess, a mass of measuring spoons, various chopped vegetables, and the blender sitting on the counter with a weird green-brown liquid sitting in it. Looking more closely, there seemed to be a little bit splattered on the wall behind it. As soon as she entered the room, Kaizome spun around. He fit right in, black hair wild, an exhausted look on his face as he tried to scrape some purple concoction from a pot before setting it down on the counter. Ochako's quest was momentarily forgotten as she took it all in. Did something go boom? She asked worriedly. Kaizome looked confused for a moment, scanning the room before his gaze settled back on Ochako. Humph, I suppose so. Nothing to worry about though. Do you need something? The question reminded Ochako about why she'd come in the first place. Kinda, she nodded. I want to help you. You don't need to help me clean this up, Kaizome began, but Ochako mustered her courage and interrupted him. I want to help you with that, but it was something else, she said earnestly. Kaizome got down on his knees. It sounds important. What is it? I want to become a hero when I get older. I want to help support you and your mom and dad. A strange look crossed Kaizome's face. Thank you, but a hero doesn't do things for the moan. Ochako couldn't help but keep going. But heroes help people, right? Well, yes, but... Well, I want to help you. I can do it. I can play hide and seek with the police, just like your mom showed me, and my quirk could help lots, she added earnestly, getting a sigh in return. We'll talk with my parents about it and see what they think. How does that sound? Okay, Ochako agreed. Come on, hit me with all you got. Aijuru complied, hitting Kendo with a hardened fist. Not bad, his guardian declared excitedly, taking off his gloves. You ready to eat now? Aijuru nodded affirmatively and the two went into the kitchen. Kendo opened up the fridge before grabbing a pot of leftover rice. Hey Aijuru, you good with fried rice? Aijuru nodded, grabbing some eggs and half a cabbage before carefully putting them onto the counter. Kendo started to chop the cabbage up with a big knife, before pausing and looking down at Aijuru. Hey, you wanna try? Aijuru nodded hesitantly, pulling a stool over to the edge of the counter to stand on. Might wanna use your quirk. Don't need you cutting yourself, Kendo said as he carefully handed the knife to Aijuru. As soon as he had it firmly in his hand, he found it covered over by Kendo's large, calloused one, the large man guiding Aijuru through the motions. Before the young boy knew it, the cabbage had all been cut into small strips that were then tossed into a pan along with the rice. So, had a question for ya, Kendo said as he let the rice cook. What'd ya want to do when you grow up? I wanted to be a hero. But, I thought you didn't like them. Kendo laughed, the sound booming, but friendly. Kinda like All Might, but also not at the same time. Ha, there's some good ones. There's just so many rules. Not sure it's my thing. But you, he said, pointing a finger toward Aijuru. Aren't me. My parents didn't like what I wanted to do, so I left so I could. I don't want you to feel like that. The two stared at each other for a moment, and then Kendo laughed. Heh, sorry. Got a bit deep there. Point is, if you want to be a hero, that's fine. I want to do it then. Aijuru declared, holding his small fist upward in determination. Awesome. Wanna spar after we eat? Yeah. Sorahiko was about to leave the small park when he noticed two kids heading towards him. Hi, do you want to sign this petition? The younger looking of the two asked. Sorahiko looked at the clipboard the boy held up critically before a grin spread over his wrinkled features. Heh, guess I could. What's this for? He asked curiously. We're trying to find out if other people agree on pretty things, the other explained excitedly. Humph, not much on pretty myself, but good for you. So do you have your own thing? He asked, pointing to the younger boy's clipboard. Or, he trailed off, not sure what else to say. It just kept getting harder and harder to keep track of kids every day. Not really, the girl started hesitantly, before being interrupted by the clipboard-holding boy. She thinks blood is pretty, he declared, not seeming to notice how his compatriot got a panicked look. Well, Sorahiko may not be Tashinori or Nana, but that just wouldn't do. He considered trying to smile, but doubted it would fit the bill. He'd do this his own way. Hey, chin up there, ZYGT. What's a psychote? The boy interrupted confusedly. ZYGT, Sorahiko corrected. Just means you're a kid. Now as I was saying, he continued, looking at the girl. Gotta admit I don't understand, but that's just people. I'm sure there's things about me you'd find strange as well, so I'd say we're even. That seemed to get the girl to perk up a bit, twirling the pen she was holding. Still, she seemed wary. Really, no fooling? She asked cautiously. It hurt Sorahiko to see the doubt on her face. He never got much guff from others, so he didn't fully understand her, not like that ever stopped him from helping someone. Why would I try to fool you? He replied. Trust me when I tell you that I've got friends who've done much stranger things. So, do you have your own petition? The girl seemed surprised, fumbling through the bag she had before finding a wrinkled sheet of paper that she quickly smoothed out as best as she could. Once she was satisfied, she quickly wrote out her petition and hesitantly handed it to Sorahiko. He filled it out quickly with the offered pen and, as quickly as they had appeared, the two kids took off. Sorahiko sat for a few more minutes when the telltale ring of his phone went off. Hello, is that you, Nedu? It is indeed, Gran Torino. I hope you are doing well. Of course I am. Now, what do you want? He asked bluntly. He hadn't liked the UA principal's flair for dramatics back when he'd taught Toshinori, and that had hardly changed. Quick to the point as always. Sir Night-Eye requires your assistance. With that, the call ended. Nedu had hung up. Of course he had to have the last word, Sorahiko thought to himself in annoyance, taking a moment to get his bearings before heading towards Might Tower. Wait, one thing to know about Gran Torino. Sir Night-Eye never got to finish his sentence, the door opening to reveal the man himself. Torino. Sorahiko eyed Kai appraisingly, before looking towards Sir. So this is the kid you're doing that work-studies thing with? I can see the resemblance, Gran Torino commented dryly. Sir coughed politely in response. This is indeed Kai. Please do not. TCH, if he's going to be a hero, he's gonna have to deal with worse than me. That's why we're here, isn't it? Yes, it is, Sir replied evenly, using a finger to push up his glasses. But I seem to recall that you scared even All Might in his training. Gran Torino just nodded in agreement, and so Sir continued with an exasperated expression. Back to the topic at hand. It seemed prudent to let Kai into the fold due to a variety of factors, one of which has come to fruition. To make sure all goes well, Night-Eye, I respect all that you've done to help Toshinori, but can you please get to the point? Sir sighed. I was just about to, Torino. Kai's quirk would lend well to investigation, and I am unfortunately too busy to accompany him. Look Night-Eye, I trust you, but surely there's got to be someone better for this. Someone with the free time to accompany Kai and aware of the nature of this whole situation? The list of eligible persons is one line long. So you're telling me I gotta go around with some kid who's wet behind the gills to track down information on that monster? The kid can hear you, Kai deadpanned, eyes narrowed. I don't see why we can't find a way to make this work. Fair enough. Gran Torino replied, his grin like that of a particularly mischievous cat. But remember that I warned ya. Kai raised an eyebrow questioningly, to which Gran Torino just stared with the same grin. Hey, you can still back out if you want. Torino, Sir said warningly. Come on Night-Eye, let him speak for himself, Gran Torino chastised before looking at Kai expectantly. This is more important than my comfort. I won't be backing out, Kai replied simply. Gran Torino nodded approvingly. I can work with that. When do we start, Night-Eye? You're going to be working with Gran Torino? Chio questioned. Yes, is there something I should know? Kai asked cautiously. Nothing that wouldn't have come up from meeting him, Chio replied, before a contemplative look settled on her face. Well, perhaps you can both learn something from it. I don't know how you keep doing it, Nedu, Kana commented in a confused tone. Nedu just laughed gleefully in response. Even now that they were starting to come to an understanding, there were still things about Nedu that put Kana on edge. The joy he took in some tasks being one of them. Oh, well that would be rather simple, he replied. According to what I told the HSPC, Snipe will be teaching you marksmanship far beyond what they could. Kana raised an eyebrow. He's already taught me all that he can. He says I'm better than he is now. Nedu hummed thoughtfully. There may have been a favor or two involved. And as for your marksmanship, does the HSPC know about your progress? No. I thought not. A wise decision on your part. That's only because I had started training only shortly before the accident, she finally said. And yet you haven't told them of your progress. Why? Because I don't trust them, she thought to herself bitterly. Somehow, she felt Nedu knew that, even if she didn't voice it. Silence reigned, neither of them speaking for a time until suddenly a familiar voice spoke up. Recovery girl told me she wanted you, Principal Nedu. Even though she knew who it was, she was still surprised to see Takami looking at her and Nedu nervously as she turned around to face the source of the voice. "Ah, thank you for letting me know," Nedu said with a smile. "I must take my leave then. Perhaps we may continue to talk later, Nagant." As Nedu left, Kana turned to Takami. She was surprised at how much he'd grown. He still had to look up to meet her eyes, but he wasn't the small child he once was. "I'm surprised you felt comfortable looking around here," she said, feeling a pang of guilt at how he flinched. "I'm sorry, senpai. No, don't apologize," Kana interrupted quickly. That's good. We can trust them?" Takami asked, his expression full of doubt. Kana remembered 2 years ago when Nedu had asked her name. She had refused, and still hadn't told him what was it worth, when she would just go back to the commission, where she had to use their name. She was tired of worrying. Now it was time to act, no matter how small. Kana gave a small nod. "I think so. The casting call has been given. The first act nears." Chapter 9, Stage Names, Point 2. "Nedu, can we talk?" He seemed surprised at her question as she stood in the doorway to his office, quickly gesturing for her to come inside. "Of course. I'm always available if you need." Kana didn't say anything in response, pulling a chair up to Nezu's desk and sitting down. "Nedu, do you remember when you said something about a natural quirk? I asked you what you meant, and you asked me how you felt about a trade," Nedu finished. "I do indeed." It was always hard to get a read on Nedu, but Kana couldn't miss the slight tension in his words, as if he was leaning forward with bated breath. "Is that offer still available?" "It is," Nedu replied. "It always has been." Kana took a moment to steady herself, taking in a deep breath to steel her nerves. Even though she had walked into the room with the intent to finally share her name, the oily feeling of doubt and fear tried to seep in. But not today, not now. "My name is Tsutsumi Kana." Suddenly the pressure she'd been feeling lessened. It wasn't gone, but it felt as if her breathing was a bit clearer, her mind not as foggy with worry. It had been so long since she had heard her name. The last time she had seen her parents had been far too long, and ever since then, she had been Lady Nagant. It felt empowering. It was her name, not someone else's, hers and hers alone. Nedu held out a paw, which Kana took to shake. "A pleasure to meet you, Miss Tsutsumi. I am Nedu." "A pleasure to meet you," he said, smiling as he said her name in a way that she had never seen him do. Neither of them spoke for a moment until Nedu finally broke the silence. "I suppose I owe you an explanation now," he said simply. "That was the agreement," Kana replied, not sure what else to say. Suddenly the ding of some machine caught her attention, and Nezu's as well. "Ah, what perfect timing. Would you care for some tea to accompany the explanation?" Kana nodded, and within a minute found herself with a fresh cup of tea sitting in front of her. "Tell me, Miss Tsutsumi, did the HSPC ever tell you about the Chia raid?" Kana shook her head. "Well, that isn't surprising. I suppose I'll give the abridged version then," Nedu replied. The Chia facility, as it was nicknamed, was a research lab with some, less than ethical experiments, all related to the effect of quirks on the mind and similar studies. Nedu paused, taking a sip from his cup before continuing. "According to the records that I've gotten access to, I was one of the most promising experiments." Nedu had a pained expression as he spoke, and Kana understood just why he had taken such an interest in her and Takami. Not one of them had a choice. But now, maybe they did. The two were walking down the hall when Nedu spoke up. "Have you ever considered reaching out to young Chisaki?" "I don't think he likes me," Kana replied. "Besides, hasn't he graduated? So you have been paying attention to him?" Nedu said shrewdly. It was a statement, not a question. "Just a guess," Kana said in denial. "And like I said, I don't think he likes me." "Young Chisaki comes from a troubled background," Nedu replied in a strange tone. "He means well, but is rather guarded. As for his graduation, he is here some days to assist recovery girl. Oh, there he is now." True to Nezu's word, Chisaki had just appeared, rounding the corner before seeing them, eyes narrowing as he focused on Kana. The teen looked ready to turn around before Nedu stopped him. "Ah, young Chisaki. Could you please talk with our guest? I really must be going." Before either of the two could voice their disapproval, Nedu was gone, leaving the two awkwardly standing in the empty hall. Kana was about to break the silence, but Chisaki beat her to the punch. "I would ask what your motive was, but I can see that Principal Nedu is to blame. Do you have any idea as to why he would want us to speak?" What?" Chisaki looked at her with disapproval as he repeated himself. "Nedu set this meeting up. Do you have any idea why?" "I'm not sure myself." "Perhaps the fact that you've been avoiding me for the past 2 years?" she asked sarcastically. "A member of the HSPC asking me strange questions. What did you expect?" A small part of Kana wondered just how the hero student had come about a wariness of the HSPC, not that it was unwarranted, but still, she only asked him who he was. I just asked if you were Overhaul. I was trying to make small talk. Ah? You really avoided me for all this time because I asked who you were? Kana asked incredulously. Chisaki's eyes narrowed. Where I come from, names were important. People you could trust learn them, earn them, Lady Nagant. Kana couldn't help but grimace at the name. Please, don't call me that. Why not? It's just a name, he asked, tone laced with sarcasm. Touché, she replied. But his words made her think. Names were so important. She had hid hers for so long. But for the second time today she chose what happened. The wariness of the strange student in front of her she understood. What about a trade then? She offered carefully. A trade? Chisaki asked suspiciously. A trade. I give you my name, and you give me yours, then we're even. Chisaki looked thoughtful for a moment, before nodding reluctantly. That sounds agreeable. Okay, Kana said, surprised that he had agreed. My name is Tsutsumi Kana. The words came just a tiny bit easier than with Nezu. Feeling a bit more familiar as she said them for the second time in however many years. Chisaki Kai, Overhaul, the masked student replied hesitantly. It's good to meet you, Tsutsumi. You can call me Kana. Okay. Kana couldn't help but stare expectantly, until the teen coughed awkwardly, changing the mask he was wearing before hesitantly speaking. Fine, you can call me Kai, but don't make me regret it. I won't. She meant it, she really did. Chisakai seemed lost on what to say, when the bell rang. I'll be seeing you, Kana ventured, turning to leave when Kai called after her in a conflicted tone. Wait. Would you like to eat lunch at my table? If that isn't a problem. I normally just grab some food for a friend and I, Kana trailed off. Is that a problem? Kai asked, eyes calculating, as if he couldn't see why that would matter. I'll. Just give me a moment. Kai nodded. If you decide to come, I will be at the cafeteria, or at least a friend of mine. He has long white hair. I don't think you'll be able to miss him. His piece said, Kai walked off in the direction of the cafeteria, while Kana started making her way to the room where she and Takami stayed. She wasn't surprised to see him inside the room, looking at something on a tablet. Having noticed her entry, Takami looked up as she entered the room. Hey, we were invited to eat in the cafeteria. Do you want to come? You'll be there? Takami asked cautiously. Of course. Okay, he replied, setting down the tablet on a small nightstand before following Kana to the cafeteria. After getting their food, while pretending that many of the students weren't staring at her and Takami, Kana noticed a white-haired boy waving at her. Was that the boy Kai had been talking about, his friend? Her suspicions were confirmed when she noticed Kai heading toward the same table with a tray of food. Leading the way, she found there were 2 seats free, their company limited to Kai and the boy who had waved them over. Nice to meet you, the white-haired boy said after they sat down. Not friendly per se, but compared to Kai, he seemed rather welcoming. So, what did you do that got Kai to invite you over? He asked curiously as he picked at a bowl of hot soba. Not something either of us normally do, but him especially, ever since the medical supplies. Kai looked almost embarrassed, which was a strange expression to see on his normally serious face. It was one time, he protested vehemently. Are you two okay? Kai and his friend straightened at Takami's question, who had been quietly eating as they talked. The silver-haired boy recovered first, coughing awkwardly. Yeah, it's fine, sorry about that. Anyway, I'm Hari. Kana was quite surprised at what seemed to be Kai's close friend just sharing his name up front like that. Her confusion must have shown, if Hari's next words were anything to go by. If Kai shared his name with you, I trust you too. Even if you are Lady Nagant. Kana couldn't help it, she groaned. Laying her head in her hands, she pondered over whether to allow the usage of that name, or to share her name again. You still haven't told me your name, All for One said once the boy moved his piece on the board. You haven't told me yours, the boy countered. I suppose I haven't, he agreed. You may call me Sensei. Still don't want to tell me your name, All for One asked in a tone that suggested an answer wasn't needed. That's fine. Do you mind if I give you an alias then? The boy pursed his lips before nodding. Good, All for One said. I was thinking perhaps 9. That's a weird name, the boy replied. Is that a no? All for One asked with a tilt of his head. Well, isn't that number considered bad? All for One chuckled darkly. And who decides that? Who gets to say what a mere number means? You strike me as someone who doesn't believe in letting others choose for them. Was I wrong? You weren't, the boy denied firmly. Then 9 is acceptable? All for One asked with a raised eyebrow. I suppose so, the newly christened 9 replied. It was then that the doctor made his entrance, standing quietly in the doorway. Come in, doctor, All for One said. I take it something important has come up? Yes, master, the doctor replied affirmatively. But that can wait until you are done with the boy. 9. The doctor scrunched his face up. In confusion, mustache quivering. What was that? The boy spoke up once more. 9, call me 9. The doctor turned to All for One questioningly, and so he nodded in confirmation, before speaking up. You may begin now if you wish, he said as he moved a piece of his on the board to a winning position. We can continue later. Kyudai led 9 through hallways to their destination. The irony of the chosen name not lost on him. At least it would make keeping things straight in the records easier. Stepping through one of the doors opened up to a laboratory, machinery and test tubes set up across various tables, and in the center of it all was Kurogyri and Denki. When trying to find a name to describe the boy, it seemed fitting to call him Electricity. The fact that the word also happened to be his name was amusing. Kurogyri seemed to have been showing Denki something when Kyudai had arrived, quickly setting down what revealed itself to be a Rubik's Cube before turning his attention to Kyudai. Do you require my assistance, doctor? No. I'll let you know if I do. Any breakthroughs? Kurogyri's filament-like eyes wilted at the question, glancing back at the boy before his gaze snapped back toward Kyudai. I am sorry to say that there haven't been any such developments. Kyudai sighed. Perhaps as he grows older. In any case, I must do some readings on 9 here, please make sure that Denki does not cause any accidents. Kurogyri nodded as he headed back toward Denki. Who is he? 9 asked as Kyudai led him toward the other side of the lab. Part of my research, Kyudai replied simply, wrapping a blood pressure monitor around 9's wrist. He seems weak, 9 observed as Denki fumbled with the Rubik's Cube. Kyudai barked out a mocking laugh. Weakness is in the eye of beholder, 9. Quirks and intelligence can give one an advantage, but I believe that anyone or anything can serve its own purpose, no matter how small. You talk like Sensei does. Oh, and how would that be? Kyudai asked curiously as he searched through a collection of medical instruments. 9 remained silent, and so Kyudai continued on. When one has seen as much as Master and I, you tend to learn how to make the most out of whatever you have. Kyudai continued his short examination, before removing the various monitoring apparatus he had used on 9. Is it over? 9 asked. Not quite, I need a few minutes to look over these readings. You may observe, but do not touch anything, Kyudai instructed. 9 gave a small nod before he stood up, walking toward Kurogyri and Denki. Kyudai trained his ear to listen in, curious as to how the two would interact. That isn't right, 9 said, pointing to the Rubik's Cube. Let me show you. Kurogyri seemed content to observe, the yellow streaks that were his eyes glancing from one boy to the other. What if I zapped it? Denki suggested. Then we could stop worrying about it. Zap it? 9 asked curiously. What's your quirk? This. Denki replied eagerly, and the Rubik's Cube was suddenly enveloped in small sparks. Electricity, 9 said in a fascinated tone. Such an interesting element. Denki grinned. Yeah, it's fun. What's your quirk? 9 looked disappointed. He frowned as he answered. It's called atmosphere manipulation, just a fancy way of saying I can make small ball of mist and that kind of thing. Kyudai watched as the boy activated his quirk, small lumps of mist appearing in the room. Not that it surprised him, he had studied the quirk prior to the creation of Kurogyri's warp gate. Whoa, you can make clouds! Denki exclaimed, though 9 didn't seem so pleased, his frown still present. Kyudai took note of 9's interest in Denki's quirk. No, not necessarily Denki's quirk. But a similar one could surely be found. Or created. Weather manipulation, electricity. Perhaps Master might have just the quirks necessary to push atmosphere manipulation to new heights. Weather manipulation. Twisters, storm clouds, lightning. He could build upon his previous work that had created Warp Gate. A powerful quirk to pair with All for One, if everything went as planned. Some of the cast may choose their names, some of them may not. Some of the cast walk brightened paths, while others must walk in the dark. Chapter 10, Stage Props, Can Be Real. What's going on? Hawks asked with uncertainty as he looked at the opening door and saw not just Kana Nagahara, but also that hero student, Chisaki. While he was still confused as to what to call the person who he looked up to as a big sister, Chisaki wasn't from the commission, so he didn't have to follow their rules, right? Even more importantly, Chisaki had made it clear that he was only overhaul when he was doing hero things. He was strange. He did seem to care about some things, such as his brother, at least that's what Hari had called Chisaki, and he was nice to Nagant. At least, he seemed to be trying to. Still, there was something strange about him, like he didn't care what other people thought much, with how he acted and talked. He only seemed to care if what he did helped, not like the commission. They cared about everything. A lot. Costumes on, smile no matter what. It was a weird smile. He'd seen people smile here, and it wasn't at all like the commission. "Hey, Takami, you okay?" "I'm sorry," he quickly replied. "It won't happen again." Hawks couldn't help but hear Chisaki, even as Kana seemed to be looking at him carefully. "And you wondered why I was wary about the golden star of the HSPC." Hawks didn't quite understand what Chisaki meant, but after a moment, Kana seemed satisfied. He still wasn't sure what was going on, though. "What did you two want?" Kana seemed nervous, her shoulders tense as she answered. "A hero that Kai works with is here at UA to help teach the heroics class something. I have learned that UA does not teach adequate dodging techniques," Chisaki added in a strange tone. "And I was wondering if you would like to come watch?" Kana finished. He was hesitant, not knowing who the hero was. He trusted some of the heroes at UA. Recovery Girl was nice as long as she was careful, and Snipe had a lot to teach, but at the end of his deliberation he had decided to go. Kana wouldn't offer if she didn't think it was safe. Hawks found himself led to one of UA's various training grounds, the name of this one escaping him. The class being taught was 3A. As he was carefully looking, he noticed someone waving at him. It was Hari. Hari looked toward their teacher, Snipe, expectantly, who nodded. "Seeing as our guest teacher isn't here yet, you can go say hi." Hari started heading toward them, navigating around the class in a swift and practical manner. As he got closer, Hawks couldn't help but look over his costume. He was wearing an off-white coat that ended in a hood, currently covering his hair. In one hand he held a small round object. His pants were similarly plain, with dark black combat boots on his feet. "I'm glad you could make it. I trust that Kai has been polite," he asked, his monotone making it hard to figure out if he was joking or serious. "I can handle myself, Hari," Chisaki replied with annoyance. "I'd suggest saving your quips for your guest." "Annoyed at me saying something in front of your friends?" Hari countered smoothly. "They're just acquaintances," Chisaki huffed. Hari didn't reply, the ghost of a grin that had started creeping onto his face disappearing at the sound of a door opening. "Has anyone seen my cane?" An old-looking man in a white costume with yellow boots walked through the door, and he seemed to be leaning on a cane already. The one you're leaning on?" one of the students asked confusedly. The man looked to his hand, lifting up the cane to examine it. So that's where I left it?" The man hobbled around, bumbling between the students with various apologies or confusion. Only something wasn't right. Hawks watched closely, noticing how the man kept looking closely at various students even as he acted as if he had no idea what was going on. As Hawks continued to watch, he turned to look at Chisaki, whose eyes were unreadable, his mask hiding any other obvious tells. Hari seemed slightly confused, but Nagant was also watching the man with a studying gaze before noticing that Hawks was watching her. "You noticed, didn't you?" she asked him, not waiting for a reply. "That's him, isn't it, Kai?" To say one way or the other would be unfair to Hari, Chisaki replied without a hint as to what the answer was, not that Hari seemed to need confirmation. "I can't see Snipe just letting a random man wander around, and even his seemingly random path seems to have him stay near any given student for the perfect amount of time." Perfect amount of time for what? Hawks couldn't help but ask, receiving his answer in a way that seemed rather fitting. Even with what happened next, he was still surprised. Suddenly the man straightened, cane discarded as he reached the end of the room, pulling something from his pocket. "All right, you zygotes, you all got one simple goal: get back your licenses." Dangling from his hand was a provisional hero license, the face of the student who'd spoken up earlier prominently featured, though more could be seen partially hanging out of the man's costume. Without waiting for a response, he started dashing around the area, rocketing from place to place like a yellow and white pinball. "Well, guess the cat's out, oh the bag," said Snipe. "Y'all better get movin' and start learnin' how to dodge." "I suppose standing so far away caused him to not target Hari," Nagant commented, and Chisaki chuckled in response. "I wouldn't be so sure about that." Suddenly there was a whoosh of air behind Hari. "Nothing personal, kid." The man had suddenly zipped behind Hari before blasting off once again. Hari pulled down the zipper on his coat, feeling inside before groaning. How did he even take it? It was just a second or two. "Gran Torino is a man of many surprises," Chisaki replied. "I can see that," Hari groused before turning to enter the fray. "He's the hero you're working with?" Kana asked incredulously. "I've heard a bit about him. I thought he was going to retire? Is he looking into teaching?" "Yes, he is." "Yes, he was." "And no, he isn't," Chisaki replied in a barely understandable string of answers. That's a shame. Looks like he'd make a good teacher," Kana replied. "You wouldn't know the half of it," Chisaki answered sardonically. "Are you always this hard to read, or are you hiding something?" Hawks finally asked. He didn't notice how his wings spread a bit further, a bit less smooth, and a bit more threatening. Not until Chisaki answered. As a member of the HSPC, I'm sure you're aware of delicate missions, he replied simply before pointing to one of Hawks' wings. And I'm not a threat. Looking over his shoulder, Hawks started, surprised at his unconscious actions. He frantically willed feathers back to their natural, commission-approved, shape. I'm sorry. This seemed to surprise Chisaki, who looked confused before schooling his expression back to a more neutral one. It's okay. You don't need to feel like you need to do that here. These people are trustworthy. Even Gran Torino? Hawks couldn't help but ask as he saw him bounce off one student to send them plowing into their fellow classmates. Yes. I recommend taking Taiyaki to be sure though, Chisaki replied. Taiyaki? Hawks asked confusedly. Well, I suppose I should tell you if you ever need to work with him. It's very important, Chisaki sighed before muttering to himself. They didn't even let him find out what Taiyaki is. The commission first has recruits follow a strict training regime before going out for live training, which begins a few years after, Kana explained. Hawks was almost sure he saw her grimace. So, what is Taiyaki? He asked awkwardly. It's a small fish-shaped cake with some sort of filling, Kana answered. Do you have a favorite? Hawks asked hesitantly. Oh, I haven't had any myself. Always too busy to worry about something like that. Chisaki let out a long-suffering sigh. I can't believe I'm suggesting this, but I can take you out for some. There's a place nearby that Gran Torino frequents when we're around here. If you want, that is. Kana looked at Hawks, silently asked if he wanted to. If Recovery Girl is okay with it. Quit you yappin' and show how this goes. Gran Torino exclaimed, landing with a thud beside Chisaki. You're gonna lead these brats, he declared before addressing Kana. You, Nagant, right? She nodded unsurely. Yes? Can you assist me in teaching them? Gran Torino asked with a fiery glimmer in his eyes. Kana hesitated for a moment before replying. How can I help? Just give a bit of a hard time, Gran Torino replied. They're gonna have Chisaki helping them, so you don't need to go too easy. And you, he finally said, pointing to Hawks. You want in? Would Recovery Girl get mad? On second thought, how about you take notes with Snipe over there? So what is your opinion on our guests? Nedu asked his current visitors. Sir Nightie's expression was calculative, yellow eyes narrowed in thought. Much the opposite to his sidekick, All Might watched with barely restrained interest. I would wait a while still so we can better understand just what those two have been taught, Sir Nightie finally said. The Commission's methods are still far too unknown to be able to decide one way or the other. I must disagree, All Might declared. From what Nedu has told us, Lady Nagant intends to be a hero, not anyone's pawn. Sir Nightie cleared his throat. That may be so, but we do not know how far the HSPC's control goes. I get the feeling that things are not all as they seem with their hero program. And even then, that still leaves Hawks as an unknown. Sometimes you need to make a decision even when you lack information, All Might replied carefully with scowl. There isn't any need for rash decisions, Nedu reminded them. I was just wondering what your thoughts were so far. It isn't hard to notice that you've been teaching young Chisaki, Night-Eye, All Might observed as Chisaki raised a wall to block an attempt by Gran Torino to grab another student's license. I'm sure you're very proud. I merely have given him guidance and instruction. Putting it to use is on him, not I, Sir Night-Eye replied, coughing awkwardly before continuing. Be that as it may, I believe Lady Nagant is doing quite well to counter Kai and the other students. Nedu could only nod in agreement. Tsutsumi dashed from place to place. Even without using her quirk, she was far from helpless, distracting young Chisaki enough to prevent him from being able to fully devote his attention to Gran Torino. Indeed. I do not wish to push a choice on her. She has had enough of that, I believe. However, Sir Night-Eye probed. Perhaps I'll invite her for a game. All Might turned a surprising shade of white, while Night-Eye just opted to let out a world-weary sigh. This is not a game, Nine reiterated, causing Denki's already confused expression to scrunch up further. It's quirk training. Why can't it be both? Denki asked carefully. Yes, Kurogyri agreed with a hint of exasperation. Why can't it be both, Nine? But this is important. Nine replied in annoyance. Power is important. You don't get power from just playing games. But you can, Nine. Master entered the room with a grin, walking toward the group. I appreciate your determination. That is important, indeed, he said, lifting Nine's chin with one hand to look him in the eye. Training is important, but what good is one's power if they don't use it? Then you merely let it decay, and before you know it, you may as well be powerless. Indeed, Master, Cute Eye nodded. I assume you were able to find the resources I needed? Master grinned wide, chuckling darkly. I did indeed. I would demonstrate, but that would hardly be a wise idea with how far below the site we are. That it would, Kyudai agreed. Kurogyri, can you and the boy move to a different room for monitoring? I must be free of volatile variables for this operation. As you wish, Doctor, Kurogyri nodded. Wait, Sushi! Denki exclaimed, going to grab the small stuffed animal that Kurogyri had somehow acquired. Kyudai almost swore that he heard Kurogyri correct the boy with a quiet Sushi, but he and Denki were already almost completely gone as Kurogyri moved them to another location with a misty warp gate. Careful you don't forget their place, Master said quietly enough that Nine wouldn't be able to hear. Sometimes one must play nice for the best results, Kyudai replied. Master nodded, an understanding look on his face. Even so, Kyudai felt a small spark of uncertainty. He did his best to smother the feeling. Now was the time for pushing the boundaries of science, once again not dwelling on feelings. Are you sure you want to go through with this, Nine? Kyudai asked automatically, even as he began preparing his work area. The procedure has been improved, but there may be side effects. Nine nodded firmly. History is written by the winners, and no one won by standing around hoping things would get better. A wise choice, said Master. Where must I sit, Doctor? He asked. You here, and Nine, you must sit here. I am yet in need of a few more readings before I can begin your part of the process. And should all go well, you will soon have command over not just small clouds, but the elements themselves, Kyudai mused. Weather manipulation. Oh come on, you gotta take me to sea, you just gotta. The target of Nijire's attention just chuckled dryly. I'm sorry, Nijire. Exam takers only. Anyways, that's still a few years away at least. 5 years. Nijire corrected. Then why are you talking about it already? You gotta be prepared. Nijire declared resolutely. I guess that's a good strategy. Then you'll take me? I can't, I'm sorry. How about I take you to that hero thing next year? Deal. Nijire exclaimed in excitement. Stage props are not always merely props. Their worth is not wrapped up in what they look like, but who they are inside. Chapter 11, Staged Intermission, Point 4. Shuichi felt more than a little lost as he looked around the area. Hey Tamaki, wanna go look at the All Might booth? I guess, Tamaki said softly. Awesome, come on, Shuichi. Mirio replied eagerly, so excited that his hand slipped right through Shuichi's grip. Wait a minute. We don't want to get lost. Where are we? Tamaki whispered, not lending Shuichi any confidence. I know the way. Mirio declared resolutely, running ahead of them. Come back here, Shurji will worry if we get lost. Shuichi exclaimed, trying to get Mirio to slow down. They won't worry. Mirio countered with a laugh as he ducked through openings Shuichi only barely managed to squeeze through. While Amajiki was even more nervous than Shuichi was, Mirio's confidence seemed to fill him enough that he too was running toward the All Might merchandise booth. Also heading that way was a green-haired boy whose eyes lit up when he saw Shuichi. Your quirk looks so cool. Are you a gecko? Geckos are neat. Uncle Sho showed me something about them in a book. Can your tail drop off? The tangent was cut short by a gray scarf wrapping itself over the boy's mouth. Sorry about that, the figure apologized tiredly. He means well. The speaker had frazzled black hair hanging around his face, some of the scarf coiled around his neck. Beside him was an older-looking green-haired woman who smiled tiredly. Izuku, sweetie, if your uncle lets go, will you apologize? Izuku nodded excitedly, and Sho retracted the scarf. I'm sorry. I didn't want to be rude. Your quirk is just so cool. It's okay, Shuichi replied. Just, not so fast, okay? Izuku nodded emphatically. It was then that Shuichi noticed Mirio quickly walking over, an All Might figurine in his hand. Meanwhile Tamaki had found a cape from All Might's Silver Age costume. Hi, I'm Mirio, his little brother exclaimed cheerfully. What's your name? Midoriya, the green-haired boy introduced himself with a nod. Ooh, it matches your hair, Mirio said before pointing to his friend. This is Tamaki. Tamaki nodded shyly. Hi, you having fun? Mirio asked Midoriya, who nodded rapidly. Aha! We got to go here for my birthday. Mirio grinned. It's my birthday too. Can you believe that? There you are, Inko. I thought this might be a good place to find you. A blonde-haired woman shouted out from the booth up ahead. A boy who looked like a smaller version of her ran toward their small group, sporting a t-shirt with a silhouette of All Might's grinning face. Hey nerd, better get something before they run out. Midoriya looked conflicted, glancing between Mirio and the blonde boy who was definitely a friend of his when his mom spoke up. Izuku, how about I get you a surprise, and you can visit with? Tagata Shuichi supplied. Would you mind if Izuku visited with you for a while? Not to impose. Shuichi looked toward the younger Midoriya and Mirio, who seemed to be talking animatedly about All Might. It wouldn't be any trouble, he finally replied. Nijire groaned, trying to pull her brother away from the booth they were standing at. Come on, just make up your mind. But I need to figure out which version has the better characters, he protested. Well, make it quick, I want to see if Ryukyu has any merch. She's still a student, I don't think her popularity stat is high enough for that yet. Nijire glared at her brother, who sighed before finally choosing one of the games, offering some money before putting the box in his backpack. Fine. We'll go. If they don't have anything for Ryukyu, maybe they'll have something for Lady Nagant. Fine, Nijire agreed, when suddenly an idea hit her. Wait, what if one of the games has her? Now there's an idea. Tenko agreed. Stolen quirks. I believe so, Night Eye sighed. And there seems to be a pattern to the one stolen. One that allowed the user to manifest lighting. Another that granted the user a minor defensive boost, another allowing wind creation and manipulation. Other than the wind quirk, which belonged to a civilian named Yorashi Kitakes, the rest belonged to some C and D ranked villains. It has his stench all over it. Tashinori growled. Indeed, Night Eye agreed. Also, why is Gran Torino not present? He normally comes for meetings such as this. He said something about finding the kids at that event today. I'm glad at least one of us can have some peace. Night Eye nodded. With how things are going, it's best to take advantage when one has a chance to rest. Well, as much as Gran Torino rests at any rate. Especially where those two are concerned. Tashinori nodded before turning back to the papers on the desk, his scowl returning. Now, where were we? So many quirks, Nedu said in awe as they entered the event. Maybe we'll find some like mine. Himiko said enthusiastically. Nedu grinned. Mom said that. Sure. You just can't keep a secret, can you? Auntie Hibiki said with a grin. You'll just have to wait and see who it is. Who? Himiko asked excitedly, getting a grin in response. Sorry, little lady, but I'm not going to say anything more. You and Nedu can go and check out some of the booths, but don't go too far. We won't. Himiko declared before turning to Nedu. What do you want to see? Nedu looked thoughtful. I don't know. Maybe we can just surprise each other? Sounds fun. Himiko agreed. You surprise me first. But I don't know what to surprise you with. Me neither. Sorahiko browsed the area. He was surprised at the number of young heroes at the event. Sure, there were some more established pros, such as Yoroi Masha and Snatch, but he also spotted quite a few that were rather new on the scene, such as Majestic and Vlad King. Although really, they were all dumb kids to him. Especially Tashinori. Unfortunately, not one of the booths seemed to be selling taiyaki. Maybe he'd go find the brats and see if they couldn't find some trouble. Or maybe trouble would find them, it seemed to have a knack with doing so. Rounding the corner, he saw the kids rifling through a stack of boxes at one of the booths. But wait, if you don't think there'll be merch for her, there probably won't be games with her. Oh. Right. Better luck next time, Tenko, Gran chuckled. Now, where are we going next? Nijire let out an eep, clearly surprised by his sudden appearance. Tenko was also surprised, if the way he twitched was any indication, but did his best to hide it. I thought you were our party leader, he quipped, setting down the box in his hands. I wanted to give you kids some input, see if I ask what you want again, Gran grumbled good-naturedly. Luckily for you, this party leader thought ahead. Follow me, he declared before rocketing off. Tenko groaned. I know this zone allows some special ability usage, but I think Gran is going to get in trouble with the antic heat. Stop complaining and keep up. Nijire laughed as she used her quirk to help push her forward. It isn't fair that you both get fly hacks. Tenko exclaimed. Despite his complaining, he started running after the two, who weren't going fast enough that he couldn't keep up. Consider this payment for decaying my old room. Nijire said cheekily. That was over 3 years ago, way to hold on to a grudge. Tenko groused. We had to move. So did that other family. The Kami-somethings. Hush you two, we're almost there, Gran chided. Like he's ever quiet, Tenko mumbled. I heard that. For that, you've gotta help carry something, Gran replied. Wait, carry something? And there's our objective right there. Gran declared as he finally stayed on solid ground for more than 2 seconds. How's this, Nijire? Tenko snickered at Nijire's face. He knew she liked Ryukyu, but he hadn't expected she'd look so surprised at some merch. How? Where? She stammered. You know my friend, Yagi, he asked. Kind of, she answered with a puzzled expression. Well, he has a few connections, and was able to get me in contact with one of the merch suppliers for this event and put in a small order. Small was an understatement, Tenko thought as he looked at the multiple bags that Gran had revealed, hidden off to the side of one of the merch stands. Do you need any help carrying that? The booth attendant asked. Not at all, Gran replied, handing the largest bag to Tenko. You can carry this one. Is it too late to use a save point? Tenko asked cautiously. Much too late, Gran replied with a smirk. Himiko was at a booth with a hero who had a penguin hat and an old-fashioned looking gun when she saw her aunt coming their way. I hope you two had a fun time, she said as she got closer. Mr. Itori was showing us how he keeps his cape on, he even gave me one. Nedu declared, spinning to demonstrate. It looks very nice on you. Auntie Hibiki said. What about you, Himiko, have you found anything that interests you? Kinda. This made Nedu happy, so I like that. That's very nice of you, but don't worry, now's the time for your surprise, Auntie said mysteriously before turning to Mr. Itori. Thank you for having them. No problem, someone had to break the ice. Still, thank you. You're welcome, the hero cut himself off as his phone started ringing. I swear if it's Gokami again. Well, we should be going now, the surprise is ready, Auntie said with a grin. Ooh, really? Himiko asked excitedly. You two just follow me, there's someone you should meet. Himiko and Nedu did as they were told and followed Auntie Hibiki over to another part of the event grounds. Finally they stopped in front of a young hero with spiky silver hair. He was wearing a red suit, so pretty, with white boots and arm things. Thank you so much for meeting with us, Vlad King. The hero rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. It's no trouble, ma'am. Not a whole lot for me to do here today anyways. Turning to Himiko, he gave a gruff smile. So, you must be Toga. Glad to meet you. I hear that we have similar quirks. He extended his arm and suddenly a red liquid started coming out of one of the things on his arm, blood. But it wasn't moving like blood, and suddenly it turned solid, like a wall. Your quirk is so pretty. Himiko exclaimed as she stared at the wall of hardened blood. I'm glad you think so. Mr. Vlad chuckled before turning serious. Toga, don't feel like you have to hide your quirk just because of what some people think. I've had some people who didn't like mine because it was so strange, but you know what? What? Himiko asked. I still became a hero. And no matter what you do, don't let other people tell you whether you can help or not. I am not making an appearance tonight, NG stated firmly, though his secretary just stared back at him with a cold gaze. After the villain attacks earlier, people will need to be reassured. All Might can't make it, and with you being the number 2 hero, she trailed off, not needing to finish to make her point. NG knew what she said was true. With that American cosplayer unable to appear, it made the most sense for him, as the second highest ranked hero, to make an appearance. He almost reached for the note still in his shirt pocket, but stopped short. He would try to make it up to Tuya the following day, so long as he had time. Surely, he would understand the importance of what NG had to do. Tuya waited impatiently. He'd show him. He'd show Fath that man that he could still be a hero. Shudo may have the better quirk, but Tuya could do it. He could do it. Father would come. He'd show him. Then he could be the strongest hero. And that man would see he didn't need to play, he could get stronger, he just knew it. He waited patiently, the burning feeling aching to be released, but he kept it in. Not until Father came he might dismiss Tuya immediately if he could see that he had been using his quirk. It had only been 20 minutes. Father was just running late, but he wouldn't abandon Tuya. He was off early that day, he would show up. Tuya waited as the minutes ticked by. Minutes turned to hours and his frustration grew, the fire inside him begging for release. Still, he waited. It was getting dark now. He couldn't help but produce a small flame to use as a light. He let flames lick around his arms, the heat pressing uncomfortably against his skin, the very reason for his hopes and despair. Still he waited as the sun set, the twilight giving way to darkness. He pressed his hand to a fallen log. Cremation turned it to a scorched black in seconds, the heat soon causing it to turn to coals and finally ash that blew away in the breeze. He grabbed another log, and the process repeated itself. As he watched the ashes scatter in the winds for the second time, it came to him. He wanted to be like those ashes, as burnt and fragile as they were free. Betcha can't beat me. Kaken declared, pointing to one of those hammer games. Ooh, that looks fun, doesn't it, Tamaki? Mirio exclaimed, looking at his friend excitedly. I guess. So many people. You can do it. Let's see who can get the highest score. Izuku suggested excitedly. The loud one already beat you once, why risk the disappointment? Tamaki sighed. Come on, you too, Shuichi. Mirio declared, earning a sigh from his brother. Fine, but then we should go find Shurji. Okay, Mirio said with a frown before brightening back up. Then let's give this all we got. Don't hurt yourselves, Uncle Sho said, leading them toward the game where Kaken was already waiting impatiently. Come on, you slowpokes, I gotta go. You can go first, Kaken, Izuku said, before looking at the others. Unless one of you wants to go first? TCH, it's yours and Joke's birthday, nerd. You go first. Joke, I like that, Mirio said cheerfully. Jokes are fun. TCH, it wasn't supposed to. If I'm Joke, I guess you could be. Punchline. No. If you're Punchline, can you give good fist bumps? Izuku couldn't help but pay attention to the exchange with interest until Kaken noticed him watching. Hey, just take your turn, nerd. Oh okay. Izuku stammered, offering some money to the booth operator. Have fun, she said cheerfully as Izuku grabbed the hammer. His quirk wouldn't be much help here. He lifted the hammer up as far as he could. Before slamming it down, a squeak sounding as he hit the pad as hard as he could. The indicator on the game flew almost all the way up to the shoulder of the All Might poster beside it. Nice job, the attendant congratulated him as she handed over an All Might plushie. Your turn next, Joke, Kaken stated, pointing at Mirio. Thanks, Punchline. I'll do my best. Mirio replied happily, not noticing how Kaken looked ready to blow something up. Mirio stepped up to the game, taking the offered hammer. He almost dropped it through his hand before tightening his grip. Poor, he exclaimed, his strike causing the indicator to go just below All Might's chin. Kaken was right behind Mirio, giving some money to the booth lady before grabbing the hammer. I'm gonna beat All Might. The indicator shot up past All Might's knees, then his waist, finally stopping a bit below where Izuku reached. And you wonder why I think Izuku should be your partner, not your sidekick, Uncle Sho sighed. What the? Kaken never got to finish, Auntie Mitsuki cutting him off. Let's go, Katsuki, it's getting late. TCH, I gotta go. I'll beat you next time, nerd. Kaken said as he turned to follow his mom. Hey, you better watch yourself, brat. He's your friend. Auntie Mitsuki said as she and Kaken were walking away. Think about what his uncle suggested, or are you scared? Kaken scowled, but didn't say anything as he followed his mom. We should be going as well, Izuku, Mom said. Thank you for helping make my son's birthday special, she said, looking at Mirio and his friends. Why you're welcome, Shuichi stammered. We should be going as well. Let's find wherever the adults went. Our family guides us in early life, whether good or ill. They can help pull us from darkness, or let us fall. But even from disaster, good can come. Sometimes someone lends their hand. As just a perfect stranger. Chapter 12, Staged Intermission, Point V. Did you have a good time, Tamaki? Mum asked as they sat down in an empty set of seats on the train. Anything you like about it? Mirio got me an octopus, he replied, holding up a plushie. That was nice of him, Mum replied gently. Anything else? Tamaki didn't answer for a while, looking out the window as city after city whizzed past. It was only thanks to that he saw the smoke. Mum, he said gently. She seemed to be sleeping, so he gave a small tug on her sleeve. Mum? Still, he got no response, and so he pulled harder. Mum. What is it, Tamaki? She asked, sitting up only to look out the window and see burnt forest where there were normally large green trees. We gotta go help. But sweetie, it could be dangerous, besides, we don't even know if anyone's there. That's what they said about Shuichi's mom and dad. That stopped Ika in her tracks. That poor boy. It was quite fortunate that the Tagata family had found him not long after. Still, she had no idea what could be going on. Heroes would surely help. Like they had helped the poor Iguchas? Determination welled up inside her chest. She would do her best to make sure that didn't happen again. Okay, sweetie, she said, wrapping one of her tentacle-like arms around Tamaki's plushie and another around her purse as she grabbed his hand with a third. We can get off at the next stop. Just don't. Let go. Tamaki nodded with a determined expression. The minute it took to get to the next stop felt like hours as they stared out the window at the distant smoke. Start of warning area. Tuya took a breath and almost passed out, the pain from the action blinding. Still, he was alive. That was good. He slowly took stock of his surroundings, the skeletons of charred trees twisting up into the smoke that still lingered like an ominous cloud. He then realized that his jaw just seemed to be gone. But he couldn't really feel any pain, it just felt numb. A distant part of him noted that he most likely had burnt the nerve endings. He tried to call out for help, letting out a hoarse scream at how raw his throat felt. The smoke. Not good. He almost swore he heard footsteps, but dismissed the idea. Father hadn't come, no one had. No one had found him. Maybe they'd find him lying there, bleeding out? No, no. He wouldn't give up. He slowly pushed himself into a sitting position, only now he knew he heard something, the sound of something stepping on one of the charred branches littering the ground. He heard a gasp as the figure got closer, a woman he managed to make out. She looked like she had a squid quirk, 2 arms cradling something vaguely kid-shaped, while another 2 seemed to be holding a bag and some other things. A blanket was wrapped over the kid, while a bandana was tied over her mouth. She gently wrapped an arm around his shoulders. It felt cold, kind of like Mom. Hey, it'll be okay, she said calmly. I'll call an ambu. And no, Tuya wheezed. Don't want him, find me. Too late. Not enough. The woman looked surprised, but concern soon took over. Okay, I know someone, a lady I work with sometimes. If there's something you don't want to say, I can promise she'll respect that. Can I call her? Just, no one else, Tuya forced out. The woman nodded, pulling out her phone and dialing up whoever it was she was talking about, whoever was on the other end picking up quickly. Hello, is Miss Shuzenji home? No? Well, I have a bit of an emergency here. No, I can't do that. I need her here. You think you can get her to come, then? I'll send my location. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Pocketing her phone, the woman gave a strained smile. She'll be here soon, just hold on tight for me, okay? Tuya gave a shallow nod, and noticed movement coming from the large bundle in his 2 arms, a figure who looked just a bit younger than Natsuo jumping down and rushing toward him. Wait, Tamaki. He needs 2 heroes, Tuya heard the boy whisper as he got closer to Tuya, flinching as he saw his face before sitting down so that he could look at Tuya without seeing it. Okay, just let's make sure you don't breathe in any smoke, she said, tying a bandana over his mouth before doing the same for Tuya. End of main warning area. Some mentions exist beyond, but are minor in passing. Chio hung up the phone hurriedly, patting her pockets to make sure she had her supplies. Kai, we need to go. Now. Kai looked up from the medical reports he'd been reading. Yes, Chio? Hari. Just called. One of my colleagues called and it sounded urgent. And you need my help? It's always better to be prepared, Chio replied. After the agonizingly long train ride to the area, Chio made her way to the location Hari had passed on to her. Some heroes had arrived, but were tied up with the civilians who might be impacted, so no one noticed her and Kai slipped further into the remains of the forest. As they got further in, Chio couldn't help but wonder how someone could have survived the fire. Her worry was cut short by a voice calling out. Miss Shuzenji, is that you? I'm over here. Chio recognized that voice, one of the nurses she worked with, Mrs. Amajiki. It's me, dear. I brought Kai as well. As Chio and Kai finally made it to where Mrs. Amajiki was, the woman let out a deep sigh of relief. Thank you ever so much. Chisaki may be the better fit, if he's comfortable with doing so. As Chio looked over the boy that Mrs. Amajiki was gently cradling, she noticed her son was sitting beside him, making sure not to look at the boy's face, which she could understand it was gone. Mrs. Amajiki watched her gaze. I think I found it, she replied. Could Chisaki? I could, but I don't have enough experience to be comfortable with trying. I should be able to help his injuries, but reconnecting part of his body is much more of an unknown. Fine, don't worry, the boy slurred. Do you want my help, or not? Kai asked rhetorically. I'll do what I can, but this will hurt. Anyway. Kai crouched down and laid his hand on one arm. Chio watched as he carefully lessened the burns and stemmed the bleeding. All the while the boy watched. Even with how lethargic he was, the boy watched Kai work with blazing blue eyes. And not bad. Thank you, Shuzenji and Chisaki. For everything. I can sympathize with wanting to put distance between oneself and their past, Chisaki said plainly. If he wants to tell you, he will. Shuzenji nodded with a tired smile. I can see if Hound Dog knows of good counselors for you and your son. Ika was about to politely decline, but Shuzenji frowned. Don't say you don't need it, dear. I've seen enough traumatized patients to know the importance of counseling. I'll probably take you up on that, Ika sighed. Are you sure me taking him in is legal? Chisaki chuckled dryly. You'd be surprised at how well someone can pass as a new person if they so desire. I'd mention makeup, but since I couldn't remove the scarring. Kai? What else is she supposed to do? Kai answered, his mirth gone. If something is not right with his home life and he's related to the wrong person, going through the proper channels could cause more trouble than my suggestion. Shuzenji sighed. This isn't the time, Kai. Amajiki, if we can help you get home. Your family must be worried. Ika winced. Don't worry about anyone waiting for me. If you can help us to the train station, we'll be fine from there. Shuzenji frowned, but didn't comment on her request, opting to nod before leading the way out of the forest. Scooping up Tamaki and the boy, who had both fallen asleep, Ika began to head home. Once Ika got home, she got to work. Tamaki, tired as he was once they got home, had refused to sleep until the boy they'd rescued was safe in bed. Not having another, she made do with a spare mattress. Ika decided to set it up in the room she and Tamaki had shared ever since. No, now was not the time to dwell on the past. She hummed tunelessly, pulling a sheet and blanket onto the mattress. As soon as Tamaki decided it was ready, he grabbed the boy's hand and gently guided him toward the bed. "Why?" he asked, his voice raw. "'Cause we're heroes," Tamaki said softly. A strange look crossed the boy's face. "Heroes, huh? Better than him." That seemed to take the little energy he had. Ika had to quickly grab the boy to keep him from falling over, before guiding him to the makeshift bed. Now satisfied, Tamaki lay down in his own bed, though Ika did not join him. She needed to figure out where to go from here. Tuya woke up sometime in the night. At first he was confused about his surroundings, before seeing the woman lying on one of the beds. His memories came rushing back. He'd almost died, hadn't he? The realization of what had happened was overwhelming. He was confused. That man had forgotten him. The woman and her son hadn't. He had almost died. The boy had saved him. He wanted revenge. Could he hurt Shadow? He wanted to make him pay. Was there anything he could even do? The thought swirled around inside his mind like a choking smoke, and before he knew it he'd fallen back into a fitful sleep. Tuya was awoken by a gentle tapping on his side. He opened his eyes slowly, able to make out the figure after his vision cleared. It was the little boy from yesterday, was it? He looked younger than Natsuo, older than Shadow. "Hey, are you hungry?" Tuya blinked. "Shouldn't you be in school?" The words felt strained as he said them, his throat still sore. "Mum said I didn't have to go today," the boy said quietly. "So are you hungry?" Sure," Tuya said hesitantly. "Who are you?" "Amajiki, but you can call me Tamaki if you want," the boy replied, before asking what Tuya's name was. Tuya wasn't sure what to say at first. He couldn't tell them who he was. What if that man found out? What could he call himself? A memory from last night came to the forefront, the ashes scattering in the wind. "Kaibun," he answered. "Ashes." The boy Amajiki tilted his head curiously. "That's your only name?" "It's my name," Tuya replied before frowning. "Can't you speak up? You're too quiet." Amajiki frowned. "Mum said it's okay if I'm quiet." Tuya couldn't help but smirk. "Guess I'm one to talk with." "How slowly?" "I got to talk." "Kaibun, are you sure you can eat then with your throat hurt, I mean?" the kid asked worriedly. "Don't worry, I think I found the solution to that," a new but vaguely familiar voice spoke up. "Mum!" Amajiki exclaimed, running toward what revealed itself to be the woman from last night. Now that it wasn't so dark, Tuya could see the resemblance. Her hair was indigo, just like her son's, although while his was somewhat spiky, hers was smooth, hanging down past her shoulders before curling slightly at the end. Her eyes were a dark purple. And even the way she looked at him was similar to her son. "How's that?" "One noodle at a time," he joked, not wanting to try sifting through the mess that was his feelings. Deflection had its uses. "I can arrange that if you'd prefer, but I was thinking perhaps a smoothie." "This is just a dream, and if it isn't, by some miracle, there's no way it'll last," Tuya thought silently. Some people might hope, but it felt like he'd burnt the last of his. Not all can be fully mended or replaced. But that is not to say it can't grow if provided with patience and understanding. Chapter 13, Stage Equipment Malfunction, Point Vi. "Doctor, what do you require of me?" "I must do some field tests, as it were," the doctor replied. 9 seems to be stable, and his quirk cannot be tested down here. If you feel anything is amiss, I want you to return promptly." Kurojairi was confused. "Are you saying that you will not be coming with us?" "Unfortunately not, as I have work to do with number 6. I have some monitoring equipment, and 9 has instructions on what to do. All you need to do is supervise." "Understood, Doctor," Kurojairi said in acknowledgement before opening a portal to obtain 9. "Wait a moment," the doctor said before Kurojairi let himself through the portal. "Yes, Doctor? Take Denki with you. I do not trust him alone." "As you wish," Kurojairi replied before letting the portal engulf him. "Come, Denki," Kurojairi said upon returning to the room that might charitably be called living quarters. "Okay. Just let me get sushi." Sure," Kurojairi corrected patiently. "What's shusi mean, anyway?" Denki asked curiously. "Sushi is rice wrapped around seafood and often vegetables," Kurojairi explained. "Then why name a cat that?" Denki asked, returning triumphantly with the plushie. I do not remember, Kurojairi replied hesitantly. He shook the strange feeling from himself. He had work to do. At any rate, we need to collect 9 and go outside the laboratory for a while, so we must be going, he continued, gently pulling Denki into the warp gate to 9's room before heading for the surface. Why is everything broken around here? Denki asked curiously. An isolated area is much better to avoid undue attention, Kurojairi explained, before turning to 9. You may begin. 9 nodded, a look of intense focus on his face. Kurojairi could feel deep inside him a primal worry, as if some great force was being gathered. After half a minute at the most, the area started to dim. Kurojairi looked up to witness a dark cloud forming above them, centered over 9. Whoa, it's so big! Denki exclaimed in childlike awe. The doctor has pathways to quirks some consider unnatural. Huh? I apologize, I was merely letting my mind wander. He's talking about what the doctor did, 9 answered. I'm not sure on all the details, but I think he added something to my quirk to make it stronger. Denki didn't ask any more questions, seemingly content to watch as 9 started to manipulate the large cloud he had gathered. The rain started softly at first, but the intensity increased gradually, going from a soft pitter-patter to a steady stream of droplets. I wonder how far I can push it, Kurojairi heard the older boy mutter. He noticed the rain pick up, starting to echo the beginning of the rainy season's typhoons. Doesn't it scare you? Denki asked nervously. You can't gain power without risk, 9 replied firmly. The weak aren't those without power, they're the ones who don't strive to become better. The weather continued to grow more erratic, and Kurojairi was thankful he had chosen such an isolated area, noticing how the wind was beginning to ravage the abandoned buildings around them. Roofs collapsed, walls creaked and groaned, and some of the more dilapidated ones simply snapped and crumbled in a cacophony of destruction. Maybe you should stop, Denki trailed off, a hint of fear entering his voice. I will show Sensei that I can handle it. 9 declared. I won't be weak. The intensity of the storm increased, along with becoming more erratic. Whereas before it had resembled an orchestrated chorus of the powerful elements, now it seemed to become less cohesive, random bolts of lightning starting to appear. 9, I believe this is enough. Let us return, Kurojairi stated, opening a warp gate even as he said it. Suddenly the feeling of power in the air grew thicker, and 9 screamed, shuddering as if pain. The lightning grew more frantic, striking down all around them, the electricity crackling as it raced down toward the ground. Chunks of earth were torn and thrown into the air. Trees were set ablaze or toppled by the energy. And it was closing in on 9. Come through the portal, now. Kurojairi commanded, but whether he heard him or not, 9 did not come or even respond. He turned to usher Denki through, only he wasn't there. His gaze snapped back toward 9, a blonde-haired blur rushing toward him, even as the electricity started striking within mere meters of his position. Grab me. Just as Denki made it to 9, a particularly large bolt raced straight down toward the two. Denki didn't give 9 a chance to refuse his demand, pulling him into a hug. Electricity danced across their forms, and for an agonizingly long moment, Kurojairi feared the worst. He didn't dare open a portal, as if the electricity could travel through, then he himself might be gravely injured. Then he noticed that the storm was rapidly dying. The clouds dispersing and shrinking, the electricity gone. As the last of the storm disappeared, he rushed toward Denki and 9. Denki seemed fine, miraculously. He was babbling incoherently, but Kurojairi had witnessed that before, such as the infamous headbutt. Still, he'd been worried that the power from the lightning might be too much. He was very grateful it had not been. 9 also seemed to be relatively unharmed. There were some painful-looking burns, but 9 seemed to be okay. His face was pulled into a tight grimace, but didn't make a sound. Let's return, Kurojairi stated simply before whisking the two back to the lab in a new warp gate. I apologize, Master, I should have anticipated potential backlash, it was foolish of me to not have planned better. If you see fit to give me the chance, I promise I will do everything in my power. Doctor, breathe, All for One interrupted firmly. Yes, Master. Good, All for One sighed. Failure is merely a way to learn. And thanks to that other child, the damage was minimal. But Kurojairi can also learn, All for One interrupted once more. Your work is impressive. Though I believe I have the solution to the backlash, if I may be so bold. The doctor straightened his head. His loyalty sometimes clouded his judgment, but he knew what All for One spoke was the truth. All for One was no fool. Punishing his followers for making a mistake, as humans were wont to do, would be foolish. A petty action that would only inspire fear, not respect. Fear had its uses, but not here. Doctor, would my quirk help his body handle this weather manipulation better? Your quirk, master? The doctor asked incredulously. But we still need more data, more time. Time which we may not have. I've heard word of All Might gaining the support of a young hero student with a powerful quirk via his sidekick, Sir Night Eye. Not only that, but a young information broker has been hearing rumors of the HSPC. They're agitated. It would only take one moment of chaos to reveal all that we've been working for, and the fuse has been lit. I suppose I could try to take inspiration from 6 and see if something can't be gained from his adaptability. I will leave you to it, then, All for One replied with a nod. I myself have a mission for 9 once he has recovered. The same information broker said something of a young man being groomed by the remnants of Destro's foolish army. 9 should be fully recovered in a few days, the doctor assured him. Perfect. The sooner he can acquire an ally, the better. The next day, Fukusha heard a ding, switching to the off-topic room. System, 'tis but a scratch joined the room. 'Tis but a scratch, got a pic of this kid and Itori said I should send it here. 'Tis but a scratch, untitled.jpg. Good Bird is typing. Good Bird is still typing. Good Bird, did you really rename the file to untitled.png? 'Tis but a scratch, my work here is done. System, 'tis but a scratch left the room. Good Bird, have fun, kids. I'm leaving to avoid being complicit in whatever you do with that. System, Good Bird has left the room. Jean, perhaps he really is a lawyer. Blonde cockatoo, it's the kid. How does a kid that young have eye bags? Jean, I must carry some jeans in case I encounter him again. His current clothing goes together like denim and wool. Fukusha sighed. He was starting to feel the others might be overreacting. Echo the plasma, I feel like you both are getting too worked up. Blonde cockatoo, says the guy referencing some super old movie with his hero name. Jean, burnt like denim on Endeavor. System, team up request from Nedu. Fukusha clicked on the message tab, wondering what his former principal might need. Nedu, hello, ectoplasm. I could use your assistance if you are available within the next week. Fukusha quickly typed out a response. Ectoplasm, I believe that should work. Nedu, excellent. Can you meet me at UA later today to discuss it further? Ectoplasm, I'll see you there. Fukusha made his way to the principal's office. Even so many years later he still knew the way as if he was still a student. He knocked on the door, receiving an invitation to enter. Nedu, you requested my assistance? He asked after closing the door behind him. Nedu nodded. That is correct. I've learned from a colleague of mine that a high-ranking official has been meeting with some suspicious individuals. Of course I can't lead an official investigation with the politics involved, but if someone happened to be patrolling near the area I've calculated they'll show up next. As shrewd as ever, Fukusha nodded. And well suited for my clones. That is indeed a large part of it, Nedu agreed as if he didn't notice Fukusha's reluctance. Is there something you want to say? This isn't just catching some villains, sir, Ectoplasm replied. And you said that my quirk was just a large part of it, what else is there to it? I was hoping that Lady Nagant could accompany you. Fukusha just let out a word-weary sigh. I know better than to ask questions, you must have your own reasons. But her? For a stealth mission? You would be surprised, Nedu answered cryptically. Do you have any other questions, or is that all? One question. Yes? What time? 3 days from today. Time and location will be provided when the time is right. Fukusha nodded, getting up from the desk before leaving the room. Just as he exited the school grounds, he realized that Nedu had never answered his question about the nature of the mission in full. Just what had he gotten himself into? It was only 2 days later when Nedu had once again summoned Fukusha, who got to UA just after most of the students had left for the day. Nedu was in his office, as well as Lady Nagant, who was pulling a beanie over her hair as he entered. Thank you for coming, Ectoplasm, Nedu greeted him. Nice to meet you, Lady Nagant said politely. You can call me Tsutsumi. Very well then, Tsutsumi, Fukusha nodded. I assume that Nedu told you about what we're doing? Tsutsumi nodded. In that case, I suppose the only details left are time and location, Fukusha continued. Here is the location, Nedu replied, handing over a slip of paper with an address. And as for time, if you leave right now, you should be there within an acceptable time frame. Wait, right now? Tsutsumi asked, sounding rather surprised. We can go now? Fukusha felt he should also be surprised at Nedu choosing now as the time, but after working with him, he just accepted it, glad that he'd chosen to wear his costume, just in case. Indeed. I didn't want to waste your time, having you wait around, Nedu said in answer to Tsutsumi's question. Of course, if you need more time. No, I'm ready, she replied confidently. Perfect. You might run into Eraserhead on your way, then, Nedu replied. Tsutsumi looked puzzled. Who? Chapter 14, The The stage is live. Point 7. Show, are you sure there isn't anyone who can cover for you? Inko asked for the third time. Inko, you know the answer, Shoyuta sighed as he pulled his capture scarf around his shoulders. Good night. I always worry about you, Inko ventured. I know, Shoyuta answered simply. My quirk and fighting style is a good match for this. I know being an underground hero helps you with things like this, but do you really? Nedu asked for my help. I'm going, he replied, walking out the door and into the night. I will be watching if you require assistance, Kurogyri said as Nine checked himself over. I don't want to look weak because you came running, Nine grumbled. There is a difference between appearing weak and being cautious, came Kurogyri's sage reply. Okay, Nine relented. But not unless I signal you. It would be unwise for me to not take your safety into account, Kurogyri replied, the implication of what may happen if he didn't respect Nine's request hanging ominously. Nine fidgeted uncomfortably before finally relenting. Okay, fine. If you feel you need to do something, do it. But you better be sure. You have my word. There was a creak of the old door, a small form making their way into the room. Watcha doing? How did you get in here? Kurogyri asked, fixing the small intruder with a disappointed narrowing of his eyes. Denki didn't seem to have thought that far, a frown crossing his face. This is my room, Nine declared indignantly. What are you doing here? Nine, Kurogyri said in a warning tone. Sorry, he mumbled, before sighing. But seriously, he shouldn't be here. I was bored. Denki exclaimed, throwing up his hands in exasperation. And it sounded like you two were gonna have fun. Who said anything to you about what we were doing? Kurogyri asked suspiciously. Me, came the smug reply from around the door, which opened wider to show Nine's counterpart, wearing an equally smug grin. 6, I thought you were supposed to be assisting the doctor, Kurogyri said tersely. The doc had to help Master with something, 6 replied, either not noticing or not caring how Kurogyri seemed to be wound up tighter than they'd normally seen him. And so you decided to blab about what was going on to the doctor's subject? 9 countered. Hey, neither of us were much older than him when Master found us, 6 groused. Besides, it's not as if I thought he'd try to come and find you. Still, for everyone's sake, be more tactful with the information you share, 6, Kurogyri replied. Fine, fine. Buncha killjoys, 6 grumbled. Well, I'd love to join you in crashing the Meta Liberation Army's little meeting, but I actually do have somewhere else to be. 6 slipped out the door, leaving Kurogyri and the boys alone as he went off to wreak whatever havoc he'd been tasked with. Kurogyri turned to Denki, who now looked rather unsure about what to do. Denki, I am most sorry, but where we are going is not safe. But what if 9? You need not worry, Kurogyri replied reassuringly, opening a warp gate that led to Denki's room. Stay in your room until we return, unless the doctor says otherwise, of course. Fine, Denki pouted. But you better not get hurt again. He added with a pointed stare at 9. You worry about yourself, 9 grumbled. Nah, if I can't go, you gotta promise me you won't hurt yourself. Denki insisted. I said. La, can't hear you. Denki chanted, putting his hands over his ears. Ugh. Fine. The doctor said I shouldn't be using my quirk anyway, 9 grumbled. Happy now? Yup. Kurogyri hid a smirk at the interaction, returning to a neutral expression when 9 glanced at him. You ready? Yes, he answered, opening a warp gate a safe distance from their target. Shoyuta watched the building carefully, Ectoplasm's clone decidedly silent. Suddenly he saw movement. A shrouded figure entered the building through a side door. The action didn't seem to trigger any sort of alarm, whether audible or silent. Considering what Nedu had shared, that didn't rule out the figure being one of their targets. Some bigwig, no matter how crazy that sounded. Commander, Muyu's overseer greeted the man who had entered the room, while Raiten dipped her head in acknowledgement. Muyu watched Raiten and Makoto carefully. He wasn't sure how to respond, himself. He'd been taught to push himself and his meta ability, but he'd never seen a commander before. Skeptic was a strange man, lanky and hunched over. His straight black hair hid most of his face, making him hard to read. Still, there was a sense of power that emanated from him. Muyu wanted that. That power, that confidence, that strength. This was someone to follow, he could feel it. A man with the power to make his word reality. Power was good. It was simple. It was strong. It didn't leave room for complicated rules and laws that hurt more than they helped. It had room for one thing. Commander, sir, Makoto said, turning his head up once more from the security monitor. There's someone here. Details, Skeptic commanded. It's a kid. Makoto answered as he observed the footage. They look about Muyu. Geeton, Skeptic snapped. The Grand Commander has decided on that for his codename. Of course, Makoto agreed without skipping a beat. The figure looks to be around Giton's age. They have a dark mask on, gray hair, and some sort of fancy-looking jumpsuit. Does that ring any bells? No, Skeptic replied, the word laced with frustration. How could an unknown make it this close without our knowledge? Our monitoring for this area is limited, Makoto began, only to be cut off by Skeptic once more. Don't tell me something I already know. We need to leave. I don't like this. Of course, Commander, Makoto answered, making to leave. No. Not together. We will all take different exits, Skeptic said in a clipped tone. We will meet up half a block west. Yes, Commander, Makoto and Riton replied. 9 watched as some people left the building he'd been told the potential ally was in, all leaving through different exits. The closest to him looked around his age. Good, that must be the person he was sent for. He slipped out from his hiding place, cutting off the figure's exit. Get out of my way, the person demanded, trying to hit 9. Not one to give up so easily, 9 halted the punch aimed for his head, twisting it away. He heard a snap as he broke the person's wrist in his haste. Unfortunate, but he was too busy trying to keep the boy from running to worry about hurting him. As the two fought, neither noticed the presences nearby. Ectoplasm, why aren't you doing anything? Kana asked incredulously as they heard some sort of commotion. Eraserhead has a visual on that area. If he thought we needed to intervene, he would have said something by now. Or something is really wrong and he can't tell us. And what if our sudden appearance just made things worse? Ectoplasm retorted. We'll slowly change our position and then move in. Is that acceptable? How long will that take? Kana asked curtly. 5 minutes, give or take. Fine. Lead on. No, we need to push in from both sides. You take the left, I'll take the right. Okay. Shoyuta glared at the shadowy figure 12 meters opposite him, managing to blink quickly enough to prevent them from succeeding in any attempts to warp again. Release me, they growled, their lightning bolt-like eyes narrowed dangerously. I seek no quarrel with you. When I have no idea about your intentions? Completely irrational, Shoyuta replied firmly. The figure's eyes twisted into what almost looked like confusion. Have we met before? I swear you remind me of someone. I highly doubt that, Shoyuta replied bluntly. Humph, no matter, the figure sighed, before turning thoughtful. You really should have back up, hero. It is unwise to not have someone to watch your back, the tides can turn quickly. Shoyuta froze, the sentiment was so familiar. He could almost hear him. Shirakumo? That split second of hesitation was all it took, the wispy figure warping out of sight and leaving Shoyuta alone with his thoughts. Damn it. How could he be so careless? He quickly lashed out with his capture scarf toward a nearby stairway, the support item wrapping around the top of the bars and allowing him access to a better vantage point. Kurogyri took advantage of the hero's distraction, quickly warping over to a location that the pro wouldn't be able to see him from. His quirk seemed related to line of sight. Every time he blinked, Kurogyri was able to feel warp gate for the brief time that the hero's eyes were closed. He tried to shake the confusion that clouded his mind. That man was familiar. He felt too strongly for it to just be a mistake. Still, now was not the time to reflect. He warped once more, putting him in view of 9 and Muyu. 9 had managed to pin the boy by this point, blue eyes staring up with a mixture of respect and anger. Shouldn't we go find M. Giton, Commander? Makoto asked, a streak of worry tinging his words. He still isn't here and it's been. No, Skeptic answered firmly. Redestro was interested in Giton, yes, but he is far from the only one. We are not going to take the risk that turning back would entail. It wouldn't be worth the chance of being spotted by any heroes or law enforcement nearby that aren't privy to the cause. Turning on his heel, Skeptic began to put distance between them and their hiding place. Riton seemed content with the decision, urging Makoto forward even as he looked back at Muyu worriedly. Not you, Riton. I want you to run interference in case we are followed. Yes, Commander, Riton replied, the corners of her mouth twitching up in the ghost of a grin. I won't let you down. Hearing footsteps, Kurogyri decided it was time to go. Who knew who might be coming? Maybe even that same hero from earlier. Just as the warp gate was almost finished closing, a new figure darted through before he could react, long red hair trailing through the portal. Kurogyri swore internally, quickly warping himself to their destination. Hasaki glanced around at the room she'd appeared in. Now she was starting to realize that maybe she shouldn't have followed those two as she took in the sight of strange machinery and tubing around her, but she couldn't help it, they were interesting. 10 minutes earlier. Hasaki watched with excitement as the two boys fought something interesting. It was always so boring. At school, everyone was trying to get into boring jobs. Yuck. Like, heroes looked like they got to have some fun, but even then they had all those stupid rules to follow. She loved to sneak away and watch the fight rings, up until the rapper stopped going to them. It just wasn't the same after that. But now she got to see something interesting. She'd thought the weird-suited boy would lose. He looked too worried about his looks to fight well. That assumption had been proven wrong when he not only stood up to the blue-haired boy, but even gained the upper hand. She could tell the fight was almost over. Both boys were breathing heavily. Blue Hair had been forced to just use one arm because of his broken wrist, and Soup Boy was starting to flinch, though she had no idea why. Blue Hair seemed to have picked up on that, swinging his fist straight toward Soup Boy's side. Only it never connected. Soup Boy ducked away from the blow, while in the same motion grabbing Blue Hair's outstretched hand and pulling them both down to the ground in a heap. Before Blue Hair could do anything, Soup Boy had pinned him to the ground, one hand wrapped around his windpipe. "Give up," Soup Boy said firmly. "I can still beat you," Blue Hair said defiantly, his face pulled into an angry scowl. "Do it then," Soup Boy taunted, tightening his grip. Blue Hair seemed to finally realize he'd been beaten, a hint of respect emerging through his anger. "Fine. You win. What do you want?" "An ally," Soup Boy answered firmly. There was a tense moment of silence, when suddenly a strange mist appeared. Soup Boy didn't seem surprised, saying something to Blue Hair, though a crash somewhere above her prevented her from hearing what was said. Not that it impacted her ability to see, watching as the two boys seemed to be teleported. Hasaki had a choice right then and there. Go back to her normal life that was only punctuated by an interesting event here and there, or follow these two who seemed to be interesting all on their own. There wasn't really a choice. She dashed out from her hiding place, running into the mist and wondering what she might find on the other side. As a girl in search of adventure ran into the darkness, a hero in search of answers found flaming light. Fukusha and his clone dashed out from where they had been walking as they noticed a shadowy figure. "Who are you?" Fukusha's clone called out. "A liberator," the figure responded, two large yellow flames suddenly coming to life on each hand. The added light only confirmed what the voice gave hint to the person was a woman. Anything else was unclear, except for the dangerous gleam in her eyes. "You can still walk away, right now," Fukusha suggested. "No one needs to get hurt." "Not a chance," his opponent replied. "My job is to stop you. No matter what." Suddenly the flames around her hands flared up, elongating until they were around a meter long. The action was the only warning Fukusha had as she started running toward him, snapping her hand forward. The flame followed her movement as if it were a rope of fire, whipping toward Fukusha in a deadly arc. He jumped to the side, escaping an untimely death, though it did manage to graze him. The heat burnt through his costume and left an angry-looking burn on his left arm. His adrenaline masked the pain as he continued to evade. Deciding on a plan, he quickly activated his panic button. Hopefully that would send Eraser or Nagant his way. Still, that meant he had to fight the very violent woman with fire whips until they arrived. He tried to close in on his opponent, but it was hard to do while avoiding her quirk, and he didn't have anything that would be good at range, nothing that wouldn't be turned to ash by the intense flames that were swung around in deadly swipes. That's why he had a plan. He called upon the clone he had taken as backup, using the doppelganger to divide the woman's attention. Circling around, he managed to get close enough to strike, only to be forced upwards as a chain of fire swung where he had just been standing. "Just give up, the burns should make sure you don't die from blood loss," the woman jeered, swinging once more while Fukusha was still up in the air. One moment, he felt his legs. The next, they were gone. His clone rushed forward, saving him from falling to the ground and avoiding the fire that crossed over where he would have landed. Two more clones came running up behind the woman from a nearby alleyway, moving to capture her. "Oh no you don't," she yelled, swinging her arms in a dizzying display that managed to land several burns on Fukusha's clones. Bang! Suddenly the woman was clutching her left arm, blood dripping onto the pavement. "Come down here, punk," she began to shout, only to be cut off once more. Bang bang! Two more shots rang out, one grazing the woman's shoulder, while the other one looked like it hit her right elbow. Suddenly Nagant swung down, aiming the barrel of her quirk for the woman's chest. The villain managed to dodge even in her weakened state, putting distance between her and Nagant. She eyed Fukusha and Nagant angrily, letting out a growl. "Damn it, you heroes. You might live today, but I promise you'll regret this." She then turned around and dashed out into the maze of streets around them. Nagant looked conflicted, not seeming to know whether to give chase or let the woman go. After looking at Fukusha, she seemed to make her decision, deactivating her quirk and pulling a first aid kit from her costume. "Damn it. Stay with me, ectoplasm," she said sternly, her voice wavering as she pulled out some bandages. Fukusha felt detached, somehow able to stay calm through all that was going on. "Okay, Nagant. Just call recovery girl, she should be able to handle this. Do you have a phone? Nagant stiffened, reaching into a pocket on her costume just to be met with the badly warped body of what was once a smartphone. I must have broken it somehow during the fight, she said in an even tone, though her eyes betrayed her worry. He had to remember that, well-trained or not, she was still quite new to the profession. Okay. I've got a phone in my costume, he replied. Nagant wasted no time in opening his coat. The pocket's on the bottom left, he directed, sighing when she pulled out his old phone, which still seemed to be in good order. Nagant flipped it open, punching in recovery girl's number and starting the call. Hello? Yes, we need your help. Ectoplasm's been badly injured, and I haven't heard from Eraser. What happened here? The aforementioned hero asked briskly as he swung in from behind them. He had a strange look in his eyes as he took in the sight before focusing on Fukusha. Nagant started at his sudden appearance, though she quickly collected herself. Never mind that last thing, recovery girl, he's here. Hand me those bandages, Eraserhead demanded, quickly taking the offered cloth and wrapping them around the stumps of Ectoplasm's legs. It's pretty bad, Nagant said as she resumed talking to recovery girl. His legs, they got cut off. Yes, Eraserhead's wrapping it up right now, okay, we'll wait here, then. Nagant closed up the phone, awkwardly pocketing it before activating her quirk once more, scanning the area around them warily. As Fukusha did his best to stay awake, he couldn't help but wonder if it would have been better if they'd never shown up. For some, success. For others, defeat. For some, a loss, and a hasty retreat. Chapter 15, Staging Grounds, Point 8. So, Muyu, Geeton, the boy corrected. As I was saying, the self-proclaimed Slice continued, why did you join 9? I tried asking you when we first met and you just made some edgy speech about not knowing whether you deserved the answer. He proved that he was stronger. And, that's it? Geeton gave an unimpressed look. What do you mean? He proved he was You already said that, Jack Frost. Geeton. Not important. Exactly, 9 said, interrupting the budding argument. Slice, Geeton has his reasons. Now are you two ready? I was born ready. Slice declared. I made myself ready, Geeton answered, to which Slice rolled her eyes. Good, 9 said. Progress waits for no one. Earth to 9, Earth to 9. What is it? Shaken from his thoughts about the past year, he caught sight of not just Slice, but Geeton as well. 9, take my advice and ignore her, Geeton advised. Slice needs to focus on something productive. I just need something that doesn't taste like sand or paste. Do you know what food is, 9? Even, dare I say it, sugar? And just why are you looking in my room for food? I can explain, a familiar voice answered nervously. It was then that 9 noticed he'd missed an occupant Denki. There you are, you owe me. Spark got into Slice's food storage, Geeton explained with a shrug. I'm Denki, not Spark. Denki exclaimed with an indignant huff. And I didn't take all of it. Yeah, just anything most people would call edible, Slice retorted. 9 worked up his nerve and patience before addressing the situation. Slice, I think there are some energy bars in the cupboards. Thanks. She replied, quickly starting to root through the aforementioned cupboards. Denki. Yes? Leave Slice's food alone. Keep doing that and you will get a painful lesson on why you shouldn't do so. Ouch. Yes. Ouch, 9 sighed, before addressing the last occupant. And Geeton? She's too carefree. She isn't focused enough, Geeton said plainly. If she doesn't focus on her meta ability. I can hear you. Slice called out from the side of the room before returning to looking through the cupboards. Geeton, she's proved her strength. You can challenge her if you feel the need. That won't be necessary, Geeton replied curtly. He left the room noiselessly, no doubt going to practice with his quirk. You guys are confusing, Denki finally said with a bewildered expression. 9 snorted. But you went and took Slice's food. I didn't think she'd notice, Denki pouted. I can still hear you. Slice called out as she also went to leave the room, granola bars in hand. She went to open the door, but it was pulled open before she could do so, the misty form of Kurogyri walking into the room. He glanced around erratically before his gaze focused on Denki. I swear all children have warping quirks, he muttered before walking toward them. Denki, you know you shouldn't walk around the lab without an escort. I had to hide. Kurogyri looked ready to question Denki, but 9 shook his head. It wasn't worth it. Be that as it may, it's late. Kurogyri stared at 9, as if examining him. How are you feeling, 9? No incidents today, if that's what you're asking, 9 replied. I'm glad. I must take my leave, and Denki needs to rest. Good evening, 9. Tats quod fair bedtine, Slice mocked around a mouthful of granola. And with that, Kurogiri warped himself and Denki away with one of his misty portals. Giton walked down the hall before reaching his room. Letting himself in, he went straight to the freezer and pulled out a large ice tray. He activated his quirk, turning the collection of ice cubes into a miniature dragon and then began looking it over. He appreciated his meta ability, its power and the things that made it unique. With the help of his old overseers within the MLA, he had taken it from a meta ability most would see as weak, to one capable of both power and detail. He transformed the small dragon into an icy blade, giving it an experimental swing before setting it down. He knew Slice didn't approve of his level of dedication toward improving his meta ability, but that didn't really matter. Power and strength were all that mattered, he told himself. Still, it couldn't hurt to try to be on good terms with his allies for the moment. He just wanted to make sure that there wouldn't be any problems in the future, that was all. He looked through his cupboards before happening upon some machi. Now he just needed to find Slice. Doctor, Kurogiri said as he and Denki entered the room. I wasn't expecting you to be here. I had left some items I needed here, the doctor replied. Where were you? I thought I told you to accompany number 6-inch. I noticed that Denki was not here earlier and went looking for him, Kurogiri replied. As for 6, he didn't require my assistance. And yet you didn't alert me, the doctor said, looking at Kurogiri quizzically. Why is that? I don't know, Kurogiri replied. Luckily the doctor seemed to not deem his response problematic, returning to the device he was examining as he continued. Humph, well it doesn't matter in the grand scheme I suppose. Still, in the future, let me know if you do not know Denki's whereabouts. Yes, doctor. Good. It's getting late. I will see you tomorrow, Kurogiri. Kurogiri took the hint, opening a portal to the room he called his own. He looked around the small, sterile space and had a sudden urge to breathe air that wasn't tinted with the smell of harsh chemicals and cleaners. He opened a portal to a random location. He found himself overlooking an office building. There wasn't anything unusual about it, just one of many all across Japan. But he couldn't help but feel that he'd been here before, that this place was important. Garvey was here. Who's there? Kurogiri found himself asking aloud, though he knew the voice had come from his own mind. He knew that shouldn't happen, that it meant something was wrong. But the thought of telling the doctor seemed wrong as well. Kurogiri stood silently, not to return to the laboratory for several hours as he wondered why the place felt so familiar. Aizawa, please don't tell me we finally got you to come out for the night just so you could fill out reports. I haven't had the time until now. It's only. If you say logical, no one will know where I buried your sleeping bag. Kayama threatened. Shoyuta groaned, but didn't finish his sentence. It was hard to find sleeping bags rated as highly as his. For real, Aizawa, Yamada said, joining what was starting to feel like an intervention. You've been in a funk. Again, Kayama added. Are you sure nothing happened? Glowing yellow eyes, swirling mist, the familiar words. No, he said dismissively. Have you and Yamada been plotting again? Well, Kayama drawled. It turns out that he and some other heroes have been trying to save this kid. I told you not to say anything. Yamada said, thankfully having the restraint to not use his quirk and deafen everyone in the small bar. Shuta's just going to say it's silly. Your reaction alone told me all I needed to know, Shoyuta said flatly. See? How is this guy an uncle? He knows nothing about kids, so how can he know how important it is without me explaining anything? I hate to break it to you, Kayama said in a tone that was anything but sorry. But you know less about kids than Aizawa does. He is an uncle after all. You aren't. See if I credit you when genist and I rescue this kid. Yamada declared, shoving a photo of a very tired-looking, purple-haired preteen in his face. You'll see then. And just how many children have you dealt with, Yamada? Shoyuta asked. Enough to know this kid is in trouble. Yamada shouted. I should introduce you to my nephew's friend. He may even be as loud as you, Shoyuta said with a roll of his eyes. We're going to have to leave if you get any louder, Yamada. I still want to meet those two, Kayama said with a grin. They sound like so much fun. I swear the world would never recover, Shoyuta said flatly. No, you mean it wouldn't fit into your rigid little box of logic, Kayama replied. That wouldn't be a bad thing. I'm still not letting either of you meet them, Shoyuta drawled. TCH, you're no fun, Aizawa. And you still haven't answered my question. Yes I did. I'm fine. And Snipe just started using a sword. What's wrong, Aizawa? Yeah, what gives? Yamada added. If I answer you, will you let me fill out my reports in peace? Sure. I suppose I could. Fine, Shoyuta sighed, not sure why he hadn't just decided to leave and avoid the question. It's never that simple with Kayama, he reminded himself. Do you remember that mission I was on with ectoplasm a while back? He asked. Yes. Hard to forget that awful business, Kayama sighed. It sounds like he might be able to return to full hero duty soon, at least. Aizawa, is this about that weird person that was there? Yes. He reminded me of Shirakumo. You never said anything about that, Yamada said quietly. Go on, Aizawa, Kayama said gently. There's more, isn't there? There is. I was told today that they are now a suspect in a kidnapping case. There's no way Shirakumo would have anything to do with someone like that. Yamada exclaimed. I know, Aizawa agreed, sighing deeply. It isn't rational. But I can't help but wonder. Aizawa, Kayama said firmly. I know you miss him, we all do. But we were there for his funeral. He died. Actually. What, Yamada? Shoyuta asked curtly. Do you have a picture of that weird doctor that did something to your nephew? What does that have to do? Do you? Yes, Shoyuta answered slowly. Why? It's probably nothing. Fine. Let me find it, Shoyuta relented. He reluctantly found a photo of the man, who had called himself Dr. Tsubasa, before showing it to Yamada. Suddenly his friend went pale. Shoyuta? I think I saw him when they took Shirakumo away. Logic doesn't always align with the shifting sands of reality. Things may change between the staging grounds and the full picture. Chapter 16, Smaller Stages. Tuya opened yet another tab. Maybe this school would work. Please enter your legal name for the exam. There has to be some way around it, he muttered to himself, when suddenly Tamaki called out. Kai-bun, there's someone at the door. Well, who is it? I don't know. Mum told me not to answer the door when she's gone. Ugh, I'm coming, Tuya sighed as he stood up from where he'd been sitting and went to answer the door. When he opened it, he recognized the people on the other side, if only vaguely. You work with Ms. Amajiki, right? That I do, dear, though we've met before. I'm Shuzenji and this is Chisaki, the teen replied. Tuya couldn't help but feel that he was being examined under the older boy's gaze. You seem to have recovered rather well, scar tissue aside. Wait, did he have something to do with that night? They seemed familiar. Kai, where are your manners? Shuzenji scolded before turning to Tuya. I apologize. Chisaki always wonders about our patient's recovery, though that doesn't excuse his rudeness. Tuya was about to say just what he thought of Chisaki's strange behavior, but was interrupted by the arrival of Ika. Ms. Shuzenji. I didn't realize you were serious about wanting to help. I don't say things I don't mean, dear. I have a friend who I feel would be of great help, if young Kai-bun. If young Kai-bun is comfortable with doing so. Who's your friend? Tuya asked suspiciously. Perhaps I could explain more, if you don't mind us coming in? Let me be frank, Shuzenji began. Ms. Amajiki told me that you're having trouble finding a hero school to attend due to paperwork. Tuya shifted uncomfortably. So they knew something, but how much? What if they were here because of him? What she means to say, Chisaki said with a sigh, is there may be a way for you to join a school without disclosing your true identity. How did you know? Chisaki, I swear, Shuzenji sighed. Can you let me explain? Chisaki looked annoyed, but didn't protest, allowing Shuzenji to continue. Well, I suppose Chisaki has already said most of it, she said. But I have a close friend at UA High who I believe could help work something out for you. You still haven't told me who this friend is, Tuya said warily. I'll admit that I'm also curious, Ika said. Oh yes, you may have heard of him. Hello, I am Principal Nedu. And you are? Kai-bun, Tuya replied, still at a loss for words at just who Ms. Shuzenji's friend had turned out to be. Actually, what might be the better question? A pleasure. Nedu said cheerfully, either not noticing or not caring about Tuya's silence. Would you care for some tea? Whatever Tuya was expecting, the principal of UA asking if he would like some tea wasn't even something he would ever consider. He nodded automatically, quickly finding himself with a cup in front of him. He took a sip, surprised at both the flavor and the fact that it was cool not hot. It's my own blend, inspired by America's iced tea, Nedu said, answering Tuya's unspoken question. Though I believe it's better without all the sugar. Do you agree? The relatively mundane conversation confused Tuya. Wasn't this going to be about school? What was the point in talking about tea, of all things? I never put that much thought into tea. Nedu chuckled, taking a sip from his own cup. I only asked what you thought of it, Kai-bun. Why did he put emphasis on the name he'd given? But I suppose not everyone shares my enthusiasm for the subject. Enough of that, why do you need my help? Tuya froze. Did Nedu not know? How could he explain why he couldn't try entering normally? What was the correct answer? Let me rephrase that, Nedu said, no longer smiling. Who is Kai-bun? I wasn't able to find anyone that remotely matches your appearance with that name. On top of that, Recovery Girl seems to know you, yet was unusually cagey when speaking of you. Who is Kaibun? Well, this was just great. He was screwed. He'd been set up. Nedu was obviously smarter than Tuya had realized, and it seemed like he would see through any attempt Tuya made at skirting the subject, but if he confirmed what Nedu was no doubt supposed to find, Tuya was not going back not to him. He was going to show Endeavor exactly how wrong he'd been. But if he told Nedu, there was no way he wouldn't take him back to the one place he didn't want to go. Kaibun is going to be the greatest hero, Tuya blurted out. Nedu squinted his eyes in response, completely silent. Yup, there was no way he could salvage this. I won't waste your time. Goodbye. Just give me a moment, Nedu said as Tuya turned to leave. I may be able to change your mind. I am going to be a hero, with or without your school, Tuya said firmly. Oh, I didn't mean that, on the contrary, I believe that we here at UA can help you greatly in your goal. Nedu pulled a set of papers from his desk before continuing. Fill these out. Feel free to put down what you feel comfortable with for the name. If you do that and can pass the entrance exam, I'll make sure you can join class next semester. Tuya froze. Nedu wasn't trying to stop him? That didn't make any sense. How? It can't be that simple. That would be because it isn't, Nedu confirmed. You would be able to participate in all the normal classes, heroics included, but with some restrictions. He pulled one of the papers out of the pile and flipped it over so that Tuya could see. As I've noted here, unless you can provide us with your legal name, you will be barred from hero internships outside of UA, as well as taking the provisional license exam. I'm sure I don't need to explain the legal barriers in place that prohibit those activities. That was still more than Tuya had found so far. And what do you get out of it? He asked suspiciously. You're an oddity, Kaibun, Nedu replied. And I can't help but wonder just what you might do. Is that a no? Tuya knew this was the best shot he had, even if he was taking a risk by accepting. In the end, he knew he only had one choice. When's the earliest I can get the papers to you? I can look them over right here if you fill them out now, Nedu answered, holding out a pen. Tuya walked up to the door of Ika and Tamaki's house before letting himself in. Ika was in the small living room, as well as Tamaki, who was waiting closer to the door. They let Tuya sit down for a few minutes before asking him about the meeting. Did you get in? Tamaki asked. Won't know until I can take the exams, Tuya answered. Well, that's progress? Isn't it? Ika said cautiously. I can actually take the thing, so yeah, Tuya replied. If what the principal said is true, anyway. No need to be pessimistic. Ika said, frowning. Hey, just being realistic, he said. Well, no matter how it turns out, you can always come to us. Tuya smirked. Don't think I'll make it? Now who's being pessimistic? Oh, stop that, you know what I meant, Ika huffed. You can drop the teenage angst act. What's teenage angst? Tamaki asked softly. It means that Mr. Ashes here is trying to act all tough because his body is still in a state of maturation, Ika explained clinically. Mr. Ashes? Tuya snorted. And I guess that makes you squid? Do you know how many times I've heard that? Try again. TCH, never mind. It was stupid anyway. And no, it wasn't. You aren't stupid. Tuya started laughing, much to the bewilderment of Tamaki. Did I say something wrong? Tuya looked up at the wide-arched entryway as he walked onto the UA campus. Today was the daytime to see if Nedu would make good on his word. Walking up to the entrance, he was allowed in without trouble, being directed toward the location for the written exams. Unbeknownst to him, someone had noticed his appearance. Kana watched the strange boy. From his body language tense and ready to run to the strange scars that marked his bare arms and face. Amajiki Kaibun, a boy who seemed to match the description of Todoroki Tuya down to the T, minus the black hair and burned scars. But if what the commission said is true, his quirk is a fire elemental type, Kana thought to herself. Perhaps the scars weren't burn-related? No matter, she had time to find out if Nezu's predictions were to be trusted. Moving forward from where she'd been standing at one of the fountains inside the main building, Kana entered the room for the written exams. She couldn't help but notice the whispers as she walked toward the head of the room. Is she a hero? Whoa, Lady Nagant. I didn't think she'd work at UA. The last comment reminded Kana of the reason she was here in the first place. Nedu. She still couldn't believe that he'd offered her a position as a part of the staff. She was grateful for UA's policy of not announcing the school staff for once she knew that the HSPC would have found some way to force Nezu's hand and tighten her leash if they found out before she'd signed the paperwork. Walking up to the desk at the front of the room, she cleared her throat. Hello and welcome to UA. I am Tsutsumi and I will be supervising the written exam. Tuya was sweating heavily after what felt like only 5 minutes. He'd been sure not to push cremation too far, but he was still getting hot, more burns starting to come to life along his arms. Just as he was about to get back to hunting down the robots, he felt the ground start shaking. It didn't take long to see why. Whatever he was expecting the zero-pointer to look like, it had not been destruction on tank tracks the size of a building. A part of him that he very much wanted to forget and embrace tugged at him. I can show him. There's no way he can deny me if I take that robot out. He knew deep down that if he pushed, he could do it. The forest had been proof enough of that. But no, he needed to stay strong. He was doing this his way, not the way of the man he once called father. Filled with fresh resolve, he started running down a side street toward a small group of the smaller robots. They made a series of groans and whirs as they caught sight of him. The sight of their red eyes only spurred him on. I've dealt with worse than you. Tuya had all but written off UA by the time 2 weeks had passed. Why would they choose him when there were others who didn't start cooking under the effects of their own quirk? He'd thought they'd just silently rejected him when a letter arrived, UA's logo proudly stamped on the envelope. Ika handed it to him, an anxious expression on her face. Is that saying you got in? Tamaki asked tentatively, earning a snort from Tuya. Could just as well be a canned rejection. You won't know until you open it, Ika pointed out. And for the record, I'm with Tamaki. You need to believe in yourself more. Tuya shrugged, but opened the thick envelope. Something that looked like a hockey puck dropped onto the floor, and for a moment, Tuya was afraid he'd wrecked it. His fears seemed to be unfounded when the thing made a small hum, before a holographic image popped up. He was surprised at who the figure was. Ms. Shuzenji. Or as he now realized, the pro-hero recovery girl. Hello dear, I would like to welcome you to your hero academia. Tuya let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He'd made it in. Before he could say anything, the hologram resumed speaking. While I won't go into specifics, you scored well on the written and practical portions of the entrance exam. Well done. The holographic Ms. Shuzenji paused for a moment before pulling a letter from her pocket. As head of UA's medical department, I would like to ask that you allow an extra 30 minutes for orientation day and report first to support class 3G, the location of which is available in the attached overview brochure, as well as the introduction email. I look forward to watching you for the years to come. With that, the message seemed to be finished, the device turning back off. I told him I could do it, he thought to himself. And as soon as the time was right, he would say it right to his face. Even if we act upon smaller stages, there are still those who step in from the main stage to guide us through our scenes. Chapter 17, Slow Burn. I want you all to be on your best behavior, Enja said as she went over the last of the equipment. Don't you think this is going a little far, Enja? Ori questioned. You've checked it over 3 times now. When Recovery Girl asks you for something, you make sure you are DMN sure it works and is all in one piece. Enja answered firmly. And if you make any joke about it being in pieces, I'll make sure Power Loader knows that you would be a great help cleaning 1FS classroom. I'm not saying anything, Ori replied with his arms raised in surrender. But you know I'm right. Being diligent is one thing, obsessing is another. A wise distinction. Enja straightened, moving off to the side as she motioned to the costume case. Here you go, Recovery Girl. All done and ready for action. It was a bit tough getting a hold of all the thermal regulation material, but we managed. With an unhealthy amount of coffee, Ori muttered, before adding his own input. The costume still meets the mobility requirements of the original design, but we weren't able to get any of the designers yet, so sorry about how it looks. No need to worry, dears, Recovery Girl assured them. There will be time enough in the future to work out the bugs, as they say. Time, the one thing we always need, and don't have, Ori lamented. Tuya walked up to the classroom for 3G, knocking on the door. Come in. It's safe. With that very reassuring statement, Tuya pulled the door open to the sight of Ms. Shuzenji and 2 senior support students looking at something on a table. Tuya walked inside and turned to Recovery Girl expectantly. What did you want? Not one to beat around the bush, are you? Ms. Shuzenji chuckled. Well, to answer your question, Overhaul raised some concerns about your condition after the entrance exam. Tuya started to protest, but was stopped by Ms. Shuzenji. You don't need to worry, I just asked these 2 to see if they could help with things. Overhaul? Was that Chisaki's hero name? Had he said something about the exam? He had looked at Tuya strangely when he was checking over the examinees once the exam was over, but he just chalked it up to his general strangeness. He could deal with his quirk, he didn't need their help. I already asked for heat regulation in my costume request. Did I do something wrong? Unless you think us doing our job is wrong. Not at all, the girl said. Her bright red hair seemed very fitting with her intensity. She was the leader if Tuya were to guess. However, after Recovery Girl's request, we made a few adjustments. A few, she says, the boy muttered under his breath. Which should better accommodate Recovery Girl's concerns, the girl continued. Behold, Revision Beta. Dramatically opening the case, she beckoned Tuya forward. As you can see, she continued as Tuya started pulling out the costume. We were able to integrate the thermal regulators directly into your costume and reduce bulk, reducing suit up times by 30%. Thanks. But that's not all, the girl continued. After we refined the thermal regulation aspect and suit design, we still had space left over. The added pockets have the same fire retardant properties as the rest of the suit, allowing you to store any handy supplies or items in the field. Enja, you're scaring him, the boy interrupted. I'm fine, Tuya began, only to be cut off. Hey, no need to feel bad. Even her little sister does it. I'm Shuren Ori, and this is the human welder, Hatsum Enja. I'm warning you, Hatsum said slowly to a disappointed Shuren before addressing Tuya. We just wanted to make sure everything fits comfortably with the modifications before your classes tomorrow. I'll let Ori take over from here. As if on cue, Shuren picked up what turned out to be a helmet and handed it to Tuya. He experimentally slipped it over his head, noting how he could only see through the visor from the inside. As soon as he had it on comfortably, 4 bars appeared on the inside of the visor, 2 on each side. Recovery Girl wanted us to come up with something to allow you to see if you're overheating, Shuren explained. The 4 bars each represent the general temperature of different parts of your body when you have the full costume on at least. Keep things in the green and you're fine, but don't go above orange, otherwise Recovery Girl will. What will I do? Ms. Shuzenji asked, and Tuya swore Shuren paled slightly at the seemingly simple question. Recovery Girl will make sure that you understand that hurting yourself is an unwise decision and should not be repeated, Shuren continued slowly. Very good, Ms. Shuzenji said approvingly. Though I'm sure Overhaul would say the same, it's only wise. Of course, Hatsum agreed. Now, if we can finish this? Mr. Gadget will put us on first-year supervision duty if we aren't there to help him with this year's safety demonstration. Far be it from me to keep you from your work, Ms. Shuzenji replied. I'm needed elsewhere rather soon myself. Can you just take young Amajiki to his classroom to meet his homeroom teacher when you're done? It's on our way anyway, don't worry. Ms. Shuzenji gave an appreciative nod before turning to leave. Chio opened the door to her office and walked inside, smiling when she saw the occupant inside. Ectoplasm, I hope you're doing well. I'm doing as well as can be expected, he replied. Nedu told me to check in here before heading to Class 1B. Good, good, Chio said as she began to check Ectoplasm's prosthetics. I just saw one of your students, actually. Oh? Is something wrong? Not yet, and hopefully not soon, Chio replied, before finishing with her checklist. You look to be in good health. And once again, welcome to the faculty. Fukusha walked up to the classroom with no small amount of trepidation. He'd always liked the idea of teaching math especially, but he wasn't so naive as to think that his schooling would get him through unscathed. He put aside his doubts and opened the large classroom door. The scene in front of him was honestly not near what he'd been expecting. Aside from various chatter, it was relatively calm, though he couldn't help but notice the one student sitting off to the side, Amajiki Kaibun, if he remembered correctly. Filing that thought away, he made his way to the desk at the head of the classroom. Hello, students, he greeted. I am Ectoplasm, your homeroom teacher for this year. Later we will be doing assessments of your quirks, but right now, I ask that you follow me to the auditorium for orientation. Some students groaned as they stood up from their desks, while others quickly made their way to the door. Amajiki was among the latter, sitting up against the wall, fidgeting with his tie. Don't worry, you learn to ignore it, he said. Ignore what? The tie, Fukusha answered, earning a snort from Amajiki. And for those of you with mechanical inclinations, I cannot recommend the work of Jules Verne enough. I look forward to your growth over the next 3 years. Thank you. Tuya swore that Nedu had purposefully made his speech so long there was no other logical explanation for the past 1.5 hours. He held back a snort at the sight of more than one of his classmates leaning back just a bit too far in their seats, fast asleep. Well, it would be a shame if they got caught not paying attention. Pop quiz, what month was the glowing baby found? Tuya hissed in their ears. The two woke up quickly, giving their answers. 2014? Luminescent purple? Maybe I should have let them get caught? We get to go where? Kaizome cringed at the sudden shout, but pushed on. My father managed to get a set of tickets for this year's sports festival. I can't believe it. That's where heroes learn, right? Like, real ones, right? Yes. Some do at least. Remember. No buying into merchandise. Don't let yourself get blinded by flashy moves. Pack earmuffs. That's what matters, the rest you will learn in time, Kaizome interrupted. Then he paused before looking at Ochako quizzically. Wait, where did the earmuffs come from? It's called being prepared and not leaving home with a tattered jacket and scarf only an Akaguro could love, Mother said as she came down into the living room. I swear you're so hot-blooded that you can't feel the cold. And so the pot meets the kettle, Dad interjected without skipping a beat. Oh yes, laugh it up. Just watch what happens to your lunch. It is unacceptable to swap a person's lime yogurt for green apple, Dad answered swiftly. There are proper ways to show your discontent. Kaizome, they don't make sense. Why aren't they making sense? Ochako asked, looking lost. Kaizome himself was only unaffected due to learning how to tune out his parents' strange arguments, so he could understand her reaction. Mother, Dad, please. Not now. Humph, I suppose we can put this off until later, dear, Mother said, letting out an exaggerated sigh before turning to Dad. Ceasefire? Even better, what if I take the week off to help you picket that publishing company, and we'll call it off entirely? Dad offered. And you said you didn't know anything about romance, Mother said with a grin. Welcome to this year's sports festival. Can we get a hand for the first-year classes? Himiko could hardly believe it. Mother and Father had said she could go. They hadn't even said anything about her quirk. It kinda made her feel bad that she couldn't act like they wanted. Is something wrong, Himiko? You're frowning again. Himiko quickly forced a smile. Mother and Father had paid for Auntie, Uncle, and Nedu to come. She didn't want to spoil this for her cousin. Sorry, it's nothing. Nedu didn't look like he bought it, but he didn't call her out, which was better than nothing. So, do you want to do this? Nedu asked, sweeping his hand over the stadium. Do what? Why, be a hero. Nedu answered as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Himiko started to shake her head, but Nedu shook his head in turn. You're great at running and jumping on stuff, and it's not even your quirk. Is my quirk the problem? Himiko wondered. Thanks, Nedu. What class would you want to be in? Nedu narrowed his eyes at the obvious subject change, but didn't comment on it. Hero, of course. Class A or B? Himiko asked, trying to find anything else to say. Whichever one I get into, of course. Himiko snorted. What if I did try? What if we got into different classes? Nedu scoffed. Of course we'd be in different classes. You're older. That's not what I meant, silly, Himiko said. What if, say, I got into B, and you got into A? Which one would be better? Both, Nedu replied matter-of-factly, when suddenly a voice blared over the loudspeaker. And with that inspiring speech. We missed it. It's time to choose the first event. Such a wasteful display, it makes me sick. Oh come now, Kaizome. Are you going to say that when Ochako is down there? Mother asked. No, challenged. That's different, he muttered. I think it's impressive that UA meets safety requirements with these events, Dad commented idly, writing down notes on his tablet. I can't find any legal fault with it thus far. Dear, it's supposed to be your day off, Mother teased before pointing to the field. Look, it's that boy from earlier Amajiki, was it? I'm still not sure what his quirk is. I love the battle scars look though. Now that's someone you can trust as a hero, Kaizome not afraid to get their hands dirty. I wonder how the business course students would approach such an individual, Dad wondered. No legacy name, and those scars? A classic underdog, with a mysterious twist. Honey, stick to your work. Laying it on too thick? You couldn't even cut it with a knife. Ochako added helpfully. I do wonder how he intends to defeat his opponent, Kaizome said. He either has a non-physical quirk, or has been hiding it until now. Smart either way, considering he made it through without any hint as to what it is. He looks like he needs help, Ochako murmured. What do you mean? Kaizome asked, curious as to what Ochako thought. He looks kinda sad? But mad, too. It's confusing. Kaizome looked closer and saw what Ochako was seeing. I don't think we'll find out yet, he finally said. Not that he could explain why he had trouble with reading people. But he just had a gut feeling when he looked at the wild grin on the boy's face, the same feeling in his gut when he'd scaled a collapsing building without hesitating. Tuya finally used his quirk for the first time that day, the azure flames coating his fists. He'd come up with this idea when he'd been told he could only wear the standard gym uniform. Not even Recovery Girl and Principal Nedzu's attempts to persuade the school board had made a difference, which meant he'd had to improvise. I don't know if I should feel honored or annoyed that you finally decided to use your quirk, Tuya's opponent declared, a teen with soot-colored hair and fists balled just as tightly as Tuya's. It does not matter, I suppose. I cannot let my class down, let alone in the first round. Well, too bad, Tuya replied with a savage grin, the fire on his fists glowing brighter. Neither can I. Sometimes we limit ourselves, turning a blistering fire into but small embers to hide our hurt, hide our past. But hold on too long, and it will come rushing back tenfold. Chapter 18, Smile Through the Smoke. Tuya rushed forward as soon as the start of the match was signaled, sending a wave of azure flames rushing toward his opponent. His view was then cut off as a veritable tidal wave of thick smoke started pouring from the boy's fingers. Worse still, his fire didn't do anything to disperse the smoke, even as it penetrated the dark cloud. Memories rushed back to him, a burning log, smoking trees, floating ashes. Sheet, he swore as he leapt to the side to avoid a stream of smoke rushing toward him. He didn't pause for a moment after he landed, rushing toward the other side of the ring before flicking his wrist and sending a ball of fire toward the edge of the cloud. The blue fire started to eat through the smoke before being suddenly snuffed out by a thicker stream of the dense gas that slowly engulfed it. Tuya's opponent stepped out of the smoke, scowling. "We're UA students, if you're going to challenge me, then make your words. Don't judge me," Tuya snapped. He let the fire on his hands crawl up his wrists before unleashing the building attack with 2 harsh swipes. Heatwave. The wave of fire was even larger than the one he'd started the match with, the flames so bright he had to shield his eyes. Even with his obscured vision, he knew his aim was true, the literal heat wave heading straight toward where the smoke was the thickest. He realized his mistake a moment too late, receiving a well-aimed blow to the back as a reminder. As he fell, he noticed a trail of smoke that led all the way around and behind him. "I would say it isn't personal," his opponent said as he landed another punch below the first, knocking Tuya to the ground. "But your attitude is not acceptable. Give up." "I still can't believe you told Nedu," Shoyuta deadpanned as Kayama came back from the stands with an irrational amount of fried food. Normally he would be ignoring his colleagues' antics and watching the match, but the smoke from one of the students made that a lesson in frustration. "Come on, Aizawa," Yamada said before taking a sip from the strange mix of sodas he had created. "Did you really think we weren't gonna find some way to meet these 2 little listeners?" "TCH, I'm not little," Katsuki scoffed as he bit down on an apple. The little brat maintained eye contact with Yamada, who was now eating some abomination of all things rational and healthy. "Did you know that fried food is more likely to shorten your lifespan than a bucket of ice cream?" Izuku commented gleefully. "Uncle Sho knows a lot about being a good hero. You two are just too much." Kayama laughed. "I'm going to have to get back at your uncle one day for not wanting us to meet you. Do you have any thoughts on what's going on down there, Izuku?" Shoyuta said in an attempt to change the subject. "Actually," Kayama said with a grin that did not bode well for Shuta's sanity. "How about I tell you a story about?" Suddenly she stopped mid-sentence, quickly leaning forward to grab Izuku's hand, the boy having suddenly leaned over the railing with a quiet mention of needing a closer look. Shoyuta quickly used his capture scarf to ensure it wouldn't happen again. "Hey, careful, they're taking a bit too much after your uncle." Kayama chuckled nervously before turning to Katsuki. "What about you? Who do you think is going to win?" "TCH, Smokey of course, unless Candlestick notices what's happening," Katsuki scoffed. "I bet he already can't see what's going on with all that smoke." "Hey, I thought you said these little guys weren't mini Aizawas," Yamada joked, leaning back to avoid Katsuki using his quirk on the sugary soda monstrosity. Shoyuta met the attempted quirk use with a red-eyed glare. "Don't," he commanded firmly before turning to Yamada. "The brat wasn't wrong in going after your cup, though. That thing is an affront to anything edible." Yamada glared at Shoyuta while taking a deliberately slow sip from the Frankenstein of sugar and poor imitations of fruit flavoring. Maybe he should have let Katsuki use his quirk after all. "I agree, that would be the perfect story," Kayama said with a wolfish grin. "What was it that Yamada called your lunch that day, rainforest on a plate?" Kayama. "No." Kayama. "Yes." Tuya rolled out of the way of a fast-approaching boot, pushing himself back up into a fighting stance. His back was sore, and he could feel how close his arms were to gaining more permanent damage. But he wasn't going to just roll over for this guy. Who did he think he was, acting as if he understood Tuya? It made him sick. Thwack. Tuya was knocked off balance by the unexpected punch, which had hit him square in the jaw, what little he had after the forest at any rate. Regaining his footing, he felt something trickle from his lip and wiped it away. A quick glance confirmed his suspicions. Blood. Tuya's opponent winced as he looked at Tuya before hardening his resolve. "I'm sorry, Amajiki, but this is over." "Oh, it sure is." Tuya growled. "I'm not giving up just because you think you've won." "I wouldn't have it any other way," Tuya's opponent agreed, a deadly calm falling over them until the other boy broke the silence. Hurricane. As soon as the move was called out, smoke started pushing itself out of the boy's hands once more, except this time it was far stronger. The smoke billowed outwards like a thick fog, blanketing the already smoky ring. That's when things really started. The smoke began whirling around, the force growing stronger and stronger with each passing second. Tuya's throat and eyes started to burn as it engulfed the arena like a dusty hurricane. Tuya pushed cremation as far as he dared, but not even his flames seemed to affect the smoke. He started to cough, the smoke pushing in closer. Suddenly he was knocked to the ground, only the sad face of his opponent visible. "Give up, Amajiki. Please. Shut up." Tuya went to stand up as the smoke started to clear, only for a loud voice to ring across the stadium. "Amajiki is out of bounds. The winner is." Tuya couldn't make out the rest of what the announcer said. It didn't matter, he'd lost. Everything was a blur after that. He pushed himself back up and walked off the field. If he hadn't been so focused on his failure, he might have heard his classmates' congratulations on making it so far. As it was, he couldn't bring himself to listen. How could he show him he was wrong, if he couldn't even get past one match? At least he won't know it was you with all that smoke, he thought to himself bitterly before hiding his feelings with a scowl. Kai stepped forward from where he'd been standing, already having a pretty good guess as to Amajiki's condition. "You, Amajiki. Come with me to the med bay. Now." The boy didn't even glance at Kai, continuing right past him. Kai caught up to Amajiki, blocking his path and glaring at him. "Listen to me. You're overheated, almost burnt in several new spots, and most likely dehydrated. And that's just from what I can see. Come with me now or we'll both be answering to Recovery Girl." Amajiki finally acknowledged Kai's presence. He looked at him with glare that felt as if it could set fire to stone before changing to something akin to hurt. The quick flash of emotion disappeared in an instant as Amajiki answered Kai's command. "TCH, whatever. But I don't need it, I've dealt with worse." "You only dealt with it because I was able to heal the damage." Amajiki's reaction to that confused Kai. He had trouble understanding others, but even he knew that a broken sound resembling laughter was not an expected response. "Do you need to talk about," he began awkwardly, before being cut off. "It's nothing. Let's," Amajiki paused, clenching a slightly smoking fist before continuing. "Let's get this over with. Follow me." "That's it. I'm going to find their principal." "The school board would be a better option, son," Dad interrupted. "Fine, I'll find them. Then I'm going to force them to." "Kaizome, we're in public," his mother warned him. "Quiet down or make a better plan. Become a member of staff and change it from the inside out?" Kaizome snarked. "I like that." Ochako chirped. "Honey, what if we just enjoy the show and then plan out a picket and confrontation tomorrow?" Mother suggested. "I suppose that's agreeable. I'll come with ya," Ochako declared to the amusement of Dad and Mother. Kana couldn't help but notice Kai waiting off to the side of the exit, catching Amajiki's attention as he made to leave. The two seemed to argue about something before Amajiki stomped off, Kai in tow. Wondering what had just happened, she sent a message over her comm unit. "Hey, just saw something go on with Overhaul and the Amajiki boy. Can anyone go check on it?" "I would, but they're too far away." "I'll be sure to go take a look over there," Snipe answered quickly. "Hey Recovery Girl, you mind checking, too? You got away with both those boys." "I'll be a few minutes, but I'll see what I can do," Recovery Girl answered back. "Your break shouldn't be far away, Tsutsumi, if you want to come yourself." Will see what I can do," Kana said slowly. "Just remember, shoot straight for the target," Snipe said, the strange wording only confusing Kana. "Snipe?" Recovery Girl asked. "Yes? If that was supposed to be an attempt at romantic advice, please spare us." "Yes ma'am." "You gonna answer that, Doc?" Tuya asked as he heard the latest of several beeps coming from Overhaul's coat. "Sit still," Overhaul commanded as he moved his hand over to another nearburn. "You're lucky you aren't worse, but that doesn't mean this is easy. I could just leave now. I'll be fine." "Don't finish that sentence." Tuya was surprised at the harsh tone, too much so to protest as he felt Overhaul's quirk tear apart and mend his arms from the inside. "Geez, fine. Are you always this stuck up?" Overhaul just let out a huff before he stood up and wiped his hands with some disinfectant before pulling his gloves back on. "My apologies for trying to reverse the damage," he said flatly. "I understand you couldn't use your support equipment, but just knowing that doesn't do much for these new scars, does it?" "I'd like to see you do any better," Tuya challenged. "You know that isn't what I meant." "Which was it?" a familiar voice said as the door opened. "Wrong foot or wrong side of the bed?" "Chio," Overhaul answered, confirming Tuya's suspicions. "Hello." "Oh, don't you use that one on me," Ms. Shuzenji said with a roll of her eyes. "This firecracker is hardly a standout as far as our patience go. You need to work on your patience." Tuya was about to smirk, only to reconsider as Ms. Shuzenji changed her attention to him. "And you. We both know you pushed too far and too long. I understand sometimes you might need to hurt yourself, but a sports festival is not one of them, not like this. Tuya didn't answer. Humph, you young heroes need to stop acting like you're all might, it isn't healthy, she grumbled as she opened the door to leave. Oh, and Kai, she said just as she was about to exit the room. Yes? Tsutsumi was wondering where you were. Don't keep her waiting. Overhaul looked the closest to confusion Tuya had even seen him, before quickly pulling his mask further up his face, only then seeming to notice Tuya's mirth. You in trouble with a girl? You may leave, Overhaul said after a pause. Oh, you want to? Don't finish that sentence either, Kai warned before turning to the small desk and muttering to himself as Tuya left the med bay. It was only as he made it back to the stands that he realized he was grinning just the tiniest bit. Maybe he could still prove him wrong. The old man had never liked how All Might always smiled. Always kept going. Tuya couldn't do that, not like All Might. He'd just have to find his own smile. Tuya smirked. Smoke can remind us of fires before. Will we breathe it and deeply give in to the pain? Or fight for fresh air and new change? Chapter 19, Mission Statement. Nagant. Takami, I told you don't need to call me that. Takami paused for a moment, his twitching wings betraying his annoyance. Why are we still here? I told you, Kana began to answer. We're here so we can find out if you a. I'm not stupid, nagged Tsutsumi. The commission, Takami shifted, his expression like that of someone confronting an obstacle they'd been trying to ignore. They don't know what's going on, do they? Kana barked out a small, broken laugh. Takami, let's be honest, do either of us want to go back to that? It's easy for you, Takami shot back. The people here like you've helped them. But I'm just Hawks. I can't help them, can't save people, or teach, or, he paused, his frown deepening. I should just go back. To the commission. I can help them. Be a hero. And then you can stay here, and end. Kana reached out and rested her hand on Takami's shoulder. I know it seems like you aren't doing anything, but trust me. You've done so much already. Takami's gaze hardened, breaking off from her touch. All I've done is train here, hidden away while everyone else does something. Wouldn't I be on patrol now if I was at the commission? Supervised, yes, but you. It's cramped in here. I need some air, Takami interrupted quickly. He then slipped out the door before Kana could follow, only catching a glimpse of his bristled wings before he was out of sight. Hawks spread out his wings as he stepped outside of the building. He hesitated a moment before taking to the skies with a leap. For a fleeting moment, he considered going back to the commission, but he couldn't. Even if he felt like he wasn't doing enough doing anything, Hawks still couldn't bring himself to leave, not like this. He looked over the campus and noticed a lone gym building separated from everything nearby by a thin wall of trees. A good spot to think. Touching down, he walked the last few meters up to the door, which was unlocked, thankfully. He opened the door from the entry room to the gym itself, when suddenly the entire area was bathed in a flickering blue light. Don't think I've seen you around, Birdie. The source of the voice was one Hawks distantly recognized, one of the first-year hero students. Now, Hawks normally avoided anyone at UA who wasn't Nedu, Recovery Girl, Kai, or Tsutsumi. Especially Tsutsumi. The scars aren't going to disappear if you keep staring, the teen snapped. Do you need something, or what? Or what? Hawks answered reluctantly. The older boy smirked at that, the blue flame in his palm suddenly gone as if doused, plunging the room into darkness. He heard shuffling before the flip of a switch and the room was illuminated by several large lights overhead. I know the feeling. I like to let my quirk loose here sometimes. Burn a few test dummies. The like. Hawks took an involuntary step back, earning a snort from the boy. They're made to be torn apart, don't worry. The support classes use this gym as a dumping ground for stuff that doesn't blow up right, or something like that. Can never tell with Hatsum. Hawks didn't answer the evidently slightly unstable boy, trying to figure out how quickly he could exit the building. You gonna say something, Birdie? Hawks. What? Call me Hawks. Nah. I think Birdie fits you better, the boy said, rubbing his chin mockingly. The name's Kai Bun. Ashes? Even Hawks couldn't help but roll his eyes at the obvious alias. No. Dobby. What are you saying, Birdie? If you're going to call me Birdie instead of Hawks, then I'm not calling you Ashes. The boy chuckled dryly. Can't argue with that, Birdie. But, cremation, seriously? At least it sounds better than Birdie, Hawks muttered. I think Takami made a friend, Hari commented, his sudden presence surprising Kana. She looked over to where Hari had gestured, noticing Takami talking with Amajiki. The two looked slightly awkward, but the fact that they were talking without the tense body language she'd seen from both recently was to be celebrated. What are you two talking about? Kai asked as he took a seat at the table. His plate, as always, looked more like a miniature garden than food. Whether it was due to his quirk, or just one of his eccentricities, Kana wasn't sure. I think the chicken and the burnt chicken have found kindred spirits, Hari explained, somehow getting a nod of approval from Kai. Good. Maybe your brother will teach Amajiki some self-preservation, he said, aiming the last part at Kana. She, meanwhile, almost choked at his reference to her and to Kami. Excuse me, brother? Yes? Am I wrong? We aren't related. At all. Hari is my brother and we aren't related beyond both being part of Recovery Girl's family. Are you saying she's wrong? Kana couldn't help but notice Hari's attempts to mask his chuckling in the background as she tried to figure out what to say. She promptly gave up on any such action. You know what? Fine. I don't think anyone here understands how family works. The oddities of family relations aside, Sir is expecting you at Might Tower later, Kana, Kai said. Oh? I'll be sure to head over there soon then. Kana walked up to the door of Sir Night's office. His hero name was absent from the small sign, instead only bearing his full name, Sasaki Mirai. She knocked on the door twice in quick succession before listening for an answer. Who is it? Tsutsumi. Ah, come in then. Kana did as asked, opening the door and stepping into Night's small office. Lock the door, please, he said not a moment after it had latched. Kana did as told before sitting down in the one chair in the room. She knew him well enough by now not to bother standing to try and be polite. So, why did you want me? A simple request, though with it being part of the ongoing investigation into All for One, I thought it prudent to do so in person. And that would be, Kai told me that you are rather adept at covert missions. Is that true? Kana only barely kept back her feelings on that part of her training. Yes, it is. Good, good. Then let me not waste a moment more of your time, Sir Night said before sliding a small box over the desk toward Kana. I need footage of an area Gran Torino and Kai have been investigating. Inside the box are 2 sport cameras and several flash drives to store excess footage on, along with a map of the aforementioned area. Do I have a choice? These days, everything was much different. She needed to know where she now stood. Sir Night looked genuinely surprised at the question. I apologize, of course it is up to you. Whether you do so or not. I just assumed. No, it's okay. That's my job, right? Kana said flatly before grabbing the box. I will contact you when I'm done, Sir Night. She didn't stop to hear his reply as she briskly walked out of the room. She heard the door open back up behind her and Sir Night quickly caught up to her. Miss Tsutsumi. I apologize if I offended you. It was not my intent. Kana stopped and turned to face Sir Night. Sir Night, I appreciate the importance of this mission, but understand this, I choose what I do. Not you, and not the HSPC. Sir Night nodded. I understand, but if you do not wish to assist, then I will find someone who will. Kana shook her head. No, I will help. All that man, she corrected herself upon remembering that they were no longer in the privacy of Sir Night's office. Has done some horrible things. There's only a few things I despise more. And just what would those be? Sir Night asked as he stared Kana right in the eye. Fakes. Mara. Sir. I didn't call you here to fall asleep in the chair, the HSPC president snapped. I wouldn't even need to be calling you here right now if your targets weren't off gallivanting around that blasted high school. Yes, sir. Don't yes sir me. Why aren't they here? It was only due to his lack of sleep that Mara only responded in a flat monotone, as opposed to trying to pretend he cared. Bureaucracy, mostly. The relevant government agencies are swamped. As always. Then see if you can't speed it up. Time is one thing we do not have. Yes, sir. Is that all? Yes, that will be all, the president said slowly. But Mara? Yes, sir? I want results. I want to congratulate you all for making it through your first year here at UA. Nedu said cheerfully, his voice reverberating around the room. With your second year beginning, you will be shifting gears, as they say, by beginning your first forays into proper internship programs and... Tuya snorted as he noticed that one of his classmates was starting to nod off. Hey, what year? Kosuka started, sitting up ramrod straight before groaning. Will you ever let that go? Luminescent, purple, Tuya quipped. Ugh, fine. I'm listening, Kosuka groaned. You fall asleep one time. But Dabi told me you've done it lots of times? Birdie whispered confusedly. Kosuka didn't deny the claim, and turned back to stage as Nedu started to share the educational benefits of pre-quirk literature. Tuya had mixed feelings after what had happened over the past year. It had been like a roller coaster, starting with him getting in, only to lose in the final round of the sports festival before meeting Birdie. And no, he was not calling the guy Hawks, not when just entering the support lab scared him. Well, okay, maybe he could understand that one, but still. But now he had a new year ahead of him. And this time, he was going to show him what he could do. Mr. Nedu, a pleasure, as always. And the same to you, Nedu replied with a pasted grin. How may I assist the HSPC on this occasion? Ah, it isn't anything of particular note, the suited woman replied cheerily. Just a random inspection for a few heroic schools such as yours. In that case, I would be glad to obtain the information you require. I know the HSPC tends to keep their staff busy. Oh, you misunderstand me, the woman said with a small laugh and drumming of her fingers on the desk. This inspection will be for an indeterminate amount of time. No need to rush things on my behalf. Kana was walking through the main building to find one of the teachers when she noticed a strange woman making her way down the hall. As she got closer, alarms started sounding in her mind. Everything but her generic business suit screamed HSPC investigator. Oh, hello, the woman said as she drew closer, her heels click-clacking on the linoleum floors. I don't believe I've met you yet. Though I believe I might have heard mention of you. Well, as nice as it is to meet you, Ms. You. Ms. You, I really need to be somewhere right now, Kana replied coolly. Oh, I apologize, the woman replied with a tone that was just a bit too sweet. Artificial. Fake. Another time then. Even as she and the woman parted ways, Kana couldn't help that she was being watched all the same as she continued on her way to the teacher's lounge. Leaving the problem behind for now while she figured out what to do. She knocked on the door twice in quick succession before receiving a friendly, "Come on in." Letting herself in, Kana only found Snipe. Hey, have you seen ectoplasm? Last time was a couple hours ago, he replied before frowning. Something the matter, little lady? You look like you're wound up tighter than a music box. A music box? Trying to broaden my horizons. Is it that bad? A little, Kana answered with a small smile. Well, can't hit a bullseye every time, Snipe chuckled before frowning once more. But you didn't answer my question. Is there something wrong? Well, did you see a strange woman around? About this tall, black hair. And heels that make more of a racket than ectoplasm's peg legs? Yup. Don't think I could have missed her. Gave me the willies. His what now? That? Oh, it means never mind, Snipe started before cutting himself off. But why don't you like her? I'm sure it's more than just a gut feeling if you're worried. Unless I misunderstood. No, you're right, Kana sighed. She just reminds me of some HSPC staff. Snipe whistled sharply. Yup. I can see why that would worry ya. Gonna talk to Nedu about it? Well, since I can't find ectoplasm, that would be my next step anyway, Kana nodded. Thanks, Snipe. Anytime, ya hear? I don't like her, Tuya declared once he and Birdie arrived at the gym. Don't like who? Some strange lady that sat at the back of the class today. Didn't say a thing until she left. It was FING creepy. D-Dobby, you shouldn't say. You really gotta let loose sometime, Tuya said with a smirk. You're starting to look like Cementos being that rigid. I do let loose. I tried one of those bottle things with my lunch today, what are they called? Soda, Tuya snorted. What planet did they raise you on? I can't say. Tuya laughed harder, feeling a faint ache as he grinned widener. If you only knew what you sounded like. Suddenly, they realized they weren't alone. Do I hear testers? Please, not her, Birdie groaned. Ugh, I'll help you one more time, Tuya sighed. But then you gotta just let her try. The longer she has to wait, the more elaborate her inventions get. It's not normal to be that happy, Birdie muttered. On that, we can definitely agree. Class, I want you to welcome a newcomer, Atsushimi. Hiya, it's nice to be here. I hope we can all be friends, the girl said before going and sitting down at the desk beside Himiko. She turned to and waved before looking back toward the front of the room as Ms. Minato started talking. It was nice that Auntie had been able to convince her parents to let her go to this school instead of the stuffy one she'd been going to. Nedu even went here, too. Of course she shouldn't talk about blood. She knew how that went. She just had to act normal. Himiko sat at her desk quietly during lunch. Once she was sure no one was looking, she pulled a small bag from her pocket with a few of the blood gummies Auntie had made before she'd gone home. She started nibbling on one, relishing the taste when she suddenly sensed a presence behind her. She quickly looked backward, only to come face to face with the new girl. Hiya. What you got there? The girl asked curiously. Oh, just my lunch. Ooh, those look neat, what are they? She asked, grabbing one to Himiko's horror. They're really not that good. I just kinda need them. I'm sure it's fine, the girl said cheerily before popping the gummy into her mouth. Himiko watched with growing horror as she chewed for all of half a second before blanching. Okay, sorry. I shoulda listened to ya. I promise they just turned out weird. They usually taste. Hey, it's like, totally cool if you gotta eat stuff like that, the girl said, blinking when Himiko just stared at her wordlessly. I have a friend with some sorta mutation quirk. They gotta eat some totally weird stuff and like, get really embarrassed about it. You don't think it's gross? Of course not. Maybe. It's just, like, what is it? Air? Don't worry, you don't have to tell me, the girl interrupted. Totally cool if you want to keep it as a big secret or something. So, what are you? Atsushimi Kami, I recommend you finish your lunch before the PRD is over, Ms. Minato interrupted. Oh yeah, like, thanks for reminding me. I missed Miko, Nedu announced once everyone had finished their meal. But didn't you see her at school? Shinbu asked. Of course I did. Nedu said as if the suggestion that he hadn't was utterly ridiculous. But we couldn't go to the park because she had to go home right after school. Ah, I see, Hibiki said, nodding sagely. Your father and I will see how we can fix that. After I rest a bit. Hard day at work? Shinbu wondered. Ugh, yes. I had so much paperwork to approve today. It was strange, really. Mostly approvals for an investigation into? Well, I shouldn't say. But it was definitely out of the ordinary. We all have goals. Some declare them proudly without fear, while others do so under the cover of darkness with obtuse wordings and hidden meanings. Chapter 20, Free Within Your Cage. Nedu sat looking over a spread of papers and web searches. Some people had tab groups, he had tab countries, when he heard the door open. Ah, Kana, I was just about to come find you, he said without looking up from the paper he was reading, a delightful insight into proposed solutions for how quirks seem to bend reality. He put that topic to the back of his mind as he continued. We have a new guest. It wouldn't happen to be the strange woman I met on my way here, would it? Unfortunately, yes. She's from the HSPC? I had a feeling you might recognize her, Nedu sighed. Do you know her? Personally? No, Kana answered. But she reminds me of the HSPC's investigators. That does line up with what she said of being here for a school inspection. That is a convenient cover, Kana muttered. A cover, So there's more to her than meets the eye? Nedu asked rhetorically. Just, be careful, Kana warned. I didn't get to know much about investigators, but they didn't do school inspections. Hawks and Dabi were walking to Gym Gamma when they were overtaken by a woman Hawks didn't recognize. A new teacher, perhaps? She looked too old to be a student, though he hadn't heard anything from Nedu. Hello, boys. Lovely day, isn't it? Hi. Have we met before? Hawks asked, surprised by how quickly the woman had closed the distance. I don't believe I've had the pleasure, the woman answered. You are? Hawks. The woman's eyes lit up. Oh, is that your hero name? I can see why you choose it. It's my name, yes, Hawks answered awkwardly. And you, And who's your friend? I think we've seen each other before. Oh, that's Dabi. I have seen you before, Dabi said in a weary tone. Oh really? How interesting, the woman said, before putting a hand to her forehead and sighing. Oh look at me, asking your names and not introducing myself. I am Mizu. A pleasure to meet you Dabi, Hawks. I hate to be rude, but we gotta get going, lady, Dabi said flatly, glancing at his wrist before grabbing Hawks' hand. We need to get to class. Then don't let me stop you. Mizu said cheerfully. Thank you for your help. Dabi walked briskly toward the entrance of the gym before letting go of Hawks' hand. Good. I don't think she followed us. Hopefully she doesn't have some sort of surveillance quirk. What are you talking about, Dabi? Hawks asked, confused by his friend's strange behavior. She seemed nice. You were just being rude. We had to go. Your gym class doesn't start for another 10 minutes, and I'm not even in a course. In fact, you don't even wear a watch. Can't. Dry skin. Ugh, why are you acting so weird? She was just being polite. She is the same lady that gave me the creeps yesterday. Isn't Lady Nagant like your guardian or something? Didn't she tell you anything about watching out for danger? Why are you always so paranoid? You're always watching people. You do too, Birdie. Your point is? Ugh, you're just impossible sometimes. Hawks grumbled. Ooh, scary. Dabi sighed, his grin turning to a frown. Just, don't tell her anything about me, okay? Why? Because I'm Kaibun. What does that even mean? Just drop it, please. Okay? You just need to watch your step, Nagant. That's all I can say. What's that supposed to mean? Kana asked angrily. Don't get snippy with me. I'm sticking my neck out for you here. I apologize, but I'm a little. Another time? Nagant. Goodbye. Wait, don't. Click. Hang up. Kana glared at her phone before sticking it into her pocket. That had been quite the waste of time. She looked around, making sure she hadn't been noticed. Once she felt certain enough that no one had been listening in, she started climbing up the fire escape ladder beside her. As she pulled herself up over the edge, a bizarre sight met her. There was a hobo up there, with a sleeping bag, no less. But as soon as she saw two red eyes staring back at her, she quickly realized just who it was. She glared at Eraserhead, not quite sure whether or not to deck him for listening in. Eraser. Nagant. Are you going to tell me why you were sitting up here like a spy living out of a sleeping bag? You should keep a better eye on your surroundings, he said flatly. Well, forgive me for not watching out for you crawling around rooftops, Kana snapped sarcastically. Eraserhead stood up, unzipping his sleeping bag without breaking eye contact before bundling it up, only standing up as he stuffed it into a bag slung across his back. I needed to cover a patrol for an acquaintance. And you just so happened to see me and decided to snoop. Yes. Well, I guess my secret's out to you, at least. What do you think? She asked sarcastically. Eraserhead didn't so much as flinch at her flippant tone. Does Nedu know? I know. No, he doesn't. And I don't want him to either. Understand? You know you don't need to try doing this on your own. Don't take this the wrong way, Eraserhead, but you're one of the last people who can say that. That doesn't change how irrational it would be to not include him, Eraser replied flatly. Well, maybe I just want to be able to do something for myself for once, Kana snapped. What kind of hero am I if I need to go to the freaking principal of UA to help one kid, huh? Eraserhead chuckled. At least, that's what Kana assumed the strange sound was. Life is never that simple. Kana was starting to get annoyed at Eraserhead's useless answers. You're younger than me. How in the world do you sound like Snipe with depression? He frowned at the comment, a sad look in his eyes that made Kana pause. I hope you never find out, Tsutsumi. And with that, he silently scurried down the side of the building. Ray sighed before standing up. She walked to the window and looked out at the bright sky. Maybe she would go for a walk in the outdoor area later. It had been 4 years now, hadn't it? The dates were blurry, but she could tell by the snow still sitting on her windowsill and the sun starting to show its face once more. She wondered how her family was doing. Where had Fuyumi chosen to go to high school? How was Natsuo? How was Shudo? She could see that moment in her mind's eye. A splash of boiling water, a hand reaching out in alarm, pulling back just as quickly from Shudo crying out in pain, that horrid hiss as ice met fiery skin burned into her mind. She hadn't resisted when Enji had sent her here. She should have known better, she should have known better. But at that moment, she hadn't been thinking clearly. And what if it happened again? She turned from the window at the sound of the door opening. Hi. You glanced around before starting in the direction of the second-year heroics classes. She hoped to be able to bump into Hawks, or even that Dobby character. Of course her first priority was getting Hawks back to the HSPC where he belonged, but this Dobby intrigued her as well. She could tell there was more than met the eye with that boy. She nodded as she passed a student, a member of the business course, if the armful of binders was to be trusted, before continuing on her path. It was time to turn up the heat. She opened the door to the assembly room in one smooth motion, bowing slightly toward the teacher standing to the side of the door before walking to the head of the room. Hello, I'm sure some of you may recognize me from my first day here. You may call me you. I'm here on behalf of the Hero Public Safety Commission to help decide whether UA is putting you all at risk, and what steps may be needed to allow the Hero course to remain legally acceptable. Lunch will be postponed. Hi. I know it's close to lunch for you. But I was nearby and I just didn't want to. Sure. It's okay, Fuyumi. It's so nice to see your face. Fuyumi dropped her bag and rushed forward, pulling Ray into a tight hug. I've missed you so much, Mom, she sobbed. I am so sorry for not coming sooner. It's okay, sweetie, you don't have to apologize, Ray assured her gently. It was never you, not any of you. It was me. Humph, I suppose that is enough for today, Father grumbled. Once you have cleaned up, we'll have dinner. He didn't wait for Shudo to answer, turning to walk out the door. A moment later, the housekeeper walked in through the door, walking up to Shudo and leading him to the shower. She adjusted the temperature before helping him change. He quickly stepped into the shower and started washing himself, the cool water and soap washing away the sweat and dirt from today's training. Are you all right, young Shudo? Is the water all right? She asked. Yes. Good. Then just let me know when you're done. MHM. It wasn't long before Shudo had finished, turning off the shower and taking a towel from the housekeeper's outstretched hand. After he finished changing into a fresh set of clothes, she led him to the dining room before heading to her room. Father nodded slightly at his appearance. You may all begin. Shadow and his siblings started quietly eating their dinner, while father looked at something on his phone with a frown. Still no mention of preparations for the sports festival. How strange. I wish you had brought this matter to me directly. As do I, Nedu, Mizu said with a sad shake of her head, but I needed to see things for myself for a few days first to do otherwise could call your reaction into question. Not that I'm implying you would try to hide any illicit activities going on. Protocol is protocol. That still doesn't answer why you didn't bring such an accusation to me first, before calling an assembly, Nedu replied with a frown. If I didn't know better, I might call it some ploy to manipulate my response in some manner. As a member of the HSPC, and acting investigator, it was well within my rights. I must be honest, Nedu, I'm already worried for a few of your students and faculty. I am sorry to hear that, Nedu replied. Though I do ask that you report any concerns you have if possible. It wouldn't do if there was a problem that needed attention that I wasn't made aware of. Of course, Mizu agreed with a nod of her head. Though I'm sure you understand that I must keep such persons anonymous. Of course, Nedu said evenly. Well, I won't keep you any longer at such a late hour, Mizu said before standing from her chair, cup of tea untouched. Goodbye, he said, though it was to an empty room. It wasn't more than a few minutes after she left that someone knocked on the door. You may come in, Aizawa, Nedu said, chuckling at Aizawa's mutters of, how does he do that? Sir, Aizawa said simply. Aizawa, Nedu greeted in kind. I have a feeling this isn't just a simple social call. Aizawa shook his head. It's about Nagant, sir. Shadow, as soon as you are done, I want you to go to bed. We have a busy day ahead. Yes, father, Shadow answered, quickly finishing the last of his dinner. Once he was done, he took his plate to the sink and rinsed it before heading up to bed. He had just changed into his pajamas when he heard a soft knock at the door. Hello? Shadow, it's me. I'm supposed to go to bed now. Could I just talk with you for a few minutes? Shadow thought for a moment. Father never came up to their rooms at night. He wouldn't ever know. Sure. Fuyumi opened the door carefully before letting herself in. She sat down beside Shadow on his mat. I went to see Mom today, she said. She misses you, you know. She never meant to. I know. She told you? I just know. Would you like to come with me and see her? No. Why not? I scare her. Why you could never scare her, Shadow. Then why did this happen? He asked, touching his scar. Because what father was doing reminded her of someone. I'm not going. Just, think about it, okay? Fuyumi didn't say anything else, pulling Shadow into an awkward hug before heading to her room. Kana, may I speak with you for a moment? Nedu asked the next morning. She nodded and followed him to his office, closing the door behind her. What did you want? She asked after sitting down and taking the cup of tea he offered. Eraserhead stopped by my office last night. I wanted to discuss what he told me. Kana clenched her jaw, her uncertain frown deepening to a scowl. I told him not to say anything. What right did he have to? You didn't want me to know? Nedu asked, his tone carefully neutral. Kana froze for a moment, as if not sure how to respond. After a moment she continued. No. Never mind. You'd probably call it stupid. Wanting to help young Takami is anything but stupid. I never told him who it was about. He didn't need to, Nedu said. I know you feel responsible for Takami, and to an extent, you are. Nedu walked up to Kana, looking her in the eye. But I am too. I took you both in, and just as you want to help Takami, I want to help both of you as well. I know it's hard to accept help. How do you think it is for me? High Specs gives me intelligence that has surpassed every being I have encountered, but even so I'm woefully lacking in terms of conventional strength. He stepped back, picking his cup of tea up and taking a sip. That's why I hire teachers and faculty members to help carry the load, and to cover my weaknesses. My technical knowledge of weapons doesn't compare to Snipe's experience with both using and defending against guns. I can't mend broken limbs like Recovery Girl or Overhaul. I can't create training structures like Cementos. He put his cup back down and stared at Kana. It isn't a sign of weakness to ask for help, in fact, I'd say it's quite the opposite. Thanks, Kana said. I think I needed to hear that. I'm here if you ever need to talk, Nedu said. I still don't like that Eraserhead told you. It wasn't his place. No, it wasn't, Nedu agreed. He means well, but doesn't always go about things in the best manner. I was almost ready to deck him after he listened in. Now. Violence never solved anything, Nedu chuckled. I mean it. In that case, perhaps you should make a point to avoid him for a while. Kana fidgeted at the table, letting out a sigh of relief as the last teacher walked in the door. Finally, they could start. Now that we are all here, let us begin, Nedu said. The topic of today's meeting is Ms. Yu's announcement yesterday. What in tarnation is that woman trying to do? Snipe exclaimed, banging his fist on the table. We've always been careful with the sports festival. They know Recovery Girl would be on us like a flea on a dog if things got out of hand. The board will attest to that after those burns Dobby got after his fight last year, Kana added with a chuckle. Dobby too, for that matter. It just doesn't make sense, Ectoplasm added. Why now, just when we'd be starting preparations for the sports festival and internships? While I am not at liberty to share my suspicions, I believe it has to do with some decisions we have made that they do not approve of, Nedu explained. We need to tread carefully, and not give them an opportunity to justify any actions they may wish to take. What could we even do? One of the teachers asked. Heroics is dangerous. Always has been and always will be. It wouldn't be unprecedented to simply delay the sports festival, Nedu said slowly. It is the single best element of the school to target as far as student safety is concerned. The room erupted at the suggestion. But why? How would we even justify it? The board would never agree. That hasn't happened in probably 10 years. 11, actually, Nedu corrected, waiting for everyone to quiet down before continuing. Now, I dislike the idea just as much as you all do. But the HSPC is evidently watching very closely for an excuse to blackmail us. But why, Nedu? One of the teachers asked, frustrated. You haven't given a single concrete reason for them to act like this. As others echoed the discontent, Snipe cleared his throat. I don't know about y'all, but I've been here a good long while. During his time here, Nezu's never given me a reason to doubt him. While I have had my misgivings over some of his decisions, I have to agree with Snipe, Recovery Girl added. That goes for me as well. I haven't been here too long, but I will give you the benefit of the doubt, Principal. Thank you for your confidence, Nedu said. I once again want to assure you that we will be looking at other things first before we consider postponing the sports festival. Well, I guess us teachers are just gonna have to tighten our belts a little, as far as activities go, Snipe said with a frown. You can't stay here forever. That is definitely my hope, Nedu agreed. You only have as much freedom as your cage allows, unless you stand up against your keeper.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over, and if you enjoyed the video just leave a like, and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.